After getting brutally dumped by his ex, this guy dedicated his life to mastering the most hardcore game in existence. But his luck finally turns around when he gets pulled straight into the game itself. As an insanely overpowered character with every hidden talent unlocked, he becomes so legendary that even his ex comes crawling back. But the real danger is the two worlds are actually connected. So just as players can log in and out, the nightmarish monsters from the game can cross over into reality. But before we dive in, make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and let's get into it. The story begins in the exhausting heat of the desert. In the middle of the wasteland, there are several bald men carrying a gigantic creature that looks like a hydra. Meanwhile, others stare at the hydra from a distance. In the middle of them, a very strong slave is killing other warriors. After he slits the first guy's throat, the others get furious, asking who this bastard is and how he can be so strong. The slave gets up with a lot of effort, completely exhausted. The very next second, those men charge at him, saying that since he's tired, they can kill him now. The slave feels like his heart is about to explode. Every time he breathes, it feels like knives are cutting the roof of his mouth. He is truly wrecked, thinking he can't even tell if what's dripping on the ground is sweat or his own blood. But the enemies won't give him any room to breathe. Gripping his sword tightly, he realizes all his senses are telling him one thing. This definitely isn't a visual effect. Several screens appear in front of him with the title Hidden Talent. Among them are the heart of the iron-blooded monarch, weapon master, skillful hands, and several other hidden talents. Realizing this isn't a visual effect and that those men are right on top of him, he charges in to defeat them all, finally understanding that this is his new reality. But to understand what's happening to this guy in the middle of a desert, we need to go back a few hours. We see a guy sitting at his PC. Looking at the screen, he realizes his character just got a game over. Exhausted and frustrated, he calls the game a complete piece of trash. But in the end, his life isn't much different. This depressed guy really needs some help. With his standard 9-to-5 life, there isn't much time left to enjoy things. He basically plays all week long, and not just on weekends, but every single day. While everyone else is out there giving their best at work, he's at home wasting time and playing games. Actually, he quit his job and has been doing this for several months. He admits he locked himself in his room by choice and started living like a gaming addict. He's been doing this since before he quit, making this his 5th year living like this. That's 5 whole years wasted on a single game. He thinks his life is legendary, but in the worst possible way. The damn game that took 5 years of his life was Pangania. The game Pangania gained massive popularity in a short 5-year span with a single promise: if you beat the game, they would grant you a wish. The developer promoted the title with that exact phrase. It's a ridiculous promise meant to fool people, but gamers with too much free time got curious and tried it. However, they all inevitably failed. 5 years passed and no one beat the game. Then the number of players dropped drastically until only one was left. And now, if he isn't logged into the game himself, the online player count drops to 0. Pangania was an incredibly infamous game. It showcased an absurd difficulty level right upon release. In the game, there was a boss that made you wonder if it was even possible to win. Even your own companions could betray you without any warning. The named NPCs that hunt you down if you have a bounty on your head are way stronger than the characters themselves. So, if you get a bounty, you might as well delete the game because you will die. But for the protagonist, the worst part of all is that if his character dies, everything disappears instantly. In other words, if you die in this game, you start from scratch, basically a hardcore mode. Because of this absurd difficulty, its popularity was very short-lived and vanished instantly. Thus, the protagonist wonders if someone isn't intentionally stopping players from beating the game. He had a very overpowered character carrying 8 of the 15 known unique items. Basically, his 5 years were thrown in the trash just like that, as if they were nothing. While he was staring at the screen upset, a message pops up. The message warns that his character was deleted due to the death penalty, so he obtained 1.6 million soul points. Soul points are acquired when a character dies. Reading that, our hero is completely shocked, realizing he just got 1.6 million soul points. Unique items definitely give a lot of points. If we combine all the hundreds of characters he's had so far, it totaled 80,000 points. From what he remembers, this game has an attribute point system. You receive these points based on the value of your dead character, and they can be used during the creation of a new one. The more points spent on a talent, the higher the growth rate. A character he once made after spending 10,000 soul points on the swordsmanship talent died with the title of Grandmaster of Swordsmanship. The limit of points that can be used on a single talent is 10,000, but he just received over 1.5 million points. He could basically max out all his talents. Normally, he would focus on the magic talent for a safer playthrough, but now he says he's never going to beat this piece of trash anyway. This will be the first and last time he enjoys the game to the fullest before deleting it. What he didn't know is that as soon as he clicked his mouse button, something magical would happen. While he was pressing the button, he starts remembering his past. He remembers when his girlfriend broke up with him. He was surprised, asking what she was doing. She simply said he was a good person, but she couldn't date a guy with no future anymore. Looking him right in the eye, she said she was at an age where she needed to think about marriage. The protagonist was in total shock. Defenseless, he lowered his head and listened to her say several cruel things. She mentioned her friends were dating or marrying men who worked at big well-known companies while he was a failure. She just didn't want to say it directly to his face. Right after, she simply got up from her chair, said she'd had enough and that she was leaving. She hoped he would have a good life. This sad event took place 3 months ago. He had been dating a very beautiful girl for 5 years, someone he truly loved. It was a very painful breakup. After she left, he quit his job out of pure anger, locking himself in his room and becoming a complete gaming addict. Back in the present, he speaks very seriously. He says he's done with the small talk and doesn't want to be a pathetic loser anymore. He goes ahead and clicks the button. The game starts consuming his points, but in a very strange way, as the screen says a hidden piece has been activated. He wonders what kind of hidden piece this is. The screen informs him that he has satisfied the singularity and has been invited to Pangania. The protagonist wonders what this Pangania thing is and if the game always had such cryptic messages. A second later, something in his body starts changing. He wonders what the hell is happening. He feels a little strange and soon realizes he's feeling immense pressure, a pressure from a being that is definitely not from this world. The voice speaks directly to him, saying that all the worlds he created were reduced to ashes. While listening to the voice, he starts feeling really sick. With a massive headache, he wonders what is going on and why there is a voice in his head. That voice messed with his neurons and made him pass out. He passed out just in time to miss the final message on the screen. The message said that the being brighter than light and darker than darkness wanders through creation and destruction, wishing for him to find happiness in Pangania. Shortly after, he opens his eyes, only to see a scene he never imagined in his life. He's being whipped by a man who warns that if he falls again, he'll be fed to the Hydrogen. Hearing that word Hydrogen, he wonders what that is about. As soon as he gets up and looks ahead, he sees several slaves being whipped. Further ahead, he is very surprised to see the Hydrogen itself. On his back, he takes another whip strike. The man orders him to walk faster, calling him too slow unless he wants to die. The protagonist gets up and starts walking with the others. In the middle of the crowd, he wonders if the Hydrogen is the same one he recognizes from the game. Looking from side to side, the place looks familiar. He activates his status window. A window pops up in front of him, startling him. Suspicious, he realizes his attributes are all at level 12. He has an enormous amount of talents. Just from hidden talents alone, he has 13 of the absolute best ones. That's when he finally realized he was inside Pangania. It's all real. He has his very own status window. He's puzzled, wondering why all his attributes are at 12, since they only range from 1 to 10 depending on how many points are spent. He doesn't know how this is possible, and having 13 hidden talents is completely broken. While he was thinking about this, a massive earthquake started. Everyone wondered what was happening. Up ahead, the boss of those men was completely terrified. There was an entire army heading their way. He realized it was the Desert Queen's army. They wanted to break the non-aggression pact and attack, so they needed to prepare for battle. Riding on top of that multi-headed creature was a very stylish girl. Our hero recognizes her as the Snake Princess. He definitely recognizes her from somewhere. At that moment, to his surprise, the status screen warns that the main quest has been activated. Main quest number 1, survive. The rewards will vary depending on the outcome, and failing the quest means death in the game and in his physical body at the same time. He's in shock, realizing he can actually die, as shortly after he sees a rain of arrows heading his way. The massacre begins right before his eyes. As a normal human being, he would be in complete shock, but at that moment his hidden talent is activated, the Heart of the Iron-Blooded Monarch. This hidden trait is a linked talent that only appears when all physical talents are maxed out. It prevents exhaustion and reduces the chances of being caught off guard, while also allowing him to quickly grasp the situation. Looking to the side, he sees the keys and a sword on the ground. He realizes that if he stays like this, he will definitely die, so he needs to move to survive. While he crouched down to take off the shackles, an enemy ran toward him, ready to kill him. When the man was about to attack, our boy grabbed the sword and struck him down like it was nothing. First, he blocked the strike, and then he sliced him in half, and that's when another hidden trait was activated, the so-called Weapon Master, which clearly left him very impressed. And right after he kills the first one, 3 guys charge at him, calling him a damn slave. But quickly, he manages to break that bald guy's spear, and then slices him up too. While he thinks to himself that even though it's a weapon he's using for the first time, it's like he's used it countless times, and he manages to feel like a pro. But soon on his left, extra number 3 charges at him with an axe. But quickly the protagonist manages to dodge the strike, and realizes he can also read the weapon's movements, already blocking the extra's axe, and seeing the path of his sword. And then with a very fast strike, he pierces extra number 3, and after leaving him injured, he takes his axe and buries it right into his head. And at that moment, looking ahead, he sees several other guys staring at him, saying he's indeed a monster, and they thought the whole caravan was unable to fight because of their wounds. And right then, another hidden trait is activated, because due to the effects of skillful hands, his weapon proficiency will increase faster, and his sword proficiency reached 6, and his spear proficiency also reached 6. And the protagonist realizes the max proficiency is 10, and he's already at level 6, and even the fact that he survived until now, being at his current level, would be basically impossible if it weren't for his hidden traits. But even miracles don't last forever. And there are at least 500 troops gathered there. And how does this game expect him to survive this? This game is definitely pathetic, and the quest is even worse. But while that was happening, in another corner in a seemingly haunted castle, there's a woman sitting on the throne, with two very strong guards in front of her. And this woman glares at another girl, asking if the Demon World expedition failed. And she wants to know from her, the Snake Princess, if it's true. And the Snake Princess quickly says yes, it is true. And so the queen says that if they find out that they from the desert city of Faisalmer didn't participate in the expedition, the idiots from the central continent will blame them for failing. And so they need to stop this at all costs. So she tells the Snake Princess she must go to the Kaltzman Desert and eliminate all the expedition participants. And they need to destroy all evidence proving Faisalmer didn't send any troops. And also eliminate anything related to the expedition's failure. And if she does well on this mission, she promises to lift her curse, which surprised the princess a lot. And so she seriously said she understands. But before she could leave, the queen told her to remember something, that she cannot fail this mission. So finally back to the present, that Snake Princess stares at another servant and asks if they are done. But the nervous servant says no, there's still a slave fighting, which surprised the princess a lot, asking what he means by a slave. And so she went toward this slave, who was surrounded by several dead bodies. But our protagonist was completely exhausted, except his level finally went up to level 2. And because of that, his health and mana were restored, and his fatigue was also removed, so he's pumped up once again. Only, to the extra's surprise, someone behind them orders them to move out of the way. As soon as they look, it's the Snake Princess herself, and standing in front of him, the protagonist looks at her and realizes she finally arrived, Isabella von Dersian. And from what he can see in her status, she's already level 8, and she can't leave this area due to a negative effect from the Desert Queen's curse, and her being level 8 was a surprise to the protagonist, because he knows he can't win against her no matter how many times he tries, since the highest level in Pangenia is level 10, and what separates the weak from the strong starts at level 7, and from this level on, the real difference begins to show, and a level gap can hardly be overcome, and level 8 means you can be considered the strongest anywhere. And to sum it up, it's the level of bosses from very famous organizations. And so our boy comments that facing her is the same as facing a natural disaster, but he gets even more surprised when he reads a part below her level, talking about the curse. And he recognizes the curse right away. But while he was thinking about this, the princess walks toward him, saying his little show was pretty interesting. But he's going to die now, already drawing her two blades, and glaring at our hero with hatred. But as she walked toward him, he starts to think about the reason he played Pangania, which was highly criticized for its extreme difficulty. It's that even in the hardest games, he managed to find a way to beat them, no matter how hard they were. And yes, he was an addict even among hardcore gamers. But he thinks that if his guess is right, he has a chance. Only while he's thinking, Isabella rushes at him, definitely wanting to kill him. And when her blade was right near his neck, he speaks very confidently, staring her down, asking if she doesn't want to get rid of the queen's curse, which makes her stop immediately, right at his neck. And she glares at him, really pissed off, wondering how he knows that. And very suspiciously, she asks who he is, while our protagonist answers that he reads the stars. He leads people to the stars, because he is the star bearer, and he can help her get rid of the queen's curse, so she'll be able to leave the desert, which instantly surprised Isabella, who immediately lowered her head to think, while our protagonist in front of her realizes it worked. And this star bearer is an NPC class a player needs to transcend the max level, and this class only exists for NPCs. So of course he's not the real star bearer, but to remove the negative effect of the queen's curse, she needs the star's blessing from the star bearer. And since Isabella wants to get rid of the curse, she has to listen to him. And the reason he was so sure she'd want to get rid of the queen's curse is pretty simple, because Isabella von Dersian is the character he created. And from what he remembers, Isabella was a poor character he had to neglect, because he chose the wrong spawn point. And this queen's curse is, from the player's perspective, a device that keeps players locked to the starting point during the early game, but a player's character is meant to see the end of this game, and originally they're supposed to travel the world to see the ending. But he left her in this place, and she got stuck there because of the queen's curse. But while he was thinking about this, Isabella right in front of him asked his name, and our boy answered that it was Randolph, so that's how he named his new character. And so the two glared at each other with hostility, but clearly frustrated, she turns around and says she'll postpone his death for now. However, if he's lying, she'll cut him to pieces. He can count on that. And so she walks past everyone and orders them to escort him, because he is an honored guest, so he must be treated with great care. Only at that moment, in front of Randolph, a screen pops up saying his main quest was completed, and it starts tallying the results, and announces that he broke the record, and it was a result so perfect it borders on a miracle. And the constellation of fortune smiles upon him. The constellation of battle also gets interested in him, and several rewards are added, and what he got was the broken piece of the golden scale, the dragon's soul, and Michela's sword. But while the notifications popped up, our boy falls to the ground exhausted, thinking that somehow he managed to survive. And at that moment, another window appears, saying he received 220 points, and his results will be added to the main quest's Hall of Fame. But after that, at the end of the day, our boy boy is sitting in a really nice bathtub, reading all his stats, and he mentions that the dragon's soul is quite infamous for only being dropped once since the game's release, and it's an item he needs to have for the early game, and also Michela's sword. He didn't think he'd get both at once, but then he wonders what this last one is, a broken piece of the golden scale, and what the synchronization between reality and Pangania means. But while he was thinking about this, the doors were swung open quickly, and 3 beautiful women appeared, asking if he'd like them to wash him, and right away the protagonist asked if they were testing him, so he said yes, just his feet. And while they cleaned him, our boy thought that they are Isabella's maids, and if he showed any reaction to them she would start to suspect him, because the star bearer shows no reaction to any sexual stimulus. So he focuses deeply in his mind so he can stay calm and don't lose your composure, but as soon as he opens his eyes he sees the girl's huge cleavage, so quickly he activates the status window to block that view. And it talks about Pangania's collapse rate, up 7 points to 66%, and with the collapse approaching, the boundary between reality and Pangania starts to shatter. Only Randolph is confused, wondering what that means. But right on the other side, another window appears, talking about the Hall of Fame, and in first place clearly is Randolph with 220 points. In second, Gracia with 195, and in third he sees Minchoko is Yummy, in fourth, Obsidian, and fifth, Massacre. And it says that by entering the ranking in Survive, he unlocked the logout function. And while he was really confused by this, one of the girls noticed something weird and asked what was happening. Meanwhile, our protagonist was completely shocked, thinking this was impossible, and these characters Gracia, Minchoko is Yummy, are 2 people he used to play with, and he thought they had given up on the game since they had disappeared after a certain point. But apparently they were summoned to this world just like him. And besides that, he unlocked the logout function, so he realizes he can get out of there, and he can leave this damn game. So finally he asks the 3 girls to leave, because he needs to speak with the stars. Only they, clearly reluctant, say that the Snake Princess wanted them to treat him well, but he argued that if he didn't communicate with the stars in time, he would lose his powers, and they could ask the princess if she would want that. And finally, when they were leaving, our boy asked them to let the princess know he'd come see her as soon as the communication ended. So finally, after they left, our boy commented that he was scared of being stuck in this place forever. But apparently there is a way out, and now he's never going back there again. And he says goodbye to this damn game, pressing the log out button. And soon the system told him to leave his character in a safe spot, because if his character dies, he dies in real life. So finally he is logged out, and went back to his room, except outside his house was total chaos. And several people were running for their lives, with some weird beings attacking them, and it was a creature that looked a lot like a giant praying mantis. And right there from his room on his phone, he got a disaster alert, and as soon as he poked his head out the window, he realized what was happening, with a gigantic monster passing by his house, which immediately noticed him and attacked him on the spot. And our boy, extremely scared, is super confused, wondering why there are monsters from Pangania in the real world. But right beside him, in his pocket, is the 3rd item he won, the broken piece of the golden scale. But right after that, he wakes up in his room finding everything very weird and wondering if it's a dream. And thinking he went completely crazy, he thinks it's obvious there's no way that's actually true. After all, this isn't a novel, and the idea of entering a game makes absolutely no sense. But as soon as he looks down, he notices something very strange, a little pouch and a piece of gold. And he wonders what that is, but soon he is in shock staring at the little gold piece, wondering why the hell it's in his room. And then he gets euphoric, wondering if the game is actually real. And as soon as he goes to the game's website, he realizes the page doesn't exist anymore. It's like the game never even existed, it simply vanished overnight. But while the protagonist was thinking about this, right behind his back he starts hearing some screaming, with some people asking for help because there's a monster there. And right outside his house, that giant praying mantis is causing destruction and going after people because it wants to kill them and then eat them. And watching that, the local cops are in shock, reporting that this is a major emergency, while others try to kill the monsters with their bullets, but obviously it doesn't work. And meanwhile, from his window, our boy notices that and wonders why the hell this is happening, and why monsters from Pangania appeared in the real world. But a second later, he simply calms down. Sitting on the bed, he wonders if that boundary between reality and Pangania has shattered. Worried, he wonders what he should do now. But at that moment, he turns his eyes back to that piece of gold, and remembers that if the monsters from the game became real, then maybe the items obtained in the game can be used there too. So he goes toward that pouch, picking it up and opening it right away. And soon he sees that inside it are Michela's sword and the Hydragon soul. And so he holds the Hydragon soul and wonders how he can use it. In the game, he only needed to double click. But he remembers that in the status it said that broken artifact was the fragment of the golden rune. And with it, synchronization between reality and Pangania is allowed, and it can be turned on or off. And so he thinks there's no way to fight the monster in real life. But if he can use this power, maybe he can. So he says turn on, and the magic happens, synchronizing his character in real life. And the remaining duration is 24 hours. And right after that, in the middle of the rubble, a woman carrying her daughter is running to save their lives. While the daughter asks her mom where where her dad is and why he isn't coming. But the mom says he will come soon and she has to understand. Only at that moment, to their surprise, some rubble falls on them. But the mother is very agile and throws her daughter away, which leaves the little girl in shock seeing her mother badly injured. But her mother, completely desperate, says she is fine and asks her daughter to run away from there as fast as possible. Only at that moment, another woman appears, running toward the mother and daughter. She asks if they are okay, and the mother, who is obviously very hurt, asks the lady to please take her daughter away from there, while the child just cries for her mother, and this woman lowers her head very sadly and apologizes. But she swears she will protect her daughter. But as soon as she turns to run, that giant praying mantis is ready to devour them both, and she is in shock, wondering if she is really going to die now. But finally, a hero appears to save the day, which is obviously our boy. And with several very fast sword strikes, he cuts that praying mantis to pieces, which really surprises that woman. She wonders if she really managed to get out alive, but she is very shocked and stares at the protagonist, wondering who this man is. But at that instant, another praying mantis that was nearby already runs to attack Randolph, and the woman in front of him warns him to be careful. But simply the Hydragon devours that praying mantis alive, and the woman is even more in shock, understanding absolutely nothing. While the Hydragon's heads are right behind our hero, and Randolph climbs on its head and tells her to stay around there because it's safer. And after the girl leaves, she, completely shocked, wonders if she is dreaming. But at that moment, the little girl lets go of her and runs toward her mother, begging for help, while the woman looks back at the protagonist, who is defeating several other praying mantises, as if they were mere insects, which they really are. Well, after that day, it was said that monsters appeared simultaneously all over the world, not just in Korea, and the monsters immediately killed people and destroyed human civilizations. However, it wasn't just monsters that appeared. Along with them, warriors emerged who could slice through the monsters that were immune to bullets, as if they were nothing. And one of them, playing the hero, announced to everyone that they shouldn't worry because he would protect them, and a new world would soon arise. So, basically the world changed overnight. And watching that video was another guy, commenting that they were very stupid, and that they were wasting their fragments of the golden rune. But he thinks that now it's confirmed, reality and Pangania are merging, and this guy is also a player, the one called Massacre. And from what he knows, Pangania and reality can merge into a single world as time passes, and upon the arrival of the era of chaos, everyone is a competitor, and those who manage to get more fragments of the golden rune and also more power will become the protagonists of this era. And looking at the Hall of Fame, he remembers that the rank remained fixed for 2 years, but it finally changed, and the highest score is the absurd amount of 220 points. But he is in doubt, wondering if this Randolph is the so-called Spectre. And from what he remembers, the Spectre was also known as the Ghost. Since no one knew his name, everyone referred to him by these two nicknames, and he was the first person to form an NPC caravan called the Demon Realm Expedition, and the only one to get very close to the game's true ending. And even though it ended in complete failure, he is undeniably the #1 player. And since the strongest character he owned would be summoned after death, he must have been summoned in Pangania the moment the expedition failed. And even if the appearance and equipment were reset, the talents of previous characters are kept. So because of that, he knows why he got such a high score. But while this Massacre thought of a plan to go after the protagonist, our boy peacefully returned to the game world, resting in his bathtub. While he thought that monsters actually appeared in that world, as well as players who were summoned, and he will take the forms of his characters. The situation is getting clearer and clearer. On his last character, he almost reached the end of the game with the Demon Realm Expedition, but the mercenary NPCs that were hired messed up the process, and even the friendly NPCs who were his companions. And no matter what possibilities he considers, their interference was always beyond his expectations. But what if all those variables that interfered were summoned players just like him, players who didn't want the ending to be reached, or players who considered him their rival? So basically he can think that people were targeting him the whole time, and that still might be the case. And if the boundary between reality and Pangania collapsed, he can't just hide after logging out. To ensure his safety in both worlds, he needs to get stronger as fast as possible, and that's why he is there. He already opens the door and runs right into the Snake Princess. She asks if he finished his communication with the stars, and our boy says of course he did, and that he came to keep his promise to her. And she, very excited, says that's great. But Randolph says he has a condition. She orders the girls out of the room and asks what the condition would be. And to her surprise, our boy says he wants her to take him to the sanctuary. And she, shocked, asks if he's crazy, while our boy knows the second main quest is to get a class, and the class he wants can only be gotten there. And so he tells her that in that place resides a star. And so after convincing Isabella, she ends up taking our boy to this so-called sanctuary. And apparently this place was full of guards. But Isabella killed everyone as if they were actually insects, while our boy in the back realizes it only took her a few minutes to take out all the guards. And there is no better ally than her. And to explain what the hell is happening, the scene goes back a few minutes in time, right after Randolph told her he wanted her to take him to the sanctuary. And after she got very indignant about it, he says there is a star there, which leaves her very surprised. And he says yes, but it is hidden. But in his mind he knows he found the fourth star by chance while leveling up his previous character. And he is probably the only player who knows its exact location. So he says that to lift her curse with the star's blessing, he needs that star. But Isabella, very surprised and also suspicious, says the sanctuary isn't a place just anyone can enter, and if someone finds out she secretly entered there and even brought someone along, it will be chaos. But our protagonist says no, she can enter, and they don't have time, so she should think carefully, because this is her only chance to leave the desert. And back to the present, he thinks to himself that if he hadn't managed to persuade her, what would be rolling on the floor right now would be his head. And finally, after walking for a while, they arrive at a certain location, and he says that down there is the Holy Land. And going down the stairs, the system warns that he found the secret desert sanctuary and activated the side quest, Explore the Sanctuary, and the rewards will be based on his exploration. But the system also gives him a warning stating he doesn't meet the recommended level, which is 8, and warns that this area is infested with poison and demonic energy. But Randolph knows that if it weren't for his hidden trait, he never would have been able to enter there. And under normal circumstances, a level 2 beginner could never step foot in there. And if he sends Isabella ahead and just completes the sanctuary exploration side quest, the rewards should be really good. But what matters right now isn't the quest, because that's where he is going to get his class, with main quest number 2 popping up, titled Get a Class, and the system warns that this quest will end as soon as he gets the class, and the reward will vary depending on the class he obtains. And reading this, the protagonist gets very excited, thinking that this time he will get that class. Only at that moment, the two stop in front of a cliff, while Isabella just smiles and says it looks like they took the wrong path. But he stops her right away, asking where she is going, while she explains that this bridge in front of them is clearly a trap, and the chains are designed to throw anyone who crosses down below. But while she was talking, our boy interrupts her and asks if she by any chance is scared, which makes her really pissed off right away. And she asks what he means by scared, and what the hell is that? And just so he knows, she is called the Snake Princess. But our boy says no. He tells her not to be so shy, and she says no, she isn't either. And she keeps talking a bunch of nonsense, but he tells her to stop right away, and says if that's all she can get on his back, which makes her even more nervous, asking how he dares to say that to the Snake Princess. But he, not caring about any of it, says if she doesn't want to get a cramp, she can get on now. And it's like he said before, they don't have much time, so he tells her to get on now, because when dawn breaks and the others see the dead guards, they will suspect her since she isn't at her house. And so, instead of wasting time because of fear, it's better for him to carry her on his back and run from there. And as soon as she gets on his back, very embarrassed, our boy tells her to hold on tight because he is going to start now simply dodging the pillars, which leaves her in shock, asking where he is going, and that is clearly the wrong direction since there is no path there. But not caring about anything, our boy jumps into the void, and so he activates his hidden trait, the mutant, which allows him to see what normal people can't see, which is basically an invisible staircase, and Isabella is completely surprised by this, wondering if there really is a path there, while our boy says of course, and that this is the true path, and Isabella, right behind him, is very surprised, wondering how he knows there's a path there, and even she, the second in command, didn't know about it. And in this sanctuary infested with poison and demonic energy, he has no trouble breathing, and there are a lot of weird things happening, even though he says he is just a star bearer. And our boy, feeling her suspicion, comments he didn't know the second in command of Faisalmare was so afraid of heights, and she points her finger and just tells him to shut up, while thinking he is really very weird for acting so confident in front of her. But it's very strange that this confidence isn't just out of pure strength, it's as if he is basically welcoming an old friend he hasn't seen in years. And very curiously, she asks him if they have met before, while our boy says they have never met in the same place, and she, very confused, wonders what he means by that, and he says that means he has already seen her but she has never seen him. And finally, after stepping on the last stair, a flash blinds them both, and they are automatically teleported to another place. And with his vision back, our boy realizes there is a domain barrier there, and it's a barrier conjured over the whole area, made only for those who followed the true path. And if his memory is correct, now they will have to fight. And right in front of them, several golems start to rise, ready to kill them, and Randolph knows that this time the guardians are golems, and judging by the size of the runes on their chests, they are definitely high-ranking, and at his current level, he clearly can't defeat them. So he asks Isabella very smilingly if her cramp has gotten better, and she just tells him to stop talking crap, just watch and shut his mouth. But at that moment, the two golems charge at them, and one of them is ready to deliver a monstrous strike to both of them. And as he attacks, Isabella stands still but then gives a confident little smile, landing a punch right along with the golem's punch, breaking its arm like it was nothing, and saying in a very epic pose that she is going to end him now. And she easily hops across the golem's broken pieces, running toward its core. And getting there, she slices the golem in half, while the protagonist, watching everything, realizes this character specializes in assassination and is absurdly strong. And well, he created this character himself, and she is completely broken, destroying the golems like it was nothing. And soon our boy recognizes that, so this is the strength of a level 8. And meanwhile, a status screen pops up for Randolph, warning him he can acquire the Golem Maker class, which surprises our boy, realizing the system is recognizing Isabella's skills as if they were his own. But he knows that in Pangania, summoner-type classes are very rare, so Golem Maker is a good class, and in terms of rank, it's at least high tier. But that's not the class he wants, so he declines it immediately, because the one that can give him the class he really wants is something completely different. And while he was thinking about this, Isabella got a little worried, with that poisonous fog disappearing out of nowhere. Except right behind the two of them, a gigantic being appears, and soon the system says that the ancestral king, the master of this mountain who was buried by the nameless star, is enraged with the invaders. And down below, Randolph thinks he finally appeared. The giant god who guards the star, the ancestral king Dramut. And soon the system issues a warning, stating the player's level is much lower than the recommended level, which is 10. And facing Dramut, our boy realizes an overwhelming pressure has appeared, and he is definitely the mountain guardian of the sanctuary. And back there, Isabella, a bit nervous, asks if he didn't come here expecting her to be able to defeat the mountain guardian, and our boy just tells her to relax. Because despite his appearance, he is actually quite gentle, and he would never attack first, except to our boy's surprise, Dramut doesn't even care about his words and immediately attacks Isabella. But she manages to dodge at the last second, but she is very scared by it, while our boy is also very embarrassed after what he said. And Isabella glares at him with pure hatred. And soon our boy comments that this is very weird, because he remembers him as a friendly creature that helped people. But Isabella right in front says he isn't friendly at all, and how could this giant snake be like that? But at that moment, Dramut begins to communicate with both of them, calling our protagonist the challenger of the sanctuary. And he says she must defeat him and prove her qualification. Except, in reality, he wasn't talking to Randolph, but to Isabella since she is much stronger than him, so he mistook her for the opponent. And she, desperate, says she is not the challenger, but Dramut says she defeated the Sentinels from before, and questions if she really wants to deny her intention now, which makes her very nervous, and so Dramut attacks with his tail again, and says that if she cannot prove herself, she won't leave there alive, and Isabella starts running in fear, repeatedly saying she is not the challenger, and just tells Randolph to hurry up and do what he came there to do. While our boy himself is a bit confused, because when he passed through this place before, he doesn't remember defeating Dramut, and he wonders if something has changed. Only at that moment he realizes what happened. The ancestral king Dramut, the mountain guardian who guards the star, is a giant god with a colossal body, and according to Dramut's lore, he is an enchanted beast whose body grew and gained the wisdom of the star's spiritual energy. And with his last character, he cleared this place when he was using Wilhelm, a level 10 character with 5 transcendent rank stars, and when he came to the sanctuary as Wilhelm, Dramut obediently guided him to the star, and the reason is simple, because he was qualified. So, in short, if you are weaker than him, he attacks you, and back then he was absurdly strong, so he realizes that maybe things will get a little complicated now. But finally he has a good idea, and looking to the side he notices Isabella isn't having a very good time. Panting, he realizes the situation is terrible, and because of the sanctuary's poison, her body isn't moving right, and if that thing steps on her, she will definitely die. But as the tail approached her, our boy yells for Dramut to stop right now, and at that moment the snake stops and stares right at our protagonist, asking how he knows his true name. And Randolph answers very confidently. He says his master has returned. Wilhelm is back, and so the snake moves toward him and asks if he is really Wilhelm, except right after, the creature starts laughing hard at him, and says he didn't even prepare himself to receive the star, and he is even weaker than his sentinels, and how the hell could he be Wilhelm? So he demands that he listen. Wilhelm was a powerful human, a perfect transcendent worthy of being his master, however he failed the Demon Realm expedition, and all his stars fell, which means he met a definitive death, and even if he had vanished, such an inferior creature has no right to speak his master's name, and he lunges at Randolph to devour him. But before he could be swallowed, he orders the creature to honor the contract they made, which makes Dramut stop instantly, and he asks how the boy knows about the existence of his contract with Wilhelm, since no one should know about that, but of course our protagonist remembers it, because the contract states that the the one who obtains the mountain star, buried by the star, will learn the true name of the mountain guardian, and will become the new master of the place, and the guardian obeys his master's commands. The contents of the contract cannot be revealed to anyone, and if revealed, the one who breaks the agreement will die because of the curse. And our boy knows he only said that because he remembered the game's lore. Fortunately, the game's rules still apply there, and it is as expected. Since this body belongs to Randolph, the curse doesn't affect him. And soon Dramat, very curious, asks who this creature is and how he knows these things. And our hero says that if he wants to know who he is, he must guide him to the star so he can prove himself. But Dramat says the star will show no mercy to someone without qualifications, and he will catch fire as soon as he approaches it. But our boy, confident, says that might happen. But he asks if by any chance the creature is afraid the star will recognize him as its master, and he will have to bow his head to him. But obviously, Dramat, very pissed off, says that is really funny. He is just a kid who looked like he'd be destroyed in a single bite, and he doesn't know what gives him the confidence to act so arrogantly. But even so, he agrees. He will guide him to the star because he doesn't believe he is Wilhelm. But seeing how he knows about the contract, killing him doesn't feel right, and he prefers the star itself to get rid of him, soon turning around to guide them both. And finally, after walking for a long time, Isabella is very surprised, asking if this is really the place where the star is. But Randolph steps forward and says this is exactly the place, and the object on the altar, to be exact, is the star, which is simply a skull. That looks pretty worn out, by the way, and there's nothing special about it either. And Isabella, confused, asks if the skull is the star. Our boy says that to be more precise, it is Rhea's face. And when Rhea, the twin goddess of Pangania, died, her body split into 32 fragments and scattered across the continent. And these 32 fragments of Rhea's body are what they call stars. And our hero knows they are used as catalysts to break the player's limits and make them achieve transcendence. And as soon as he picks up the skull, he feels the power coursing through his body, and he instantly bursts into flames, which leaves Isabella in shock back there, asking if he is okay. But Dramat, watching everything, laughs, saying he warned him, and he would only burn upon approaching the star. And even though he acted with confidence, the star ended up rejecting him, so he must burn to death. But what they didn't know was that, inside that blaze, our boy thought this Dramat is really annoying, and this star kills the player in only one situation. When you skip the encounter with Dramat using some bug, and no matter how messy the process was, he still went through Dramat. So there is no problem. The real problem is whether or not he can get the class he wants. And from what he knows, if you get a star without having a star, it will give you that class. But not even he had tried this before, and only learned it by accident. But as he stared at the skull, it starts talking to him, saying, Void, Skillful Hands, Absolute Master, Weapon Master, Giant Demon Resistance, Beast Lord, Golden Grace, Celestial Mutant and Glutton, Great Sage, Nature and Heart of the Monarch, and finally, you who faces destruction. And right after the last phrase, the skull breaks, and the system immediately reports that his mana was converted into stellar energy, and he acquired the main skill, Star Piercing level 1, and the sub-skill, Blessing of the Stars level 1 as well. And he also acquires the Stellar Effect, where he receives plus 5 points to all his attributes, and he gains more power as the number and type of stars he possesses increase. And even after Transcendence, the Stellar Effect won't disappear. And finally, he got the class he wanted, called Successor of the Stars. And right behind our boy watching it all, Isabella is in shock, wondering if he really absorbed the star. And at that moment, our hero gets very serious and asks Isabella what she wants to do once she gets rid of the curse. And Isabella quickly says she wants to leave the desert and find the Dersian family bloodline. Then our boy turns around and says he will give her the blessing so she can leave the desert, but he has a condition, and she asks what it is, and he quickly says he wants her to serve him for a year, and after that he will guarantee her freedom and help her find her family's bloodline. But then she starts thinking about that queen whom she also served. But when she was getting really nervous, Randolph went over to her and touched her shoulder, telling her directly that he is not like the queen and that he does not lie, which surprised Isabella a lot. And after thinking a little bit, she kneels in front of him and says she will serve him, and our boy, always confident, says she made a great decision. But he turns slightly to the side and says, by the way, Dramat, he asks if the owner of the star is his master. And Dramat, a little nervous, confirms yes, that is right. Then our boy, very angry, says that he must bow before him, you damn monster. But while this was happening in the sanctuary, in that queen's palace, she realized something shocking. She discovers that Isabella entered the sanctuary along with the slaves she captured, so they must capture them immediately at all costs. And after he does that with Dramat, the scene goes back to South Korea. In a cafe called Angel Us Coffee, two guys who seem to be twins ask a girl if this Randolph is really Phantom. Thinking about it, they are almost sure of it. Even ignoring the first main quest, getting a higher class score than the player Gracia is impossible, unless the person knows the game inside out. The blue-haired twin comments that the veteran player Phantom, who has been playing for 5 years and is also known as Phantom, has finally appeared, and this will surely cause a massive uproar. The twin on the right asks if they can contact him before anyone else does. The girl in front of them questions how they would do that since they searched for 5 years and never found around him. One of them comments that it's because until now Phantom hadn't become a real player. But now that he is truly active, there must be a way to find him. The other suggests they should try to fish for something. Since the secret auction was opened as a reward for completing the second main quest, Phantom is definitely going to use it. The girl agrees, saying he will need a lot of items if he wants to place first in the third main quest, so she thinks about this fishing idea. From what they know, the secret auction is where players trade items. The tactic is to post a high-quality item for a low price, and then use a talisman skill to place a tracker on the buyer. Rookie players who don't know this often buy the cheap item at the auction, and then they are tracked, robbed, or even killed. But one of the twins says Phantom would never fall for that, because it's a very obvious trick. If he is the real Phantom, he definitely knows every talisman option in the game. But the girl starts shaking and insists he might fall into the trap. She gets extremely excited, remembering he failed last time, but still managed to start the grand expedition. She thinks that if he sees a very good and cheap item at the auction, he might rush to buy it. She warns that if they want to challenge him, they can go ahead, but they should be prepared to be killed, because that is the Phantom she knows. As she was saying a bunch of very weird things, the twins quickly call the cops, reporting a stalker. While those three were talking about Phantom, in another location, another player started reading the Hall of Fame. The panel announces that the rights to Main Quest 2 for the player Massacre have been revoked, and his participation in the auction has been cancelled. But, looking at the Hall of Fame again, he notices Randolph now has 230 points. He wonders what kind of class would give that many points. It seems Massacre won't be able to use the secret auction for a while. Not that it matters, because he believes he can kill the others easily. And as long as he kills anyone at the top of the ranking, he can climb back up his own rank. Right after that, the scene goes back to the world of Pangania. The side quest pops up for Randolph, titled Sanctuary Exploration, and the exploration rate hit an incredible 100%. It's an unbelievable percentage, even seeing it with his own eyes. He was the first to clear the desert sanctuary, acquiring the Sanctuary Conqueror achievement. Our boy thinks that was really unexpected, and the trip wasn't as uncomfortable as he thought. He knows he can now escape the sanctuary and finish the quest, killing two birds with one stone. Only, at that moment, to Randolph's surprise, he received accumulated experience, and his level went up. He is happy, thinking he finally reached level 3. Leveling up is much slower compared to normal characters. The more talents he has, the more experience he'll need. The amount of experience he needs is probably 10 times higher than normal. But his attributes increase a lot more because of that, so he can't complain. Anyway, the level doesn't matter that much right now, because the items he got as a reward from the main quest are much more important. They were two extremely rare items for his current level, and one of them was the Cloak of Shadows. When its effect is activated, the cloak makes the wearer invisible. It's basically a free stealth skill. While they were escaping the sanctuary, Dramat noticed something and saw they were enemies. The Guardian warned his master that he detected intruders in the sanctuary, which surprises our boy. Right next to him, Isabella says it's probably the Queen's pursuit squad. Our hero replies that they stayed in the sanctuary for a long time, so that was to be expected. Isabella asks what he is going to do. The Queen herself wouldn't come, but the squad would have considerable strength. And, even with the Mountain Guardian, she doubts they can handle them all like that. But our boy looks at her calmly and says Dramat is the Guardian, so why would they need to fight? Isabella, surprised, agrees that's exactly it. Our hero gets off the massive serpent and says he is counting on him, leaving Dramat alone to handle all the work. A little away from the battle, the sanctuary begins to shake. Isabella, right behind him, asks if it's going to be okay for them to just leave like that. The boy reminds her she herself said the Queen wouldn't come, so it'll be fine. There's no way the entire pursuit squad has arrived yet. It's probably just an advance unit. If they stay there until the main force arrives, the enemies will surely surround the whole sanctuary, and the two of them will have no chance to escape. Those guys are after them anyway, so he is getting out of there as fast as possible. Isabella mentions she almost misunderstood, because she thought he was abandoning Dramat for being useless. The boy explains the Mountain Guardian cannot leave the sanctuary, so only they can escape. He knows he needs to get out of there and use the gate at the end of the desert. Since he just lifted Isabella's curse with the blessing of the stars, there will be no problem using the gate. The real problem is that the portal needs time to activate. After running a lot, they finally arrive at the portal. Isabella, a bit nervous, starts to speak, but the boy interrupts her, confirming that once they pass through that area, they'll be out of the desert. However, the portal needs time to activate, and when Isabella asks how much time, the boy answers it's about 12 hours. As she can see, it's not a suitable place to hide in that desert. Ideally, the whole squad would go straight to the sanctuary, but it's more likely they'll try to track them. However, Dramat is delaying the enemies, and by the time they realize the two escaped, they'll have bought some time. With this free time, he warns he needs to communicate with the stars. Actually, he thinks he needs to check what's going on in real life because he can't stay in the game forever. He asks Isabella if he can trust her, which leaves her quite surprised. Quickly, she draws her daggers and says she will protect him. Basically, our boy just tricked her and logs out of the game. He spawns back in his bed, feeling like a complete loser, he gets up thinking he still isn't used to this feeling of returning to his real body instead of Randolph's body. He grabs his phone to read the latest news, but notices no disaster alerts or warnings have been issued. It seems the monsters haven't appeared to the rest of the world yet. From what he noticed, real life and Pangania are merging little by little, and that is a certainty. But there is still a lot he doesn't know. Soon there will be more monsters, and mainly the real-life players worry him a lot. He will need to return to real life periodically to gather information. While he was on his phone, he received a very peculiar message saying, "Darling, are you okay?" Our boy quickly recognized the message was from Kim Soyeon. On the same day, a few hours later in a coffee shop, a girl walks up to a table. She is talking to a guy on the phone, complaining that he hit on her saying he was rich, but now he is acting cheap. The guy asks to talk face to face, but she asks what reason they would have to meet, since they have nothing to talk about. She warns she is meeting a friend today and tells him not to call anymore. The guy, annoyed, asks who she is meeting. She hangs up very pissed off, calling the guy an idiot. She thinks that even if Park Hyun-myung was pathetic, at least he listened to her, and thinks she should have stayed with him a little longer. But she reflects that if he only had more money, she wouldn't have broken up with him. To Kim Seon's surprise, our boy suddenly appears. She hides her excitement and comments he arrived early, since she thought she'd have to wait. But our boy cuts to the chase and asks why she called, and if there was some emergency. She dodges the question, asking if he has plans for later, and comments he seems to have changed a bit. Our boy tells her to just say what she wants because he needs to leave. She thinks he is acting proud and remembers he didn't used to be like that, so she teases him, saying he always comes when she calls, even today. She tries to use her charm on him, acting manipulative. With her eyes sparkling, she says she realized how good he was, kept thinking about him, and regretted the breakup. Then she asks if by any chance he missed her. Our boy realizes she is completely crazy and just stares at the menu, wondering if he should order something to drink. He doesn't even listen to what she says, and after a few minutes, simply gets up. He announces that if she is done, he is leaving. This surprises the girl, who gets furious and tells him to wait. She asks if he heard that she misses him, and questions if he is acting like this just because she broke up with him. Our boy doesn't even turn around, looks at her from the corner of his eye, and asks if her new boyfriend knows about this meeting. He suggests that if she wants to hit on other men, she should at least delete the Instagram photos, and not just take down her profile picture. She boils with rage upon hearing this, and our protagonist simply walks away, leaving her in shock. As he walks, he thinks that in the past he would have panicked, but today he is strangely calm. He wonders if Randolph's growth in the game is affecting his mind in real life. While the hero was leaving the coffee shop, he heard screaming in the street. In the middle of the street, there was a criminal with a box cutter, yelling at the people around and asking if they were enjoying the show. The girl taken hostage begged to be let go, but he was ready to attack her with the blade. He screamed for everyone to see what he would do, threatening to kill her right there. But, before the girl was attacked, our hero grabbed the criminal's arm, leaving him surprised. The man immediately asked who he was. At that moment, the girl opened her eyes and saw Park Hyun-myung staring at the criminal, saying that's enough and he should stop now. And after he grabs this guy's arm, the criminal asks why he's meddling and orders him to let go. But our protagonist goes ahead and squeezes his wrist even harder, making the guy very scared and warning him he's going to break it. Our hero thinks that even without using any fragment of his broken golden rune, he feels like he could simply break the guy's wrist, and apparently it wasn't an illusion. His real body has definitely changed, so he easily throws the guy away and walks toward the girl. The girl, very emotional, looks at him and says that thanks to him she is alive, and she doesn't even know how to thank him. But our boy starts staring at her a bit suspiciously, and she asks why he's looking at her like that. Meanwhile, Hyun-myung wonders if the reason she looks familiar is because they had met before, and apparently it's true, she is the woman from that time. Surprised, she asks if he wants to say something, but he says no, that she just looks like someone he knows. However, while they were talking calmly, that completely out of control extra charges at Hyun-myung. The girl gets very scared and tells him to look behind him. But, easily, he turns around and the guy hits the air. At that moment, the boy grabs him by the head and slams him into the ground. This leaves the girl very surprised, because the protagonist didn't look strong, but apparently he is, and very much so. After a few minutes, the police finally show up, except the two cops say he needs to go to the station to give a statement, which surprises Hyun-myung. At that moment, the girl steps forward and tells them to wait a minute, because he was just trying to help her, and she was the one who reported the stalker case. But the cops say that even so, that was an act of violence, so he needs to come with them. The girl gets indignant and questions how that could be an act of violence, since the man had a knife, and asks if they think he should have just stood there and watched. In the back, our boy, looking really tired, comments that seriously, he doesn't have time for this. But the officer repeats that he cannot disobey the law. But, at that moment, the girl introduces herself as Kim Hana, a reporter from the CK broadcasting station. She says that instead of bothering an innocent person, they should talk to the real victim, or if they'd prefer this case to go public. This really surprises the officers, who look at each other immediately. Soon the people around start recognizing her. They wonder if she isn't that woman who saved a child from a monster on YouTube, and they remember she was on TV too. And from what they recall, her name was Kim Hana, so it's definitely her. After thinking for a bit, the officers admit they are wrong and that the victim should accompany them. Before leaving, she thanks our boy. Hyomyoung says she doesn't need to thank him, but she goes up to him and hands him her card. She explains she's a reporter dedicated to covering stories about the Dimensional Warriors. Hyomyoung, surprised, asks what Dimensional Warriors are. She asks if he doesn't know about it, and explains they are the people who appeared on the same day as the monsters, and who defeated them. That's why people call them Dimensional Warriors. Soon our hero realizes that these so-called Dimensional Warriors are basically the players. Unexpectedly, almost no one talks about Pangania directly. He thinks the idea of an interdimensional attack seems easier to believe than a game turning into reality. But while the two were talking, the protagonist's ex-girlfriend comes running toward him. She asks Hyomyoung if he's okay, and already grabs him, worried if he got hurt. Hana asks if she is his girlfriend, but our boy denies it, saying she definitely isn't, and tells Hana he doesn't have a business card. So Hana asks if he'd like to give his number to her. The boy agrees right away. This leaves his ex in shock at Hyomyoung's attitude, because he really has changed. Hana takes down the number and says Park Hyomyoung is a very pretty name. She asks him to text her the next day so they could get coffee or dinner on her. The protagonist says he won't decline. Watching all of this from the corner, his ex is completely indignant. She wonders how he could do that to her, since the Park Hyomyoung she knew was just a nobody, a pathetic piece of trash. But after walking through the city for a while, Hana gets a call from the broadcasting station. The person asks if she is having a good weekend. The guy on the phone explains the executive director went on a business trip and left a task for her. She asks what task it would be. He says it's an interview with Gracia. This paralyzes Kim Hana instantly. She asks if it's the Gracia she's thinking of, the person who saved America and is now being treated like a hero. She questions why they would ask her to take care of such a big shot. But the guy on the phone says he has no idea. What he knows is that the all-powerful superhero wants to see her, and that he was on his way to Korea. While this conversation was happening in real life, back in the game, Isabella was defeating several enemies to protect our protagonist. Except obviously she was already very tired, and the guys glaring at her warn the Snake Princess that the queen orders her return, and that she must hand over the slave behind her, and they will pretend nothing happened, but she obviously refuses to do that. So they start yelling that she is a fool and that they have permission to kill the traitor. Only, to Isabella's surprise, the portal finally activates, which surprises all the enemies. Our boy pulls her in and says she held out well. When she asks if he finished communicating with the stars, Randolph says of course he did. Seeing that they are about to escape, the boss of those guys orders them to capture them now, or else they will get away. But right in front of Isabella, our boy reaches out his hand and says that since she kept her promise to protect him, he will also keep his promise. He activates his skill, Star Piercing Level 1, and destroys almost the entire squad in seconds, burning them alive. He tells her that this is the moment of her freedom and that she should enjoy it. Watching that, she is in shock, asking if that is really the power of a star bearer. While our boy calls her and warns that it's still not too late, and if she wants to go back, he won't stop her. But she, completely amazed, refuses and says she will follow him, and she is definitely going with him. The system announces that the limit curse placed on Isabella has been nullified by the blessing of the stars. The connection has been established, and there are 12 possible cities to teleport to. The destination Randolph chose was Arcana, in the central continent. Right after they arrive, the system welcomes them to the Golden City, Arcana, and also gives a tip about the place, stating it's a city where materialism has reached its limit. The wealth there equals that of a high-ranking noble, and everything in the city runs on gold. Looking around in great surprise, Isabella comments that the city is truly extravagant. Randolph replies that this is the Golden City, where everything can be solved with gold. But first they need to get some money. Isabella, very excited, answers that if gold is the problem, he shouldn't worry because she brought 300 coins with her. She shows the pouch, which surprises our boy. However, he warns that he thinks that will last a maximum of one night there. This leaves her in complete shock. She says that's impossible because in the desert, with 300 gold coins, you can buy 10 slaves, and that is 10 times the price of a cleric. But Randolph just tells her to look at the prices in the city, which are completely different. So very embarrassed, she asks what they are going to do. But our boy asks why she is worrying so much, since there is money scattered all over the place there. But she asks what he means and what places those would be. Then we see our boy pointing behind him to a place called Casino. She is very surprised to see he wants to go into the casino to make money, while he, very confident, just tells her to relax because he is quite lucky. And so Randolph enters the casino and activates another of his hidden traits, the so-called Blessing of Gold. And this Golden City, Arcana, is also known by another name, the City of Pleasures. And in Pangania, every minor city operates as an independent monarchy. And there, in the City of Pleasures, there is only one law where money decides everything. The place where all the wealth is gathered is the Odissin Casino. And when they finally arrive to enter the casino, the security guard apologizes but says they cannot enter. Anyone with a deposit of less than 10,000 gold coins is not allowed to enter there. Very surprised, Isabella questions what he means by 10,000 gold. She goes goes to Randolph and asks why he didn't warn her they'd need to deposit money. She says she only has 100 gold left, after they took a bath and bought clothes. But our boy reassures her, saying it doesn't matter since they never had money anyway and the clothes were necessary. He states he has another way. Except right in front of them, the security guard warns that since they have no money, they must leave because they are disturbing the other customers. At that moment, our boy walks up to the security guard and says he doesn't have the deposit, but he can offer an item as collateral. As soon as the guy looks at the artifact, he is amazed, while Randolph states that should be more than enough. That pearl is the Fairy Queen's tear. Staring at the jewel, the security guard starts trembling with excitement. Immediately, everyone bows before them, saying they will be treated as VIP guests. This greatly surprises even Isabella. She goes to Randolph and asks what got into them. Our boy explains that the Fairy Queen's tear is a talisman. It was one of the rewards he received when they visited the sanctuary, and it is worth at least 1 million gold. Uncomfortable with this, she asks if he is really okay with handing over the item like that. Our boy guarantees it's fine, because it's just a deposit. As soon as he gets some money, he can pay to get it back. After a few hours and several rounds of casino games, everyone around the protagonist is completely in shock. Everyone says he is the god of gambling. In a short time, he managed to turn 1,250 gold into more than 1,400,000. And the amount just keeps going up. This surprised even Randolph himself, who thinks this is the expected power of the blessing of gold. When it comes to money, there is no better hidden trait. Isabella, right beside him, celebrates, saying they are rich, but our boy replies no, and that money is hers. Only right next to them, one of the employees approaches trembling. The employee warns that they will give him all the money he won, but now he is banned and will never be able to enter the Odison casino again. Our boy asks the reason for this decision. The man explains that every customer who copies his bets ends up winning more chips. This is becoming a serious problem, so he needs to leave. Soon he is surrounded by several security guards who politely ask him to leave the premises. Isabella gets very angry and glares at them threateningly, but Randolph quickly stops her. He says it's fine, he will leave, but first he needs to talk to the owner of that place. The manager warns that is not possible and asks him to leave quietly, but Randolph warns him not to get things wrong. He states that it's not him who wants to meet the casino boss. It is the boss who will want to meet him, and he orders the manager to go tell the boss right now, because he will understand. In an exclusive room, the casino owner stares intently at the pearl. He activates the hand of observation skill and begins to analyze the item. He is very hopeful that the artifact is real, but wonders who could possess something like that. The Fairy Queen's tear is carried only by the Fairy Queen's knights, and fairies rarely leave their realm. A fairy knight is so powerful that to kill just one, at least 3 level 10 individuals need to team up. This makes the item almost impossible to obtain. They searched everywhere, and he never imagined the item would come to him right in his own casino. While he was analyzing the talisman, on the other side of the door, the manager calls for Mr. Hudson. Hudson asks what happened. The manager explains that the man who left the talisman asked to meet with him, and that he sent word that Hudson would definitely want to meet him. This surprises Hudson immediately. With a little smile on his face, he orders the manager to bring him to the room because he will prepare some tea. After a few minutes, our boy is face to face with Hudson. Hudson realizes that is the man who used the fairy tear as collateral, and notes he doesn't look like someone very strong. So he starts the conversation, telling Randolph he heard he wanted to talk to him, and asks him to explain what he meant by that message. Our boy replies that the message was literal and has no other hidden motive. He knew Hudson would want to meet him, so he had the message delivered. He claims to know that Hudson needs the talisman that was left as collateral. This leaves Hudson in shock right away, but he tries to calm down and play it off, saying he just collects rare talismans. He admits the boy was right, and that he was about to call him to negotiate buying the pearl. Our boy warns that, if he offers a good price, he won't refuse the sale. Hudson thinks that's great and asks to talk about the price first. He asks what the boy thinks of 2 million gold, and says he should consider that a generous offer. Right next to Randolph, Isabella is very surprised by this. She can't believe he wants to pay 2 million for a single talisman. But, at that moment, our boy sets the price at 20 million gold. Hudson argues back, saying 20 million is enough to buy a mansion in downtown Arcana. He argues that no matter how rare it is, a talisman can only be used to reforge weapons, and asks if the boy really believes the item is worth that much. But our boy replies sharply, saying that to him it isn't, but to Hudson it is. Hudson insists, saying that not even he can pay that amount for a mere hobby. Our protagonist then delivers his final blow. He says that if it were just a hobby, Hudson would be right. But the Fairy Queen's tear isn't just a talisman to him. It is something he desperately needs to join the city council. This leaves Hudson extremely worried. Soon our boy explains that the minimum qualification to join the council is reaching level 10. However, a person must reach that level using their own strength. For someone like Hudson, who isn't from a combat class, that is is almost impossible. Therefore, he needs an item that removes equipment restrictions, which is exactly what the Fairy Queen's tier does. With it, Hudson will be able to use high-level equipment to make up for his lack of combat attributes. And the reason a merchant, a casino owner, wants to join the city council is only one: to be recognized by his fiance's family, the Knight Serengeti. This revelation leaves Hudson in a panic. Our boy stares at him very seriously, remembering Serengeti. She is the only daughter of Marquis Weiser, from the Balan Kingdom, known as the White Knight. She led 500 knights during the Demon Realm expedition by his side. In the end, she sacrificed her own legs fighting the Demon King to save Wilhelm's life. She was, quite simply, his right-hand woman. Back then, he considered her actions as nothing more than a dramatic event, because before coming to Pangania, all of that was just a game. However, after Wilhelm's death and being brought there, he realized the NPCs can act like players. He remembered Serengeti's last words. She said that if she didn't return from the expedition, she wanted him to please deliver a keepsake for her. That was how he got Serengeti's necklace. At the time, he wondered about the reason for that item. The description said it was a precious necklace containing a picture of Serengeti and a picture of her fiancé Hudson. At that moment, our boy, very curious, wondered if that was part of the game's original story. Based on everything he knew about the character, Serengeti didn't have a fiancé, so someone interfered with the character's predefined story. The reason the game accepted this so naturally was because Hudson was a player like him, someone who was assimilated into that world. Back in the room, Hudson says in shock that he never told that to anyone. He asks how the boy discovered his secret. Randolph thinks Hudson probably arrived in that world long before him, so he needs to extract as much information as possible about the real history and about the other players. He answers Hudson that he didn't discover the secret on his own, but that he heard it. The stars told him. Very nervous, Hudson quickly asks what he means by the stars. He wants to know what the boy is talking about and if he is claiming to be the star bearer. Our boy warns that he isn't asking Hudson to believe him, but that he can give Hudson what he wants. He reveals he doesn't need money, just for Hudson to accept a simple condition. Very nervous, Hudson asks what that condition is. Our boy orders him to tell the stars his true life story. He warns that he will decide whether to help Hudson or not after hearing him. However, the rule is clear. He can only tell the truth because the stars only favor the truth. Hudson asks if he really wants to hear his life story. On the other hand, our boy thinks proposing this was a difficult decision. A star bearer isn't a title normally found among NPCs. Revealing personal information can leave a player exposed to the hunters. These hunters are NPCs who specialize in tracking players in the world of Pangania. They consider players to be criminals and execute them as soon as they see them. Players have already died countless times at their hands. The only effective method to survive the hunters is extreme caution. Revealing personal information in Pangania is practically suicide, so most players hide their identities. But even knowing this risk, Randolph is sure Hudson will accept the offer. To Hudson, Serengeti isn't just a random NPC. She is much more than that. And indeed, Hudson starts looking at his fiance's picture and agrees to share his life story. He says he will start by talking about Serengeti, since most of the things he wants to achieve are intertwined with her. He says she was a brave knight who participated in the Demon Realm expedition, led by the 8 heroes. As soon as Randolph hears this, he is completely perplexed. He mentally asks himself what story he is talking about and what this 8 heroes thing means. It was Wilhelm who led that expedition. He questions Hudson directly about this. Hudson replies that Wilhelm was the most famous leader, but that the Demon Realm expedition was conducted jointly by all 8 heroes. He reveals there were heavy internal conflicts between them, which ended up leading to the expedition's total failure. At least that is how the story is told. Hearing this, our boy wonders about these so-called internal conflicts and tries to figure out where this version of the story came from. He asks if Hudson knows who the 8 heroes are. Hudson very seriously answers of course he knows. They are legendary people on the continent, and one of them is considered the strongest after Wilhelm, the hero named Gracia. At that moment, the scene cuts to the real world. A blonde boy stares at his phone, watching the news about the man who defeated several monsters while riding a dragon. The report was being presented by Kim Hana. Right behind the blonde boy, the agent appears and calls him Gracia. She announces she managed to set up an interview with Kim Hana, the Korean reporter he had mentioned. The boy just says thanks, but the agent apologizes and says she needs to ask something. She wants to know if he really needs to go to Korea in person. If he wanted, he could simply have the reporter brought there. The government prefers he stays in the United States in case of new monster attacks. But Gracia says no, he needs to go in person himself, because he has a strong feeling that the man in the video might be the friend he has been looking for. And right after that, the scene goes back to our boy, with Hudson telling him that Serengeti was a brave knight who participated in the Grand Demon Realm expedition, led by the 8 heroes. But hearing this story about 8 heroes, Randolph asks what he is talking about, and questions if it wasn't Wilhelm who led the expedition. Hudson replies that Wilhelm was the most famous among them, but the Grand Demon Realm expedition was conducted jointly by the 8 heroes. He says there was a heavy internal conflict between them which led to the expedition's failure. Or at least that is what the story says. Hearing about this internal conflict, Our boy is in shock, wondering what kind of madness this is. But after that, he logs out and returns to Korea, now finally at his date with that journalist. She notices he is acting weird and asks if he didn't like the meat. He brushes it off, saying it's not that, just that some things happened last night and he is a bit tired. In his mind, he regrets asking Hudson to tell his personal life story. The man simply spent the whole night crying while talking, and because of that, he had to stay awake in the game. Focusing on the real world, he asks the girl if the restaurant isn't too expensive, and says he doesn't feel right eating for free, but she immediately replies that he saved her from that stalker. And honestly, one dinner isn't nearly enough to thank him. He replies humbly that it was something anyone should do, but she insists no, and that only someone brave like him would have done that. Only at that moment she gets surprised and starts staring at the table behind them. Our boy, curious, asks what is happening. She warns that the woman at the other table is the same one who was with him last time, and that she keeps staring at them. When Hyunmyoung turns around, he wonders what kind of absurd coincidence that is. The guy with her looks a lot like the one from the Instagram photos. From what he remembers, his name is Jung Jin-woo, and he must be his ex's current boyfriend. Back at their table, the journalist asks if he doesn't feel uncomfortable being near her, and offers to switch tables. But he says it's fine and that she doesn't need to worry because they really don't have any kind of relationship anymore. Except at that instant, someone calls his name, Park Hyun-myung. It's his ex's boyfriend asking mockingly if he followed Kim So-yeon there. The guy says, very annoyed, that he not only keeps bothering the girl after the breakup, but now he's become a stalker, and calls him a shameless bastard. The people around start paying attention, wondering if the boy really is a stalker. Jung Jin-woo continues the act, saying he heard that last time Hyun-myung cried and begged his ex to go with him to a coffee shop. He warns that they are already broken up and that he should stop insisting. Our boy, totally lost, doesn't understand where he got this story about insisting. But looking at Seon's confident face, he realizes the lie and understands the whole situation. Jung Jin-woo glares at the protagonist and threatens that if he keeps following his girlfriend, he will end up killing him. Only at that moment, Kim Hana gets up from her chair. She warns that she stayed quiet at first, but the more she listens to the lies, the more ridiculous it gets, and asks if he knows what he is talking about. Jung Jin-woo mocks her, asking if the protagonist brought another woman to show off, and questions if she is a rental girlfriend. Hearing this, Hana gets very angry and charges at him. The guy asks how much Hyunmyoung is paying for her services, and says that judging by her looks, it must be around 500,000 won. He claims he will pay double so she learns when not to meddle. Hana replies that she made the restaurant reservation herself, and that she was only thanking the protagonist for helping her. But the guy, extremely arrogant, takes cash from his wallet and throws it at her. He asks if 1 million won isn't enough, and offers 2 million so the two filthy people can go somewhere else. With a lot of hatred, the reporter slaps him hard in the face, calling him a jerk, which in fact, he is, but the guy, thinking he owns the world, warns that she hit him first and that she should watch her teeth, raising his hand to strike her too. But before he even touches her, our boy kicks his leg, making him fall face first onto the floor. Hyunmyoung warns that's enough, and that he is not innocent at all for wanting to hit a woman. The guy gets up with a lot of rage and charges at the protagonist. But Park Hyunmyoung grabs his head and pins him to the ground, coldly repeating that he told him to stop. Jung Jin-woo wonders what is happening and how he can be so strong. He questions if that is really the strength of a normal human. In the back, the protagonist's ex tells her current boyfriend he is embarrassing her and tells him to get up already. Our boy, wanting to end the scene, suggests they step outside to talk. He reminds him that the guy started the fight and asks him to make things easier for everyone. But Jung Jin-woo, furious at being humiliated in front of his girlfriend, decides he can't let this go. He warns that Hyunmyoung messed with the wrong person and pulls something out of his pocket. It's simply a fragment of the golden rune. At that moment, a glowing ring starts to surround Jung Jin-woo's body. The people in the restaurant are shocked, realizing he is a dimensional warrior. Quickly, he grabs the protagonist. The people are amazed seeing that he actually transformed. Wanting to kill our boy right there, he violently throws him to the ground and tells him to try talking again. Hyunmyoung thinks he never imagined the guy was actually a player. He wonders why he doesn't give a damn about the situation. He saw him transforming, so why is he acting like it's nothing? He even wonders if the guy didn't hit him that hard. Soon he realizes he is calm because of his hidden trait, the great sage. Jung Jin-woo, foaming with rage, says he only let his guard down for a second, and Hyunmyoung dared to make him look like a fool. But now he is going to pay. But our boy, calmly observing the enemy's status, notices he is a level 4 Lancer. Only a level 4. In Pangania's system, levels go from 1 to 10. Each level requires an absurdly higher amount of experience to level up, and the cost increases depending on how many talents the player has. That's why characters get stronger with more talents, but level up slower. It becomes clear to him that Jung Jin-woo belongs to the group with very few talents. Even so, the reason his level is so low is simple. He never really fought. This Jung Jin-woo is a cowardly beginner player who spent the whole time running away since he was synchronized with Pangania. After some strokes of luck, he survived the main quest and got a high-ranking class. With the reward, he reached a high enough rank to unlock the log out button and never went back to the game. Our boy can read all this without even needing to investigate much. He knows not everyone starts with the heart of the iron-blooded monarch like he did, so adapting must not have been easy for the guy. The ex-girlfriend, wanting to end the humiliation, grabs Young Jinwoo's arm, says everything is fine and asks to leave because everyone is watching. The guy plays it off, agrees, and says he lost the urge to hit him. But before leaving, he points his finger and tells Park Hyun-myung to consider himself lucky. He warns that the boy only survived because of Seyun, and tells him to never come near her again. Our protagonist just watches, realizing the guy only activated the rune to show off. He is wasting the valuable time of his fragment of the golden rune as if it were nothing. Hyun-myung is sure this guy won't live for long. The journalist goes up to our boy and asks, scared, if he is okay. He assures her he is. Very angry, she says they should report the attacker to the police. But the protagonist says no and that they can forget it since they were the ones who hit the guy first. Except while he was talking, an immense pressure took over the place. The people around wonder if an earthquake is happening, but our boy recognizes this feeling immediately. He knows this is the start of a collapse. At that instant, terrifying monsters infiltrate the restaurant. The journalist goes into shock, as does everyone inside. The moment she was about to scream, our boy covers her mouth and tells her to stay quiet and wait a minute. She is surprised to realize that, incredibly, the monsters are not attacking the people. Our boy realizes they got very lucky. They are just putrid worms. At most, they feed on corpses that are already on the floor. If no one attacks them first, they pose no immediate danger. But obviously, these monsters ended up surrounding Young Jinwoo near the exit. His girlfriend, terrified, tells him to do something. He, completely desperate, wields his spear to attack. Our boy realizes the guy is indeed an idiot and yells for him not to attack under any circumstances. But Young Jinwoo ignores the warning, attacks, and defeats one of the worms with a single strike. Thinking he is invincible and that the monsters are weak, he starts yelling that he will kill all of them. The people around start cheering, treating him like a true dimensional warrior. Receiving all this attention, he smiles, thinking there was no reason to be afraid of those pathetic things. But Park Hyun-myung knows the situation is going to get out of control. He tells Kim Hana to run as fast as possible and stay as far away from that idiot as she can. After Young Jinwoo defeats several of those lesser monsters, a thick fog takes over the restaurant. The people wonder where that came from. The Lancer's vision is completely blocked, he can't see anything and doesn't know what is happening. At that instant, two giant hands grab his head in the middle of the smoke. A demonic being, with a terrifying voice, asks who killed its children. Young Jinwoo freezes in terror, feeling like he's going to soil his pants, and wonders what kind of monster that is. Park Hyun-myung recognizes the creature immediately. It's an elite monster, the terrible putrid mamba. The recommended team size to defeat it in a raid is 20 players at level 6, which means it's complete nonsense for him to try to face that thing alone. And the putrid mamba says he must kill them all. It is basically a psychic attack. And right behind Young Jinwoo, there is an extra wondering what is happening. Because of this fog, he can't see anything. But at that moment, Young Jinwoo appears in front of him with his shock spear. And instead of seeing a human, he sees a monster. Due to the putrid worm's blood, he received the hallucination debuff. Except, the moment he was about to kill that innocent extra, he gets his arms cut off. By whom? Clearly by Randolph, who appears just in time to prevent the tragedy. And this Young Jinwoo, who turned more or less into a monster from the hallucinations, has both of his arms severed. Our boy says he didn't want to meddle, but he crossed the line, so he can come at him because now he is going to destroy him. But at that moment, the fog shifts and the creature truly reveals itself. The monster starts laughing hard at our hero and says not bad for a human and that he looks very delicious. And this in fact is the putrid mamba, a red monster. Randolph just stares at it very seriously. In the middle of the fog somewhere else, Kim Hana asks where Park Hyun-myung is and what is happening in that direction. But back to the protagonist. He is fighting that monster. He thinks that thanks to the putrid mamba's fog blocking people's vision, he finally managed to transform. But just because he took Randolph's form doesn't mean he can beat that easily. If he didn't know the enemy's attack pattern, he would already be ground meat. The mamba starts saying he is very weird. His physical abilities clearly aren't that impressive, but he manages to dodge all of its attacks. He is moving as if he knew exactly every single strike, which clearly is the absolute truth. But when the monster watches our boy charging at it, it laughs, saying it's useless. Even so, Randolph cuts off its tentacles. He remembers the putrid mamba's next attack is clearly the blood explosion. Therefore, to protect himself, he grabs a table to use as a shield. He knows that if that blood touches him, he will receive a severe debuff. After he uses the table as a shield, the monster destroys it instantly, and our boy is almost hit by the tentacle. The monster mocks him, asking if he thought he could dodge that. It admits the boy is an incredible human being, with an impressive evasion skill. But in the end, if the boy's attacks can't reach it, what does it matter? He is definitely going to die. But Randolph tells the creature to relax a little, because he is going to shove his sword right into its forehead very soon. At that moment, he uses the Fairy Queen's Tear. He equips Hermes' boots. With the Fairy Queen's Tear, the usage requirements for Hermes' boots were drastically reduced. Thus, he can also use Michella's armor and Michella's helmet. He equips the entire Michella set, the Heavenly Dragon Seal. He thinks to himself it's a good thing he bought that item at the secret auction, but mentally apologizes to Hudson. He intended to avoid using the Fairy Queen's Tear unless he really needed to, but who would have thought he would actually need to use it so soon? Even so, he will keep the promise he made to him, no matter what happens. Then he charges full force at the monster. At that instant, one of the tentacles rushes toward him. Quickly he dodges the attack and charges again, only now his movements are much faster, and he appears right behind the Mamba. The monster, furious, calls him a bastard. Some disgusting spikes appear on the creature's back and are shot like bullets, but Randolph manages to destroy them easily while continuing to advance relentlessly. Except, at that instant, he takes a very strong blow right to the chest and is thrown far away, defending himself with his arms. At this critical moment, he activates the Michella set's skill, the Heavenly Dragon Seal. The Mamba realizes he still has a few tricks up his sleeve. It calls him a damn rat and shoots a stream of poisonous blood at him. Our boy knows this is the putrid Mamba's last attack pattern, which means that if he can withstand just this, he will be able to kill it. The creature warns he won't be able to dodge this, and that he must die now. But, to the monster's surprise, the synergy effect between the Heavenly Dragon Seal and the Agility skill is activated, revealing the powerful Gale skill. Facing that, the monster is in complete shock, not understanding how the boy is using the wind to blow all the poisonous fog away. Our hero knows the putrid Mamba has 4 attack patterns: dodge, blood explosion, spikes, and poisonous fog. After using all these patterns, the monster enters a state of confusion, but it's for a very short time. A confused putrid Mamba becomes unable to act, but as soon as the confusion ends, the next cycle begins with even better patterns, which means this is his only chance to win. He charges straight at it. That is when the monster screams, begging him to wait. Except, at that moment, Randolph's sword is driven with full force right into the creature's forehead. Our protagonist remembers what he had promised, that he would drive his sword into the monster's forehead and end its life. And this way the system shows he eliminated the putrid Mamba with a 100% contribution. After he defeats that monster, the fog finally clears. Everyone watches our boy on top of that giant monster after having defeated it. Kim Hana, still surprised, wonders what is happening. But, when she looks toward the dissipating fog, she sees the protagonist, whom she still doesn't know is him, standing on top of the creature. Right after, he quickly covers himself with the cloak. Hana, observing this man, recognizes he is the same one from last time, the same one who saved her that day. Soon she runs toward him and asks if he was the one who saved her last time, and if he remembers her. But our hero just looks at her from the corner of his eye and notices she is safe, so everything is fine. At that moment, the invisibility cloak is activated, and he simply vanishes from there. Hana wonders what is happening and why he disappeared out of nowhere. But, a few seconds later, our boy, already back in his normal body, appears right behind her and calls her. When she turns around, she asks where Park Hyung had gone this whole time. He plays it off, saying he finally found her, and that they ended up getting separated because of all that chaos. He asks if by any chance she is hurt, but she says no, that she is fine. Except while she was looking at him, she noticed something very strange. His fingers are stained with blood. He says, trying not to sound suspicious, that thank God she is okay. He comments he never thought they would end up in this situation, and that apparently today really isn't their day. But, at that moment, Hana asks if he ended up getting hurt for some reason. Realizing he almost gave himself away, he says he thinks just a little monster blood ended up splashing on him and asks her not to worry. Hana, very suspicious, says his clothes were perfectly clean, but only his nails ended up stained with blood, and that is really very weird. She says he was very calm when the monsters appeared, so she wonders if he knew what they were. Except our protagonist, playing dumb, asks what she means by him being calm. He says things were very chaotic and he just thinks it didn't hit him at the time or something like that. But she states he is definitely a liar because he was calm from the very beginning. He retorts saying no way and that he was very scared. She realizes this guy is looking very suspicious. He is acting like it's nothing and appearing right after that hero disappeared. She then wonders if maybe he is that warrior. The next day, after all this confusion, the news reports that, a few days after the first dimensional invasion, there was a report of a second invasion. Some dimensional warriors warned that these attacks would continue happening in the future. They expressed the opinion that this is a long-term operation requiring the government's help. As a consequence, countless citizens stayed in their homes due to anxiety, and the streets became completely empty. In response, some citizens showed their dissatisfaction. They said the government's confident response that there wouldn't be a tragedy like last time is a complete lie. They accused the government of trying to downplay the scale of the damage, which might have led to a large number of victims in the second invasion. Watching the news, a group of people talks. One of them comments that the population was unconcerned during the first invasion, but now they are making all this fuss. The other replies that at that time people weren't directly affected, so they probably couldn't feel the gravity of the situation. A monster attack is something totally out of the ordinary. A woman says it might have been something beyond general understanding, and that no one knew how to respond. So the government probably tried to keep the situation quiet at first. But the guy in the center of them says that, with this second incident, everyone must have realized the invasion can happen again and again. At that moment, he decides this is the perfect time to declare the emergence of their alliance. This guy is Park Tae-woo, the leader of the Players Alliance. He warns that the other alliances are probably thinking the same, so they need to hurry and recruit talented people. The girl warns they already checked the videos he mentioned earlier. They are security camera footages, so it's hard to see clearly. But if that player really killed the putrid Mamba alone, that man can only be Randolph, the player who placed first in the main quest. The guy at the end comments they said Randolph just finished the second main quest, so he is at most at level 4 or 5. How the hell could he use an item like Hermes's boots? But the leader replies it's possible he used some kind of talisman. And that, putting the details aside, he is someone they need. After Phantom's disappearance, this man showed up. They aren't 100% sure, but it's possible Randolph is Phantom, and they can't trust the other alliances. No matter what happens, they need to bring this player to their side to stop the rift. While this conversation was happening, back in the game, Hudson was completely in shock. He asks if the boy is saying he basically used the Fairy Queen's tear that he needed so much. Desperate, he starts yelling at our boy, saying he had promised to give the item to him. But the protagonist replies that he said he would help him, and never said he would give the Fairy Queen's tear to him. Hudson asks what he means by that. Our boy explains he doesn't need to use the talisman to fulfill his goal, and that he just got rid of the item so Hudson wouldn't be stuck with false hope. But, in truth, he knows there is no way to admit he needed to use it to defeat the putrid Mamba and not die. Hudson, very angry, asks if he is saying there is another way to join the council. Our boy says yes, and says that, from what he can see on his face, the casino owner doesn't trust that very much. But, even so, he tells Hudson to follow him, because he will give him a reason to trust him 100%. Later, the three head toward the sewers, where there is an underground dungeon. While they were walking, Hudson asks why they would go to a place like that. Our boy answers it's to clear his doubts, and also because, before going for the main goal, they need to take care of something else. He wanted to create an anchor point in Arcana. He knows the teleportation book he got from Dramut is very convenient, but it's very annoying having to increase the exploration rate every time. This epic teleportation book is a magical artifact that teleports the user to a previously explored location. The casting time is 30 seconds, and it can only be used once a day. The only anchor point registered so far is the Desert Sanctuary. Our boy wanted to explore all of Arcana completely, but that would be impossible with the time they have, so he'll be satisfied exploring the sewer dungeon. Obviously very nervous, Hudson tells him to wait. He wants to know if the boy really wants to explore the dungeon with only 3 people. That is too dangerous. The boss monster living there is a mutant giant rat. It's a raid boss that requires at least 6 people at level 8 to be defeated, but our protagonist confidently says he already knows that, which shocks Hudson greatly because at that moment they are already face to face with the raid boss. The mutant giant rat of the sewers is a gigantic and hideous rat. The exact moment it spots the humans, the rat charges at them with all its power and at an absurd speed. Worried, Hudson notices the giant rat attacks using speed as a weapon. Normally, the standard is to have 6 people make a formation and slowly corner it to take it down. And they went there without any preparation. What the hell is this idiot thinking right now? Only at that exact moment, our boy orders Isabella to attack the monster at 10 o'clock. She manages to intercept the attack precisely and drives her dagger right into that rat's eye. Our hero thinks that, if you know the monster's attack pattern, it doesn't matter how fast it is. But of course, this is only possible because Isabella is an extremely proficient combat character, and she is on a completely different level from regular characters. Watching this from the corner, Hudson is very surprised. Our boy approaches him and warns he will keep his promise no matter what happens, and says he shouldn't doubt his words, because if he says something can be done, then it can be done, which leaves Hudson completely amazed. And so, later on the city streets, 2 agents are talking. They looked at all the security camera footage, but there is no trace. It seems everyone inside the building at the time says they didn't know anything either, and this is like a damn horror story. This agent is part of the Heroes Alliance, Seon Jung. The other agent in the back asks if they should meet with Jung Jin-woo again, but Seon Jung says no, he seems to have gone completely crazy after that time. He lost his mind from the shock of losing both arms, so going back there would just be a waste of time, and serves that jerk right. But again, the agent asks about Kim Han Hana, saying it seems she knew something. Xianzhang asks if he is suggesting they break into the CK broadcasting station then. The guy says that's not what he meant, just that it would be better to wait for her in front of the building. But Xianzhang tells him not to mess with her for no reason, because it could turn into a massive headache. The agent, very curious, asks if Kim Hana has some kind of backing. Xianzhang questions if he doesn't know who is protecting Kim Hana. He points out that the person she is interviewing right now, face to face, is Gracia himself. The blonde guy introduces himself to her, while she, very nervous, says it is an honor to meet him, and that she is reporter Kim Hana from Korea. Back to the two of them, the agent asks if it was love at first sight or something like that, but Xianzhang asks how the hell he would know that. But anyway, he shouldn't poke a beehive for no reason. He knows that with Phantom's disappearance, Gracia is now undoubtedly the strongest player. Even so, that monster came all the way to Korea just to be interviewed by a regular reporter. And honestly, he is also very curious about it. But if Gracia is involved, the right thing to do is stay as far away as possible. And if they end up making him angry, the entire alliance could be destroyed. But at that moment, a little far from that place, there was a group of dead players lying on the ground. One of the survivors asks what the hell the attacker is doing, reminding him that PK in the real world is supposed to be forbidden. But a guy approaches him asking, "What do you mean forbidden, and who said that?" The extra starts yelling that Gracia told everyone to prepare for the invasion, so player killing is forbidden in the real world. He threatens, asking what if Gracia finds out, but the villain goes ahead and cuts his head off, saying it's fine, and telling him to call Gracia to save him. At that moment, the system shows the villain that the ranks have been updated. It was registered that he is one of the top rankers for having obtained a class. The system then congratulates the player Massacre, who obtained the rights to use the secret auction. After he transforms again, he goes back to thinking about Randolph, certain that he is that bastard Phantom. If it isn't him, there is no way to explain the absurd score he got. If it is him, Phantom will challenge the main quest immediately, without any hesitation. And if Massacre waits in that place, he will run into Phantom very quickly, and thus Phantom will die by his own hands. Then the scene cuts back to the game, with a gigantic Hydreigon walking through the desert. It was carrying our boy and those two. The protagonist thinks he got very lucky. His main goal was just to create an anchor point in the sewer dungeons. But in that raid, he got a really good item, which is the giant rat's core. With his Beast Lord hidden trait, he can strengthen beast souls in his possession. So basically, he used this material to evolve the Hydreigon into a Hydra. Thank God he will arrive at that place a little bit faster. As they walk, he asks Hudson if he handled the casino matters properly. Hudson replies that he took care of everything exactly as he said, and resolved absolutely everything. He admits it's true that it's a shame to give up the casino, but there is nothing to be done if they are going to be away for a while. And if it means marrying Serengeti, it's not even worth worrying about that crappy casino. Besides, there's no way the people there would leave the casino alone if he wasn't there. So he decided to trust and follow the Starbearer. Hudson knows that above all, when Isabella killed the giant rat by herself, it was very impressive, but the success was thanks to Randolph's actions. He acts as if he can see through everything, and there is no doubt he is an extraordinary man. If Hudson misses this chance, he doesn't know when there will be another opportunity like this again. Our boy, excited, confirms it, saying he won't have to worry about money anymore then. He thinks he made a great decision. Now he can just focus on reaching level 10 while walking the path of a Starbearer. Very curious, Hudson asks where they are going now. Our boy replies that he already told him, but Hudson says he doesn't remember that. Thus, Randolph answers that they are going to the masterpiece that will grant Hudson's wish. Thinking about this masterpiece, he knows it's the place where the third main quest begins. They are going to the Spirit Tower. After a long journey, they arrive at a forest. Looking around, Hudson asks what place that is. In his eyes, which are those of someone who knows nothing, it just looks like a normal forest. Except the protagonist warns that it is not a normal forest. This is the entrance to the Spirit Tower, the Whispering Forest where the spirit tree grows. Randolph thinks that a spirit tree is a tree where spirits are born. They are born temporarily, opening a path to the spirit realm. Entering this path during dusk is the only way to go to the Spirit Tower. However, this tree has been dead for a long time. And not just this tree, but the entire forest is dying. It has been a long time since a new spirit was born in this forest. What he is about to do is not a good method, but he has no choice. So he goes ahead and draws his sword. Hudson asks what he is doing. Like that, our boy goes over and lands a strike right in the middle of that tree, splitting it in half with a single sword strike. Hudson, perplexed, wonders if he is really cutting down the tree that is the entrance to the Spirit Tower. What Hudson didn't know was that from above him, an attack would be fired. Quickly, Isabella went there and protected him, blocking the projectile. On top of the tree, an archer says he didn't expect her to block it. He says this human woman is really quite interesting. This guy is the master of the Whispering Forest, the level 9 High Druid. Watching the enemy, Hudson gets very scared, knowing he is a High Druid. The Druid says he thought they were just some travelers who got lost. He intended to show mercy and let them pass through the forest, but they dared to cut down the spirit tree. It seems humans have lost their sense of fear. The trio is surrounded by dozens of forest guardians, all level 7. By Isabella's count, she saw at least 40. Or, actually, at least 50. If they all attack at once, they won't have a chance. In the worst case scenario, she needs to make sure the Star Bearer escapes from there. But at that moment, our boy takes a step forward. He warns the druid shouldn't get mad at someone else when he was the one who cut down the tree. And if he hadn't done that, they wouldn't have shown up. The High Druid asks if he has lost his mind. Our boy tells him to come down because he wants to talk to him. But the druid refuses, aiming his arrow at Randolph. Our boy questions if he plans to just sit back and watch the forest die. Hearing this, the elder stops at once and asks what he means by that. Randolph claims he will bring that forest back to life. He says he doesn't see a single spirit in the forest that could bring life to it. And the druid must know better than anyone that if no new spirit is born, the entire forest will die soon. He asks the elder to open the gate to the spirit tower, and in return he will give him a spirit that will stay in the forest. But the druid says that is nonsense. Even if they open the gate, the spirit tower is a place where only the chosen ones can enter. He asks if the boy really thinks a wretch like him can enter the tower. Our boy knows very well that this is normally impossible. First of all, to enter the spirit tower, the player needs to have a relevant talent and complete countless prerequisite quests. And after waiting for several coincidences to align, only then can you overcome the extremely low odds and get in. Among players, the number of people who enter that place can be counted on one hand. With Randolph's current level, it would be something he couldn't even dream of. Of course, that is if Randolph were just an ordinary character. So he gets very serious and stares at that High Druid. He tells the elder to shut his mouth and open the gate now. He activates his hidden trait, Nature Affinity, the very essence of druids. He declares he will be responsible for saving the forest, so he orders the gate to be opened immediately. But the other guardians in the back ask if he is really saying he will save the forest. They think this is a complete lie and that they should kill them all right there. Except, right as they were about to attack, the elder druid keeps staring at our boy and raises his hand, ordering them to stop. This surprises everyone around, and so he steps down to face Randolph and warns him he'd better keep his word. Our boy, very confident, tells him not to worry, because he always keeps his promises, and he will bring the spirits back to this forest. But the High Druid says he doesn't expect him to actually succeed. He just thought it wouldn't be too late to kill him in case he fails, so he orders the trio to follow him. They arrive at some sort of sacred tomb. The druid explains that now that the life force is fading, the only way to open the path to the tower is by using the remains of an idol spirit, but he must keep something in mind. If he fails, he will immediately become fertilizer for the forest. Randolph asks what happens if he succeeds. The druid replies that he will then give him a reward fitting his achievement. Thus, a side quest opens for our hero, where he must bring the spirits back to the forest. The reward is the Friend of the Druid's achievement, which grants a forest blessing. So, the elder tells him to get ready. From that moment on, he will open the portal. At that instant, an immense light brightens the whole place. Hudson is very surprised by it, watching the portal that leads to the spirit tower. Curious, Hudson asks if they have already entered the spirit tower. But Randolph explains they haven't because that is just the inside of the portal used to access the tower, and a player can only actually enter the tower after receiving permission in there. Hudson asks whose permission. Our protagonist then turns around and faces a being floating in front of them. Very surprised, Hudson asks if that is a spirit, but the protagonist answers no. This floating being starts staring at our boy. It says it can feel a druid's aura, so it must allow him to ascend to the tower. It asks if those behind him are his companions. Randolph confirms yes. The floating being questions if they are companions to whom he can entrust his life and his own back. Randolph says you could say that. Then the creature says very well, it will allow them to enter with him. However, the path will only be revealed when each of them passes through the tower's portal individually. The three of them start getting somewhat disintegrated and teleported. Isabella stares at our boy very seriously, warning she'll be right back. Obviously, Hudson, very afraid, screams saying his body is going up and disappearing. The floating being warns that time flows differently there than in reality in the tower, so he can climb it peacefully, and wishes the boy good luck. Thus, the main quest is activated. It is called Climb the Tower, and the reward will be increased based on the player's performance. Soon, our boy comes face to face with a large gate. A gate with a very monstrous look. He recognizes this is the real spirit tower, and that it has been a long time since he was there, but he cannot recognize what gigantic and gruesome gate that is in front of him. He knows very well that to enter the spirit tower, the player must pass through a gate, and the gate takes a different form depending on the climber's elemental affinity. For example, the elemental affinity he chose for Isabella when he created her was wind. In other words, Isabella is facing the gate of wind. Hudson is at the gate of water, since he has more affinity with that element. Each gate created this way presents the most suitable challenge for the climber's level and style, but our boy has never seen a gate with this dark attribute before. He wonders wonders if this is an effect of the character Randolph possessing all elemental affinities when he was created. At that moment, that being's eyes open. It starts saying it is incredible to think a human with an affinity for all elements actually existed: fire, water, light, and darkness. He even possesses attributes that normally couldn't coexist. The being wonders if this is thanks to a void attribute that encompasses all elements. But even so, there is much more power there than just calling it void. This is true chaos. So, the entity allows him to enter, and warns that the name of the gate he must pass through is the Gate of Chaos. Before he could enter, the voice tells the traveler opening the Gate of Chaos, which has never been touched before, that he must be extremely careful, because if he gets swallowed by the chaos, he will never return. After our boy enters through the Gate of Chaos, he appears in the middle of a room and wonders what place that is. For the last 5 years of his life, he played Pangania almost every day, without resting. It is no exaggeration to say he is the player who played it the most in history, and that he knows more about the secrets of that world than anyone else. But, despite all this, there are still countless things in Pangania that not even he knows. It is a game with an insane difficulty, which makes beating the story seem impossible. Even so, he always had a burning desire to challenge and explore these unknown territories, the mysteries that were firmly established inside there. And that is why our boy loves this game with a passion. That Gate of Chaos, the entity warned it was the first time it was opened. So, this time too, he will be the first to clear it. Except, as soon as he takes a step forward, he faces a warrior he recognizes immediately. When this man turns around, our boy goes into complete shock. He realizes this opponent is Wilhelm. He mentally asks himself why the hell the strongest character he ever created is appearing as a challenge now. Wilhelm already charges relentlessly at our boy. Randolph tries to block the attack, but the weight is much heavier and harder than facing other enemies. He thinks that, putting aside the reason for Wilhelm appearing as the floor's challenge, the game is basically saying he has to fight to the death against this guy, the one who used to be #1 on the server. After his sword is easily disarmed by Wilhelm, our protagonist realizes this is going to be very hard. This challenge was made so absolutely no one could win. He comes to the conclusion that Pangania is truly a crazy damn game. At the moment Wilhelm was about to hit our boy, he activates his Michela's armor. He thinks that since the enemy sword couldn't completely cut his arm, it means Wilhelm's attack is almost on the same level as his own defense. That enemy looks like Wilhelm, but his attributes are actually much closer to Randolph's. If the floor only copied his appearance, there is no reason to be afraid of this guy. The protagonist throws Wilhelm far away, but he remains in one piece. The enemy draws his sword and charges at him, wanting to chop off his head. Therefore, our boy kicks Wilhelm in the face, asking if he came to reclaim his past glory, which greatly surprises the enemy. Wilhelm questions if that is even possible, but our boy, very serious, grabs the enemy by the hair and asks what kind of nonsense he is talking about, calling him a fake bastard. He rips Wilhelm's head off his body with just his bare hands. After the intense fight and ripping off the enemy's head, our boy grabs a health potion. After drinking it, he recovers. He comments to himself that it's a good thing he bought those potions with Hudson's casino money. But, at that exact moment, behind his back, several copies of Wilhelm start to appear. Our hero thinks that, if he hadn't brought the potions, he would probably regret it a lot. Meanwhile, the scene goes back to Korea. At the newspaper office, Kim Hana is wrapping up her interview. She comments that it must have been very tiring for Gracia to travel all the way there, and sincerely thanks him, but Gracia replies that it was no problem at all. He warns that, now that the interview is over and they are no longer recording, he has a personal question to ask. Surprised, she asks what it would be. He says it is a very simple question. He wants to know about that man mentioned in the article she wrote. Gracia asks that please she tell him everything she knows about that warrior. He demands to know, in detail, everything she saw that day. While this conversation was happening in real life, back in the game, our boy defeated countless Wilhelms. Now he is completely exhausted. He wonders how much time has passed since the test began. He thinks he fought those guys at least 100 times, and he is really very tired. The good part is that the copies are no longer being summoned. Since he can't see anything above, this is probably the top floor. However, as he can tell, the potions ran out. It would be really good if a message confirming the end of the challenge appeared right now. But, at that instant, a strong tremor shakes the place. He wonders what kind of shadows are those emerging. These shadows transform into spirits, who mockingly ask if the power of chaos didn't work. They question what he is. A human? Actually, judging by his skills, he might be a druid, or something similar. But, in the end, the spirits admit they like him, amazed that he made it this far. Our boy quickly recognizes these creatures as the so-called spirit of chaos. If they showed themselves, it means he cleared the spirit tower. But the spirit of chaos mocks him, asking what he means by by cleared, and says that is truly ridiculous. They ask if he really thought someone could clear this tower that easily. They claim the tower's challenge hasn't even begun, it is beyond that barrier where the true test starts. They mock saying he is already done just by clearing this small part, and ask if he really thinks he can make it to the end. They state that thing was never meant to be a challenge that can be beaten on the first try. The spirits warn him that beyond there, hundreds or rather thousands of those illusions he has been fighting exhaustively will be waiting for him. They tell him to give up because he will never be able to clear this tower. Except to the spirit's surprise, Randolph starts walking and asks where the door is. The spirit goes into shock and asks if he really wants to die. It warns that if the boy gives up right there, he will receive a special offer to form a contract with it. But the closer the boy gets to the door, the more the spirit insists. The spirit says that if he makes a contract right now, he will get a star immediately. The closer our boy gets to the door, the more the spirit tries desperately to convince him to stay and make the contract. But obviously our great player knows the rules well. He knows the spirit tower sets the completion reward based on the challenge the player chooses to enter. If you clear the fire challenge, you receive a fire spirit egg. If you clear the wind challenge, you receive a wind spirit egg. By hatching the egg, the player can form a contract with a spirit of that specific attribute. The challenge he entered was the Chaos Challenge, the first one to be opened in the entire history of Panania. He always thought the reward for clearing it would be a Chaos Spirit Egg. Spirit eggs are already extremely rare items to begin with. If it was the first in history, a Chaos Spirit Egg would undoubtedly be a top-tier reward. However, before truly clearing the tower, those spirits are already screaming desperately for him to make a contract with them first. So, if that is really the case, it means that beyond that door there is an even better reward than a Chaos Spirit Egg. As the boy passes through the door, the Spirit of Chaos warns that he made a dumb choice, and that this will be his last chance to back down. Our boy stops instantly. He remembers the spirits clearly stated there would be several of those enemies he fought on the other side. The spirit confirms yes, and that there will be thousands of illusions, but Randolph retorts saying it will definitely be very hard, especially since he already used all the potions he brought. However, thanks to that sacrifice, he memorized their attack patterns to the point of getting sick of them. Very surprised, the spirit asks what he means by that. Our boy replies that now he doesn't need potions or anything like that anymore. He can simply dodge the attack patterns he learned by getting beaten thousands of times. If he just does that repeatedly, clearing the tower will be very easy. So there is no reason to back down. This greatly surprises the Spirit of Chaos. The spirit finally gives a little smile and says he didn't expect anyone to challenge the tower for such a ridiculous reason. It admits the boy is an idiot, but an idiot it really liked. And finally, after passing through the gate, our boy returns to the beginning of the area again. He wonders what place that is, but at that moment he receives a notification announcing he has reached the top of the tower. Main quest number 3 has been completed. The system begins calculating the results, and right behind him, that spirit from the beginning of the test appears. Very surprised, the spirit asks if he actually managed to clear the tower and joyfully congratulates him. It also warns that it seems his companions are alive and well. But Randolph, very curious, asks if that whole lecture about the beginning of the true challenge was just a lie. The spirit confirms yes, that's exactly it. If he had chosen to make an early contract with the Spirit of Chaos, he would have been trapped inside there for the rest of his life. Our boy, very annoyed, says those bastards are really good at lying. The spirit laughs and says the spirits of chaos have always liked lying. However, the boy must have received a hint during the fight. Our hero concludes that, so that was it. The spirit says that anyway it should pay for his clear reward and tells the boy to hold out his hand. At that moment, the system makes it official that he cleared the Tower of Chaos. A black ball appears floating right in the center of his hand. Our boy thinks that if the challenge ended like this without anything else hidden, the reward is probably just a Chaos Spirit Egg. It is quite disappointing in the end, but it definitely isn't a bad reward. Soon the system announces he obtained a Chaos Spirit Egg. Except this message gets a bizarre error in the middle of the screen and changes to another reward. The Celestial Mutant hidden trait is activated right away. The Chaos Egg is instantly covered by feathers. The system, still very bugged, first says he obtained the Chaos Spirit Egg, but in the end corrects itself and states he obtained the Celestial Spirit Egg. Completely shocked, our boy comes face to face with something he has never seen before in his life. He wonders what kind of madness that is. And after he obtains this very strange egg, the system tells him this is a Celestial Spirit Egg, an unknown egg that fell from the celestial realm, and it is said to be at the edge of light, darkness, and chaos. Only Celestials can see and hatch this egg. Therefore, our boy thinks these Celestials refer to the supreme race that lives in the celestial realm, and the fact that he found this egg is proof that he is one of them. But no way, how is that possible? How can this be linked to the Celestials? He wonders if it is because of his hidden trait Celestial Mutant. Maybe the word Celestial celestial isn't just a naming overlap. This might be a characteristic directly related to that race. Very curious, he asks that spirit if it knows what that is. But the spirit replies that, aside from the fact that it is not an ordinary egg, it has no idea what it is. However, even the spirit kings are showing interest in it, which greatly surprises our boy. He thinks that the spirit kings are some of the strongest beings in existence, and they are the main mediators that make up the world of Pangania. And if even they are interested in it, it means that egg has incalculable value. He is very curious to know what kind of creature that is, but there is no way to find out right now. Therefore, he stores the egg in his inventory, thinking he will have to hatch it later. At that moment, the system announces that the main quest has been completed. His total floor score was 240 points, and the Hall of Fame is being updated. But right after, he receives other messages informing him that due to the constellation of fortune, his rewards have been enhanced. Excited by his pioneering spirit, the constellation of adventure also grants him enhanced rewards. And other constellations do the same, such as the Cursed Constellation, the Constellation of Black Light, and also the Constellation of Battle. Our protagonist recognizes these entities as the constellations of the Temple of 100 Stars. Some of them had already shown interest when he was at Dramut's sanctuary, like fortune and adventure. But to think that 5 of these great powers would take an interest in him all at once is completely absurd. The constellation of the Temple of 100 Stars is made up of beings that play major roles in Pangenia's scenario. Just like the Spirit Kings, from a player's perspective, they are the type of beings you have nothing to lose by getting on their good side, since they can hand out special quests directly or drastically improve your rewards depending on the tasks you complete. In the game's lore, he heard they love stories of triumph told by humans, so he thinks they really enjoyed watching him clear the challenge of chaos, which was shown and overcome for the first time in Pangania's history. Thus, his reward tier transcended due to the constellations. And because of this, he can choose 2 superior rewards from the 20 options listed on the panel. Our boy, very excited, says this went far beyond what he imagined. Sometime later, Isabella and Hudson finished clearing their floors in the tower and came out completely exhausted. Isabella received a wind spirit egg as a reward for completing the tower's challenge, and Hudson received the water spirit egg. The number of eggs a player receives as a reward is decided randomly, and luckily Isabella got 2 spirit eggs in her run. She decided to keep the promise Randolph made with the druids, and handed one of them to the forest guardians. If someday they hatch the wind spirit and release it into the wild, the Whispering Forest will finally be able to recover its lost vitality. Furthermore, as a thank you, the druids gave the group the best possible elixir, the mandrake. It is made from a millennia-old medicinal herb, which absorbed the essence of the forest's vitality. Of course, they gave the elixir to Isabella. After all, she was the one who provided the spirit egg to save the place. And surely Isabella will get stronger and stronger after consuming that. Now, looking at the updated Hall of Fame, our boy remains isolated in first place, with 240 points. Gracia is in second with 219. In third, the player Mint Chocolate is Delicious. In fourth, Black Demon. In fifth, Master. And in sixth place, That Guy Massacre. After finally leaving the forest, our boy and the other 2 continue to be transported by the Hydra. Meanwhile, the protagonist stares at the status window. He observes the benefit of the Guardian Walls level. This system allows protecting the disconnected body from danger and triggering an alert in case of emergency. The strength of this protection varies depending on the wall's level. For 30 seconds, the level 11 Guardian Wall nullifies any attack of a 1-star level or lower. Our boy realizes the privilege unlocked this time is an upgrade to this defense, which is a huge relief. When he logs into Pangenia, the Guardian Wall protects Park Hyunmyoung's body in reality. And when he returns to reality, it protects Randolph's body in Pangenia. And now there are 72 hours left before the Golden Rune Fragment's time runs out. Thinking about the future, the more upgraded time he has, the better it will be. At that moment, Hudson looks at Randolph. He thanks the boy deeply. Hudson says he never thought he would get a spirit egg in his life, and that he wants to hatch it as soon as possible, because having a spirit by his side should be enough to solve his major problem of lacking combat attributes. Our boy agrees that's exactly it. The path from level 9 to level 10 is extremely hard to walk alone, but if he borrows the power of an elemental spirit, it should be possible to evolve. Hudson says yes. He notes that when they return to Arcana, the first thing he will buy is a spirit incubator, but Randolph interrupts him and warns that he needs to go somewhere else before that, and asks if Hudson wants to come with him. Hudson says yes, of course. After receiving this massive help, he says he will accompany him anywhere he wants. Our boy smiles and just says thanks. But little did Hudson know where they were heading, and it was exactly that place Randolph needed to reach. Hudson, trembling with fear, asks if he really has to go in there. Isabella, a bit lost, wonders the reason for this exaggerated reaction. Our boy tells him to stay quiet and not draw attention. Isabella, curious, asks why they came to that place. Our hero answers that this is the Knight's Garden, the territory governed by Marquis Weiser, and it is basically where Hudson's fiancée lives. Hudson, very nervous in the back, asks desperately why they are there, since he still lacks the necessary qualifications to be Serengeti's official fiancé. But the protagonist tells him not to make a fuss, because he didn't say they came there to propose to her today. They are there because he has something personal to ask Serengeti. Hudson, curious, asks how he knows her. But, ignoring the question, our boy looks from side to side. He notices that the entire city is completely devastated. Heading towards the central square, he sees a large stone tombstone with several names carved into it. Isabella comments that it looks like they are in the middle of a mass funeral, and asks if he knows any of those names. Our boy answers no, but he knows very well why they ended up like this. He recognizes that the 500 names engraved on the tombstone belong to the elite knights who were part of the grand expedition. He admits he didn't know their names, and never even tried to remember them before. They weren't even important NPCs with unique names. Even if they fought for Wilhelm, it was all part of the context, because until then, they were just parts of the game's background. But in front of the tombstone, an old lady falls to the ground, desperate. She screams, cursing Wilhelm. She begs for that bastard to give her son back. She cries, saying she just wants her son back. She sobs, saying her boy said he would return, but he never came back, and asks in tears how she can live without him. At that moment, our boy takes a few steps forward, heading towards the lady. She, completely exhausted and desperate, faints from so much grief and pain. Our boy catches her quickly before she hits the ground. The people around approach worriedly, asking what is happening and saying she fainted again. Isabella walks towards Randolph to help. Our boy lifts that lady in his arms and asks them to show the way to the relief station right now. Arriving at the relief station, which is run by the Church of the Goddesses, they realize the place is a complete disaster inside. Hudson comments there are many patients crowded together, but very few people at the station to tend to everyone. He reflects that, if this is the Knight's Garden, it should be one of the 3 main cities of the Balan Kingdom. How is it possible that the relief station of an important city like this is so understaffed? He concludes it seems to be a serious problem with how the place is being managed. Except, at that moment, one of the temple's caretakers approaches. He calls them brothers and says they must be the outsiders who brought Sister May there. He comments they could have simply walked past and ignored the situation, but they didn't do that. They helped the woman and brought her to that place, which was very kind of them. Hudson, surprised by the compliment, answers politely yes, but the caretaker stares at Hudson right away with a demanding look. Hudson asks what the problem is. The caretaker replies that, to operate the support station, they are collecting mandatory donations from the brothers who visit the place, and if they could help him out with just 50 gold coins, it would be a great help to the goddess. Hudson, very surprised, asks if they are charging for the treatment of a fainted old lady. Our boy chimes in and says an assistance station run by the Church of the Goddesses should be fully funded by the city's coffers, and he asks if it wasn't strictly forbidden to accept personal donations, and even more absurd to charge 50 gold coins. Even if hundreds of gold circulate per day in cities like Arcana, he wants to know if the caretaker thinks it makes sense to demand the equivalent of a normal citizen's monthly salary as an entry fee. But the caretaker replies with disdain that they have no choice. He warns that Father Andrew determined that from now on, they will accept donations to operate the relief shelter and treat the needy. Our boy, curious and angry, asks what he means by Father Andrew. He claims this is complete nonsense. He knows Father Andrew very well, and knows he is not the kind of corrupt person who would do such a thing. But the kid insists that this is the absolute truth. Our boy starts searching through his game memories about Father Andrew, an old man who was a high-class priest in the Church of the Goddesses, a religion that serves the twin goddesses of Pangania, Rhea and Pina. He is a fundamental NPC who inevitably gives you important quests related to honor, especially when you are leveling up a class where honor is a determining factor. He has always been a devout believer, an immaculate, kind, and righteous wise man. That is the point of view Randolph had of him. But this guy is claiming that Father Andrew is secretly receiving large personal donations on the side. Putting this together with what he could see of the city, the poorly maintained buildings, the vagrants thrown on the street, and the relief center completely worn out and mismanaged, he seriously wonders what the hell is going on with the government of that city. But, while he was trying to put the pieces together, the scene cuts to the largest mansion in the city. In the hall, there was a fat and completely drunk noble, demanding to drink even more. His butler tries to intervene, saying he has already drunk too much and needs to stop. But the man gets furious, throws the bottle at the wall, almost hitting the butler's head, and tells him to shut his mouth right now, and screams for them to bring the rest of the alcohol to him immediately. This fat drunk is the Lord of the Knight's Garden, Marquis Visor himself, the so-called father of the Knight Serengeti, and Hudson's future father-in-law, of course. Or at least that is what Hudson dreams he will be one day, right? And this way, our boy tells that guy he needs to speak with Father Andrew in person, and says he must take him there. But the guy, very nervous, asks what he means. He says it will be very difficult because a lot of people are waiting to see the priest. But, at that moment, our boy orders Hudson to step forward and do what needs to be done. Hudson hands him a heavy bag. The kid, curious, asks what that is. Hudson replies that it is a 50,000 gold donation, and tells him to let them meet the priest right now, and warns he will double the amount later. Seeing all that gold, the kid gets very excited excited and agrees immediately. Now in Father Andrew's office, the old man says it is a pleasure to meet him. He introduces himself as Father Andrew and asks the boy to sit down so they can talk now. Our boy accepts, then Andrew tells Randolph he heard he made a generous donation to the relief station. Our protagonist replies that indeed it wasn't a small amount. He says he found out they charge 50 gold coins just to get in and make a donation, so he figured he wouldn't get the priest's attention with the usual amount. This leaves the priest a bit disappointed and quiet. Randolph asks if he is disappointed for being called an old man who only cares about money, and if he is ashamed to the point of having nothing to say. Except our protagonist quickly warns he is just curious. Curious about how a relief station in a major city like that ended up so desperate for money. The priest, changing the subject, says he was told he was the one who brought Sister May in after she fainted. Our boy confirms yes. The priest explains that her only son joined the grand expedition to the demon realm and never came back. Since then, she lives with this pain every day, blaming herself for not being able to stop him from going. And it wasn't just Sister May, many people lost family and friends. Countless knights who joined the grand expedition admired Wilhelm. They swore to follow him to expel the demon king, but they never returned. Thus, the knighthood lost countless talented people and consumed enormous resources as war funds. That was such a prosperous city that even with great losses, it could have recovered as time went by. But the real problem happened when Serengeti returned, which makes our boy even more curious. The priest says she returned home having lost both of her legs, but for some reason since her return she has remained unconscious and hasn't woken up at all. Many priests, including himself, tried to wake her up, but nothing worked. His lordship, Marquis Weiser, gathered all kinds of rare elixirs and looked for any method, but not even that worked. Because of this desperate search, the city's finances, which were already under pressure, gradually hit rock bottom. In his impatience to save his daughter, the Marquis lost his reason and was manipulated by all kinds of con artists. In a short time, it reached the point of accumulating enormous debts, using the territory itself as collateral. After that, the lord fell into despair and went financially bankrupt. As a result, all of the city's subsidies were cut. Now that is the only relief station left in the Knight's Garden. If that place also disappears, every patient in the city will be abandoned. That is why even devout brothers like the caretaker who helped Sister May are shamelessly demanding donations. They don't have enough beds, supplies, or staff to care for the patients. Our boy says he is starting to understand the whole situation. He asks if Serengeti is unconscious due to mental shock or a physical problem. The priest answers that if it were something like that, it would have been treated a long time ago. It seems she is under a strong curse state, and that is far beyond their capabilities. Randolph starts thinking about this curse. If it is a case like Isabella's, it might be possible to break it using the blessing of the stars. He gets up and warns he needs to go, because he has business with Marquis Weiser. The priest asks him to wait a moment. Since his lordship isolated himself, it won't be easy at all to visit him. He says he can't exactly call this payback for the donation, but if the boy waits a few days, he will try to schedule a meeting, except our protagonist states he has no time for that, and tells the priest not to worry about the donation, because he already got what he paid for, the information. The priest, confused, asks what he means by that. At that exact moment, a guard abruptly enters the room. He announces that his lordship ordered to bring the guest who made the astronomical donation. Our boy smiles and tells the priest that when you show up with the right money, they let you in right away. He says goodbye to Andrew, saying he is leaving now. The priest states that no matter the reason for it, he is deeply grateful for the help. Randolph asks him to forget the donation, joking that it wasn't even his money to begin with. But the priest clarifies he is not thanking him for the donation, but for helping Sister May on the street. Our boy gives the old man a sincere smile and says it is very good to see him again, Andrew, which greatly surprises the priest, who wonders what he means by again. Soon the scene cuts to Marquis Weiser's room. The lord stares at our boy, realizing he is the man who donated the huge amount to the relief station. It was 100,000 gold coins in total. He asks if the boy is a traveling merchant, but notes he doesn't seem to carry supplies. Maybe he is just a wealthy young master traveling through. Therefore, the Marquis apologizes for inviting him so abruptly, and formally introduces himself as Weiser, the Lord of the Knight's Garden. On the other hand, our boy quickly recognizes him, but notes he has changed drastically on the outside. Marquis Weiser was once a knight who made a name for himself across the continent, thanks to his exceptional skill in his youth. And his daughter Serengeti was able to get a star and became a transcendent under Wilhelm's tutelage. She ascended to the class of the strongest warriors on the continent. Thanks to this, House Weiser established a great position and maintained power within the Balan kingdom. In gratitude, the Marquis swore absolute loyalty to the Night King. Weiser was the kind of man who repaid grudges with his sword and repaid kindness with unwavering loyalty. Of course, our boy doesn't know now if it is only the Lord's appearance that is broken, or if his heart also broke from the tragedy. The Marquis starts the conversation, saying the boy must imagine the reason for the invitation. The Knight's Garden is currently facing major financial problems, so he would like to propose a deal that benefits both. Except our protagonist interrupts him, saying he doesn't need those things and that he is there to cure Serengeti. This surprises Marquis Weiser immediately. He starts letting out a lunatic laugh and says he was mistaken, thinking the boy was just an innocent, wealthy young master. He He asks if the boy heard the rumors running across the continent. Rumors that if you mention Marquis Weiser's daughter's name, he would throw mountains of money into your hands. He loses control and screams, asking how much the boy wants to charge to cure her. 300,000? 400,000? Or if he will demand that he hand over the entire territory as payment. He slams the table with a lot of hatred and vents that he has been deceived by scum like him several times. He has already lost almost everything he had. What else would he have to offer? He orders the knights to gouge out the con artist's eyes and throw him on the street. Except our protagonist remains calm and says he doesn't need money. He tells the Marquis to hear him out to the end. He can't give a 100% guarantee, but there is a real chance he can cure her. The Lord, still furious, mocks, saying this is an innovative approach for a scammer, but says fine, let's say he really can cure her. Why would he do that? They have never seen each other in their lives. Why would he cure his daughter without receiving a single penny? Our boy answers firmly that this is a debt he is paying her back, and also a debt he is there to collect. The Lord, totally lost, asks what the hell he is talking about, and Randolph declares right then that he is Wilhelm's successor, the Night King to whom House Weiser swore loyalty. He demands the Lord take him to his daughter because he has something important to ask her, and in exchange for the sacrifice she made for his master, he will cure her. But the Marquis smiles maliciously. He finds the story incredibly funny because the entire continent is infested with charlatans calling themselves successors of the Night King, and to him the boy is just another one of them. Very annoyed by the audacity, he orders his guards to kill Randolph and his two companions right there. At that moment, one of the elite knights charges at Randolph, but quickly our boy uses his teacup to block the guard's heavy attack without moving a muscle, and orders the Marquis to prepare the room, because he is going to prove right there that he is Wilhelm's true and only successor. And now, in the combat arena, Marquis Weiser is watching our boy, who is face to face with his great knight. On the other side of the arena, Hudson asks the reason for this sudden duel, while Isabella replies that he is always very unpredictable and that she really doesn't know how this happened. Down in the arena, our boy is feeling lazy about fighting this guy, but he recognizes that the enemy wears an armor set with a high-level priest's blessing, being completely prepared for combat. The knight asks if he really is the Night King's successor, and warns that if he is lying, he can confess now and ask for forgiveness, because then maybe he will spare his life. Except our protagonist replies that he doesn't care. He just tells the knight to keep his promise to keep his identity a secret, and not go around telling everyone who he lost just because he got embarrassed. The knight tells him not to worry, swearing on his honor that this won't happen. And now he says he wants to see the self-proclaimed Night King's successor's skills, charging at Randolph with everything and aiming for his neck. Our boy notices he is quite fast, but continues dodging his strikes with ease. He thinks that even though many high-level knights were exterminated in the Grand Expedition, that guy would still have better stats than his current ones. And with this huge equipment gap, he knows he cannot underestimate him. Thus, Randolph finally draws his sword. He notices the enemy's unusual movements and recognizes that he is truly strong. But when the strike is about to hit him, he uses his own head to block the attack. This leaves the knight in absolute shock, exclaiming that he stopped the sword with his own head. He concludes that the boy is definitely not a fraud, but a complete lunatic. Indeed, a lunatic. Watching the fight, a guard next to Weiser comments that the boy's movements are quite decent, but the Marquis retorts that those are nothing but cheap tricks. He says he has seen countless idiots who went around claiming to be the Night King's successors just to take advantage of his reputation. But Wilhelm's swordsmanship cannot be replicated so easily. Having seen the Night King fight firsthand, Weiser states that his swordsmanship surpassed human limits, being incomprehensible to ordinary people, and unless the boy shows a technique similar to that, he cannot claim to be his successor. In the middle of the fight, the knight says that Randolph is very different from the scoundrels he has seen. He is certain that the boy has plenty of talent. He advises the boy to admit his lies and come under his command, promising he will ask the Lord to forgive his sins. But our protagonist mocks him, saying the knight is using a complete armor set against a low-level opponent, yet still acts all cocky. But the knight replies that he needs to understand he wears that only because the Lord ordered it. Our boy retorts, saying that is good for him because now he is also going to use a lot of good stuff, and lands a solid kick right on the enemy's chin. He warns that now he is going to show the knight his own super powerful items. Attacking quickly, Randolph knocks the enemy's sword far away. Right after, he equips the extreme iron sword. The guard and Weiser, watching from above, don't understand where those dual swords came from. Hudson, very curious, asks when he got a weapon like that. The moment he wielded the blades, the battle's dynamics completely changed. The knight notices that the time between attacks decreased drastically. He thinks the boy is trying to beat him based on speed, but concludes that the strikes are still too weak. Except at that moment he feels something very different and strange in Randolph's stance. A two-handed sword is slow, but has high attack attack power, which would be enough to cause damage through his heavy armor. However, dual swords are extremely fast, but have low raw damage. The knight thinks the blades couldn't pierce his armor, and that, as long as he defends his vital areas, there would be no threat. Instead of worrying about everything, he would only need to defend the weak points, which would make things much easier. Except, to his total shock, what he least expected was to receive a direct and overwhelming attack right in the middle of his chest. The impact makes him fall violently to the ground. He notices that our protagonist's aura changed completely. Randolph tells him to watch very closely, because now he is going to show him the Night King's true swordsmanship. He remembers a few days ago, when he cleared the Spirit Tower. As a reward, he could choose 2 prizes from the 20 listed by the system, and among several incredible options, he chose the Extreme Iron Sword. An iron sword raised to its extreme potential, granting him +3 strength points. It also provides +3 sword mastery points and an experience boost bonus. He recognizes that this is the transcendent version of a basic weapon, which makes its raw stats inferior, but the additional effects are absurdly powerful. Since he could choose 2 rewards, he thought about synergy. He could secure the extreme set bonus by combining the items, and since he wears Michaela's set as his primary armor, it would be perfect if the bonuses were activated and doubled with the dual weapons. Thus, he acquired an extreme sword, and right after, another extreme sword. He warns that the true power is coming. He activates his hidden talent, Weapon Master. This trait instantly increases his mastery with all weapons by 5 levels. Next, the Dominating Hands are activated, which increases his weapon efficiency by another 5 levels. Besides several other passive effects that start adding more and more mastery levels for the protagonist. The system warns that the star's successor can read the memories of the power's former owner under certain conditions. And by reaching level 10 in sword mastery, he earned the right to read the deep memories of the possessed star. At that moment, the forgotten parts of the Night King Wilhelm's original swordsmanship are recreated perfectly in his mind. Our boy is extremely satisfied with this reward. Back to the present, he continues his barrage of attacks against that knight using his dual swords. The cornered enemy desperately wonders what kind of impossible technique that is. The knight realizes the boy has the absolute advantage and feels he needs to stop those attacks at that exact moment. He concludes he must create distance and quickly get out of the blade's reach. But he wonders how to do that. If he tries to retreat and create distance, Randolph charges at him with quick slashes from the dual swords. If he tries to use his strength to face the boy head-on, the sword seems to gain the weight of a two-handed weapon to perfectly break his balance. The warrior is perplexed and questions if such a fluid and perfect swordsmanship really exists. The boy isn't just connecting movements with simple physical attacks. The technique is so sublime that it seems space itself submits to him with every slash. It is said that humans are completely amazed when they come across something incomprehensible, something that overwhelmingly surpasses the limits of their own cognition. They enter a state of shock in which they can do nothing but observe the art right before their eyes. And this applied perfectly to everyone present in the training area. Hudson, Isabella, Marquis Weiser himself, and the poor knight facing him. In this climactic moment, the supreme technique is activated. Night King Wilhelm's original secret technique, the world-destroying strike. After the technique is executed, our boy stops the attack down to the millimeter. The knight drops his weapon on the floor, trembling uncontrollably with fear, with the blade stopped just a hair away from his neck. He stammers that he lost the fight and falls to the ground, fainting from pure terror. Our boy then turns around and yells at Weiser, asking if he needs to show him anything else to prove who he is. At that moment, an alarmed guard calls for his lord, but Weiser raises his hand and tells Lucas that he must treat the boy with the utmost respect, because he is in fact and without a shadow of a doubt the successor to Wilhelm, the venerable Night King. And our protagonist just gives him a little smile, confirming his victory. Later, our guy heads over to that girl's room. Her father mentions that ever since they returned from the Great Expedition, she's been like this. He tried everything to wake her up, every famous elixir, healers, and they even summoned the Saintess herself. But her curse is too powerful, and the Saintess said she couldn't do anything about it. Soon our guy begins to stare at her. He activates the hidden talent, the Great Sage, and realizes that, as he expected, she's suffering from the Demon King's curse. If it's this curse, then of course neither a Saintess nor a Holy Emperor could do anything against it. However, if they perform an exorcism using star energy, the power of the Guardian Star instead of mana, it just might work. Standing beside him, her father says he no longer doubts him, but asks if there really is a way to wake her up. Randolph tells him he isn't sure, but he just wants to try. Right after, he places his hand on the girl and begins to channel the blessing of the stars. A bright light flashes, blinding everyone in the room. Soon, the system notifies him that all star energy will be consumed. Even so, his star energy is insufficient to completely break the Demon King's curse. However, the curse's limit has been temporarily removed. After a few seconds, the girl wakes up, asking where she is. Leaving her father in complete shock, he rushes toward her, calling out to Serengeti and asking if she's okay. But she still doesn't say anything. Her father, looking sad, asks if she recognizes him. But to his surprise, Serengeti looks past him and calls out for Hudson, which leaves him utterly stunned. He asks who this Hudson is. Watching this from behind, Hudson begins to tremble. He apologizes for arriving too late. Serengeti just stares at him without saying a word, still looking a bit like a corpse. Hudson thinks that as long as she stays alive, that would be enough. He would become a member of the city council and return as fast as he could so that Marquis Weiser would recognize him too. Even if she had lost the lower half of her body, he would become her legs. As long as she was alive, he would take care of her forever. Hudson believed that if he didn't give up, an opportunity would present itself one day. However, this child was completely broken. His thoughts were nothing more than arrogance and greed. Opportunities weren't eternal. Serengeti's body kept losing its vitality. Her face, which used to smile so brightly, was losing its very essence. Her strong arms, which once swung a sword, turned into withered branches. If the star-bearer had arrived just a bit later, he would have never been able to see her again. Trembling with fear and anguish, he begs Serengeti for forgiveness once more, for arriving too late. But beside them, even more shocked than anyone else, is her own father. He asks who he is and what he means to his daughter. Our guy tells everyone to stop right now. All of them. He knows they can't give in to their emotions, because the Demon King's curse hasn't been fully removed yet. Surprised, Hudson asks what he means. Her father asks if he's saying his daughter could fall asleep again. Randolph says that, at best, she'll manage to stay conscious. But to completely break the curse, he needs to find another star. To remove the curse entirely, his star energy needs to be higher. And there are only two ways to increase star energy: level up or find other stars. So the first thing he needs to do is recover the 5 stars that the Night King Wilhelm lost when he died. Due to the secret effect of the star successor class, which allows him to read the memories of the star's previous owner, he needs to retrieve them as quickly as possible. If someone else gets them first, he might never be able to recover Wilhelm's memories again. Since he already recovered 1, there are only 4 left, and he's going to get them back as fast as he can. He needs to ask Serengeti about his death. Soon, he asks everyone to step out for a moment, as he has something important to discuss with her in private. Later, when everyone leaves the room, Hudson and Marquis Weiser are in the dining room. The Marquis stares at Hudson, furious, and asks if he's saying he promised to marry his daughter. Hudson replies that that's right and apologizes for the late introduction. At that moment, Marquis Weiser gets very serious. He says he's grateful that he came all this way for his daughter, but from now on, he won't be seeing her anymore. This leaves Hudson completely stunned. He starts saying he knows he isn't good enough for her, but soon he'll join the city council and become a man worthy of her. He begs for a chance. Marquis Weiser responds that it's not a matter of whether he likes him or not. Hudson asks what he means. The Marquis explains that the consequences of the great expedition cost them dearly. Restoring the knights and treating Serengeti required a massive amount of money. After the territory's funds ran dry, they were reduced to begging other houses for help. When that happened, the only one that stepped up was the house of Duke Scene, a major house in the kingdom of Valen whose power rivals the king's. Duke Scene lent them a huge amount of money, but the condition was to send Serengeti to him. Back then, they had no choice. Continuing Serengeti's treatment was the priority. Besides, even if Serengeti never woke up and their family collapsed, he believed that given Duke Scene's house reputation, they would never abandon the girl. For that reason, in 1 month she will be sent to Duke Scene's house. This is an inevitable decision to protect the territory and Serengeti herself. What Hudson must do now is forget about her. This leaves Hudson in complete shock once again. While this conversation was going on, back in Serengeti's room, she stares at Randolph and asks who he is. Our guy says he is the successor of Night King Wilhelm and came to bring news about his final moments. Serengeti says that's a lie and that he didn't leave a successor. Our guy realizes that, as expected from his closest ally, she wouldn't fall for vague words. So, he tells her that on the day she faced the star for the first time, she couldn't stop worrying. She feared that if she was consumed by a star and became a transcendent, she might stop being Serengeti. Hearing this, she gets extremely surprised. Randolph continues, saying that back then he couldn't understand her anxiety. However, thinking back now, it must have been because she wanted Hudson's love to stay the same. Serengeti starts trembling and speaking, saying that this is something only Wilhelm and she knew. She asks how he knows that. Our guy says that back then he gave her words of encouragement. Obviously, Serengeti remembers that moment, when Wilhelm told her to shut her mouth and just go get the guy already. Deeply moved, she begins to cry and asks if it's really him, Wilhelm. Our guy says circumstances and his appearance have changed, but in the end, he's the same. He says that if she wants, he can tell her other things too. He remembers that when he met Serengeti in the game, he was just a casual player, so he didn't know the details of what she was saying. The encouragement he gave her was just one of the 26 emotes in the game, triggered with Control plus key. However, thanks to the hidden effect of the star successor class, to him now it feels so real that it's like it actually happened back then. The scene is rooted in his head. Of course, that encouragement wasn't a direct action of his, but it reflected the personality of the character named Wilhelm. Serengeti says he isn't the type of man who would talk carelessly to others, so that's already more than enough. Our guy thanks her for believing in him. She comments that his changed appearance means he became a sinner. Our guy says that's pretty much it. She warns him that from now on, he'll need to be careful with the hunters. Our protagonist says he knows that. He thinks to himself that people or players players who possess other bodies while retaining memories from before their death are called sinners, and the NPCs specialized in hunting down sinners are called hunters or reapers. But he tells Serengeti that, more importantly, there's something he needs to ask about his final moments. On that day, he definitely killed the Demon King. He's certain he drove the path of light straight into that bastard's core, and his body began to disintegrate. However, in that final instant, everything just stopped. After that, he lost consciousness, and it was game over. He died just like that. He asks Serengeti to tell him the truth now about what really happened behind his death that day. It is said that the great expedition to the demon realm led by Wilhelm was an unprecedented force of 200,000 elite soldiers. Their morale was at its peak, fueled by the burning desire to achieve the very first successful expedition. Countless preparations were made based on exhaustive data, alongside a meticulous plan designed to handle every single variable without a single mistake. Everything was in perfect sync, or at least it was supposed to be, because in the end, everyone died, and even Serengeti lost her legs. Seeing that heartbreaking scene, another guy beside her begged her to keep going, promising to sacrifice his own life just to give her a blessing. Another dude up ahead said it was extremely frustrating, but it looked like that was as far as he could make it. He told her she had to push forward because they couldn't stop now, desperately pleading with them to hurry. One by one, so many close friends and comrades said their final goodbyes, unable to go on any longer, and that was the end of them. Watching all of that unfold, Serengeti realized everything was completely over. Even after using so many lives as stepping stones, she couldn't even get close to the Demon King. Right then, an entire undead army began rising from the ground. As she fled, she noticed they were attacking as if they predicted her every move, but she knew that should be impossible, unless there was a traitor working with the demons. She realized that the expedition had been crumbling from the inside right from the start. In that moment of absolute despair, she wondered if this really was an impossible task. But to her shock, someone yelled that it wasn't over yet, wiping out every single undead in an instant and slaughtering anything that dared to approach. Wilhelm himself walked up to her, mentioning that she looked completely exhausted and could rest for now, as this would all be over soon. Known as the God of War, the Night King was basically a living deity. His presence was so overwhelmingly powerful that you could almost feel sorry for the demons standing before him. A single strike from him could reshape the very battlefield. A deep sense of despair whispered that everything was finished, but that man cut straight through the despair with nothing more than a single blade. Later on, walking alongside Serengeti, she told him he didn't need to go that far, as her body had already recovered quite a bit. But Wilhelm told her not to worry about it. He explained he was doing this so she could save her strength, knowing full well she was an invaluable asset. He asked if they were the only survivors left. She replied that, aside from the wounded she sent back to the entrance of the demon realm, they were most likely the only ones. Wilhelm told her that in that case she at least needed to make it back alive. He mentioned he knew she had been crying every night, talking about how much she missed Hudson. Visibly annoyed, she snapped back that she wasn't crying and that it was a lie. But there was one thing she was absolutely sure of. She was definitely going to make it back to see him. Just then, to their complete surprise, a massive magic circle appeared right beneath their feet. Wilhelm casually remarked on how troublesome this was and tossed Serengeti far away, muttering that this game really wasn't easy at all. Watching in horror, Serengeti screamed Wilhelm's name, but he told her to go back, get married, start a relationship, or do whatever she wanted, wishing her a good life. Serengeti thought about how she could live while the expedition failed. The Night King had saved her life and given her a chance to survive. She knew that even if she returned alone, nobody would ever blame her. That was just how brutal and savage this battle had been. If she turned back right now, she could reunite with the man she missed so much and live a normal, happy life. All she had to do was walk away alive. Yet there was one certainty about her: she would never abandon her principles. So, apologizing to Hudson in her heart, she activated position swap and appeared right in front of Wilhelm. When our guy saw that through the memories, he was left in pure shock seeing Serengeti without her legs, completely battered. Back in the present, she mentions she got lucky. Even after getting caught in the Demon King's trap, her body wasn't entirely destroyed. And although she lost her legs, she survived thanks to the elixir he gave her. Our guy realizes she acted without thinking much in the heat of the moment. Even if he had been somewhat immersed in that game world back then, the scene still felt way too dramatic. She explains that after that, Wilhelm hid her and placed a supreme protection talisman on her body. Thanks to the talisman's effect, the Demon King didn't notice her, though it also meant she couldn't watch the entire battle unfold. Our guy says that's fine and that he remembers up to that point, but that's not what he's curious about. She nods, knowing he wants to hear what happened next. She explains that the Demon King showed up immediately after. Just like in his memories, the Demon King was definitely defeated. However, Wilhelm suddenly froze as if time itself had stopped, right at the exact moment his blade struck the Demon King's heart. The Demon King told him he was a total monster, even for a 5-star transcendent, and that he never imagined being pushed this far without the veiled favor of a goddess. But that was the exact mistake that cost him his life. Without a goddess's authority, Wilhelm could shatter his physical form, but he couldn't destroy his true essence. The Demon King then shouted that he paid his respects to the Night King, declaring that as a tribute, instead of his torn flesh, he would claim Wilhelm's body as his new vessel. With that, dark power enveloped the two of them, and a second later, everything exploded. Right at that moment, an immense light began leaking out from that dark cocoon. The Demon King, completely stunned, screamed out asking what the hell that was and how it was even possible. A humanoid figure made of pure light appeared behind Wilhelm's back. Shocked, the Demon King yelled that there was no way that thing was a star, asking if it was truly planning on killing them all. He screamed that it couldn't do this to him because he was a god. Howling in pure hatred, he aimed straight at Wilhelm, looking to kill him once again. But in that instant, Wilhelm simply dropped dead to the ground, and nothing else happened. At least, that was all the present Serengeti could tell him, as she couldn't remember anything after that. Thinking about it, our guy realizes the Demon King tried to take Wilhelm's body, and apparently a god stepped in to help. But this only leaves him even more confused, wondering what on earth is actually going on. Meanwhile, up on the wall, the soldiers were complaining about how completely boring guard duty was, and how they'd been stuck there for way too long lately. Another soldier mentions that low-ranking soldiers are getting their pay delayed, which is why shifts aren't being rotated properly. After all, who would actually want to stay in a dump like this? The guy agrees that's true, but then looking a bit suspicious, the same guy asks why his buddy suddenly went dead silent. Turns out his fellow guard was staring into the thick fog rolling in from the distance. He suddenly screamed that monsters were approaching the wall, a massive wave of monsters, and the city was under attack. The scene now shifts back to the distant past. A massive war between light and darkness once erupted across Pangania, claiming the life of the goddess Rhea. With her fall, the entire continent was plunged into deep darkness. Following the catastrophe, the lands were left completely isolated, with the edges of every road swallowed by a pitch-black void. To reconnect these fractured regions, people eventually poured astronomical fortunes into massive teleportation portals. In other words, these portals became an essential lifeline for traveling across the continents of Pangania. However, a portal is a mysterious construct that tunnels straight through the dark void. When left unmanaged and abandoned, these gates can tear open connections to the void itself, unleashing devastating disasters. And that is precisely what is unfolding in the city right now, with this overwhelming horde of monsters tearing through everything. The scene shifts back to Serengeti's room. Randolph pieces together everything she told him. He realizes that the Demon King tried to seize his body, but Pina, the twin goddess of Rhea, stepped in to stop him. Thinking about it now, he has far more questions than answers, but he tries to connect the dots. The first mystery is why he failed to defeat the Demon King in the first place. Randolph clearly remembers that right before he could deliver the finishing blow, time suddenly froze. To his real-world self, that moment just looked like a random blue screen crash. Yet, Serengeti witnessed the whole thing. That means the NPCs, the beings native to this world, weren't frozen at all. In short, for some reason, regular users playing the game were intentionally prevented from defeating the Demon King. As for the entity capable of destroying the Demon King's true essence that was mentioned, Randolph deduces it was never an ordinary PC user, but a player who crossed over directly into the game world. And that might be the exact reason why they ended up in this world in the first place. His second deduction revolves around the condition required to become a player. At first, it seemed like dying in the game triggered the summoning. However, Wilhelm's death wasn't his first. The most rational explanation is that only the death of your strongest character triggers the transformation into a player. He always loved hardcore mode, constantly creating new characters. If one didn't feel strong enough, he'd simply abandon it and start over from scratch. Throughout that process, the gap in combat power grew so massive that the deaths of his ordinary characters never met the threshold for the summoning. He can't say for sure, but for now, that seems to be the most likely answer. Thanks to all this, he finally knows what his next move has to be. First on the list are the traitors who sabotaged his expedition. The enemies ambushed them with such pinpoint precision that they clearly knew every move in advance, which makes zero sense unless someone was colluding with the demon realm. He also recalls Hudson telling him that Serengeti was a brave knight who took part in the Grand Demon King expedition led by the 8 heroes. Everyone knows that Raid collapsed entirely due to infighting among the heroes themselves. Our guy concludes it's highly probable the culprits are among those 8 heroes, people he hasn't even met yet. But one thing is certain, he's going to hunt down every single bastard that got in his way. Second is the Demon King himself. If he failed to destroy the Demon King's essence, there's a huge chance the bastard is still breathing. This time he's definitely going to eliminate the Demon King, rip out the root cause that turned them into players, and put an end to this madness once and for all. While lost in thought, someone urgently bangs on the door, calling out for the Star Carrier. It's Hudson, visibly panicked, warning that a total disaster is underway. The city is under full-scale attack. Completely caught off guard, the three rush toward the city center, only to be greeted by a massive, endless wave of monsters. Watching the chaos unfold from behind, the girl points out that an invasion of this scale, hitting right in the heart of town, looks like a monster wave surging from a nearby portal. Randolph quickly connects the dots. That idiot of a marquis claimed the city's city's economy was in ruins, but it looks like he went so far as to cut the portal maintenance budget entirely. Just then, Marquis Weiser and his escort of knights ride past them. The two immediately lock eyes. Seeing him, the Marquis expresses surprise, asking if he's still in the city. When Randolph asks what's going on, the noble states the obvious. Monsters are tearing the entire city apart, and all three portals in the east, west, and south seem to have suffered a catastrophic failure. Randolph is stunned by the sheer absurdity of three separate portals collapsing at the exact same time. Swallowing his pride, Marquis Weiser admits how shameful it is to ask, but begs Randolph to lend them his strength, knowing that having him on the front lines would make a massive difference. Right on cue, a sub-quest pops up, ordering him to defend the city. Immediately after, main quest 4 triggers. He must seal the Void Rift within a 30-minute time limit. Reading the notifications, Randolph can't believe the system's audacity, handing out quests under these insane conditions. Marquis Weiser doubles down on his plea, stating that with the city's current military strength, holding the line is practically impossible. Hudson chimes in from behind, desperately begging the Star Carrier to save Serengeti's territory. Isabella immediately checks Hudson, reminding him that life or death decisions can't be made purely on emotion. Assessing the battlefield, Randolph realizes this is the worst-case scenario. For now, they're only dealing with standard monsters. Even if the fight is grueling, the defenders are still holding their ground. However, once 10 minutes pass and a hybrid monster spawns, they will be utterly wiped out. A hybrid is a monster neither he nor anyone else here can possibly handle. The only way to stop them from appearing is to destroy all three portals and clear the objective before that 10-minute mark. Yet their sheer combat power is sorely lacking, and the regular infantry is completely tied down defending the perimeter. That means the Knight Order and their trio would have to carve their way through a massive wave of monsters all on their own to shut down the three gates. It's a reckless gamble with abysmal odds. On the other hand, there's the quest reward, the special package from the Golden Scale shop. He doesn't know the exact details, but it's likely tied to the damaged Golden Scale fragment, making it impossible to walk away from a prize like that. Granted, the timing couldn't be worse, and they have zero preparation. Pulling off the main quest here seems out of the question, and the purely rational choice would be to turn around and leave without looking back. But staring at the memorial inscribed with the names of all the fallen soldiers from the Demon King expedition, he hesitates. He knows throwing his life away for something like this is reckless, but the weight of all those names holds him back. Suddenly, desperate screams for help pierce the air. Civilians are being slaughtered by swarming monsters. Among them, a young child barely survives, shielded by the sacrifice of several adults. The kid is still breathing, but won't last long if no one steps in. Randolph is once again pulled back into his thoughts. Just then, Marquis Weiser spots Father Andrew rushing to rescue wounded citizens. The Marquis charges forward, ordering his men to intercept the beasts pursuing the cleric. With clean sword strikes, the Marquis cuts down the monsters and rescues the priest, demanding he get on a horse immediately. When Father Andrew protests, the Marquis bluntly points out that they can't save everyone, and losing the city's only high-ranking priest would be a fatal blow. Father Andrew, however, refuses to abandon the people. As they argue, a goblin-like monster lunges straight at the priest to deliver a killing blow. But before the strike lands, Isabella steps in with blinding speed and cleanly decapitates the beast, leaving both Marquis Weiser and Father Andrew completely stunned. Standing just behind them, our guy speaks up, warning everyone that things are about to get brutal, and anyone wanting out should leave right now. Hudson immediately tells him not to talk like that, declaring that he will fight with everything he has to defend Serengeti's land. Isabella remarks dryly that it's not like things have ever been peaceful since they teamed up anyway. Randolph tells her to shut her mouth, emphasizing that this time around, he genuinely needs all the help he can get. Deep down, he knows no sane person would ever take on a suicidal quest like this, especially surrounded by NPCs who seem to mess things up at every turn. Yet, the reason he's stepping up isn't out of pity for the townsfolk. It's not because he feels responsible for a city that fell apart after joining his expedition. It's not to protect the family of a subordinate who lost a leg saving his life, nor is it out of guilt for the lives lost because of him. It's simply because he's an absolute adrenaline junkie lunatic. With pure excitement in his voice, he shouts out for everyone to hear. From this moment on, they're going to tear straight through this hideous, grotesque horde of monsters and slice them clean in half. With that, the Marquis and the knights charge headfirst into the swarm of monsters. Looming near the edge of the city, there isn't just a mob of smaller creatures, but a colossal abomination watching their every move, a grotesque, terrifying octopus. Riding right behind the Marquis, a knight anxiously asks if they're really going to keep pushing forward like this, warning that if they fail, they'll end up completely surrounded and isolated deep in enemy lines. While the knight voices his fears, the Marquis knows full well that this charge is practically suicidal. However, the confident words Randolph gave him moments ago, promising that from that moment on, he would slice right through this monster horde, ignited a surge of willpower inside him. Back then, the Marquis had worriedly questioned whether charging straight ahead was really feasible, fearing that their current night order would be wiped out before they could even break through. But our guy shot back with a simple question. Did they really have another choice? As long as they didn't destroy the teleportation portals inside the walls, the endless tide of beasts would never stop coming. It wasn't a matter of whether they could do it or not. They simply had to make it happen. Randolph swore he would forge a path through the horde, emphasizing that no matter what happened, falling back was out of the question. Snapping back to the present, the Marquis shouts at the top of his lungs, commanding his men to accelerate and ram straight into the monsters without stopping, no matter the cost. Glancing over his shoulder, the Marquis places all his faith in him, the successor of Wilhelm. Riding side by side with the knights and buzzing with excitement, Randolph tells the old man to keep pushing forward without slowing down, because the enemy is already well within his strike range. Gripping his spear firmly, he delivers a swift thrust, severing one of the monster's colossal tentacles. Right on cue, a system notification pops up. Randolph has used the teleportation scroll. A registered origin teleport gate opens for 30 seconds, linking directly to the Basrock forest. Immediately, dark elves and druids pour out of the portal, declaring they've arrived to repay the grace of the forest. Calling him their friend, they shout in unison that they will fulfill his request, lunging directly at the surrounding beasts. Marquis Weiser looks on in complete shock. From the rear, Hudson remarks in awe that he never would have imagined the druids coming to their aid, praising the protagonist for having such an insane trump card. Randolph himself admits in his head that he never expected a subquest reward from the Basrock forest to be this clutch. It all tied back to when he gifted a wind spirit to the Basrock forest, which unlocked the druids' friendship achievement, along with the forest's favor. By nature, druids never betray an ally they've trusted at least once, as long as that person doesn't set their woods ablaze. Acknowledging that luck was clearly on his side, our guy silently urges them to show everyone what having real friends looks like. Perched high on a rooftop, the druid warrior spots the giant octopus blocking the path and instantly catches on to Randolph's plan, forcing a path right through it. The warrior tells them not to worry and to keep charging ahead, promising that he'll blast an opening for them. Knocking his arrow, he looses a shot at blistering speed toward the monster. The moment it hits the city wall, it detonates violently, blowing dozens of beasts to pieces on the spot and tearing wide open a clear pathway. The knights surge through the breach like there's no tomorrow, cheering that they finally broke through the front line. Riding alongside them, Hudson celebrates the breakthrough, while Isabella sharply reminds everyone from behind that they still have to destroy the portals and put an end to this mess once and for all. Watching the aftermath, our guy is amazed at how effortlessly the path was cleared, realizing that this is the sheer destructive force of a level 9 raid boss. At the head of the formation, Marquis Weiser tells everyone to stay sharp, warning that it's far too early to celebrate. The horde is far from defeated, and they only have about 6 minutes before a hybrid monster emerges from the teleport gates. They need to shatter all 3 remaining portals to stop the wave before that happens. The Marquis' plan is to split their troops into 3 separate units to take down the remaining gates simultaneously before the clock hits 0. However, Randolph cuts in and proposes splitting their forces into just 2 teams, catching everyone completely off guard. The Marquis protests immediately, arguing that they're running out of time and can't afford to leave any portal unattended. Randolph lays out his logic. Even with the druids keeping the bulk of the horde busy, each portal will still be heavily guarded by high concentrations of monsters. If they spread themselves thin across 3 squads, no team will have enough firepower to destroy their target in time. 2 units is the absolute operational limit for their forces. The Marquis understands the reasoning, but presses on about what will happen to the 3rd portal, noting that 2 teams won't have enough time to clear it. Randolph drops a bombshell. That final portal will be destroyed by just him and Father Andrew alone. The announcement shocks everyone on the spot. Marquis Weiser asks what kind of reckless plan that is, claiming it's completely impossible. Randolph looks him in the eye and tells him to trust him, stating firmly that this route offers the highest probability of success. On top of that, they must destroy the portals 30 seconds before the hybrid spawns, or ideally even faster. Gritting his teeth with a nervous grin, the Marquis admits he has no idea what the kid is thinking, but concedes that they only made it this far because of him. He decides to place his trust in him once again, stating that he's counting on Randolph's plan to work. As they split up, Hudson remarks to Isabella that the protagonist must have a calculated scheme this time too. Isabella simply tells him never to doubt that guy, pointing out that he always pulls off things beyond their wild imaginations and that all they need to do is focus on their own part. Now left alone with Father Andrew, the priest nervously asks what their next move will be. Randolph keeps it simple. They're going to destroy the portal. When the curious cleric presses for details on how they can pull that off alone, Randolph tells him to stay quiet for a moment while he maps things out in his head. He analyzes the field. Isabella, Hudson, and the Marquis have headed toward the other 2 portals. While guards will be protecting those gates, their numbers will be much smaller compared to the main invasion wave. With 5 knights assigned to each team, combined with the heavy combat power of the Marquis and Isabella, they'll be able to destroy their targets well in time. The real issue lies with the final final remaining gate. The moment it's the only one left, a mutant monster is guaranteed to spawn. Its final attack pattern is that of the Black Warrior, a lethal threat on an entirely different level compared to standard beasts. Randolph has to deal with it himself, as leaving it to anyone else would introduce way too many variables. If he handles it, he can lock down the surrounding fodder with Star Pierce and force a clean one-on-one duel. The minimum time required to take it down is estimated at 30 seconds. With the support of a high-tier cleric like Father Andrew, it's achievable within that window. But if they slip up by even a single second, their odds of survival will plummet. In the end, all he can do is trust that everyone pulls through. Without wasting a breath, our guy uses his summoning stone to call forth a Hydreigon, leaving Father Andrew completely flabbergasted. The countdown ticks away. With 4 minutes and 37 seconds on the clock, Isabella's team arrives at their portal. With 3 minutes and 12 seconds left, Marquis Weiser's unit reaches the second gate. With 1 minute and 4 seconds remaining, Randolph and Father Andrew finally close in on the last portal. And right at the 34-second mark, the two squads successfully obliterate their respective gates, leaving just one single portal standing with barely 34 seconds remaining on the clock. Randolph acknowledges that the minimum condition for the clear has been met, and everything now comes down to this last gate. At that precise second, the system blares an alert. A mutant monster's presence has been detected, and the creature begins emerging directly through the rift. The Black Warrior makes its dreaded entrance. Locking eyes with the protagonist, the monster stares right back at him. With only 28 seconds left on the clock, Randolph narrows his focus. There's just one portal left, one final monster to butcher, and 28 seconds to do it. Meanwhile, back with Marquis Weiser's squad, the sky suddenly turns pitch black as torrential rain begins to pour, adding to the grim tension on the battlefield. Riding among his knights, Weiser reflects nervously on the final portal, the one held down by the successor of Wilhelm. Time is running out fast, and their only option now is to push forward as hard as they can. Back on Randolph's battlefield, our guy charges straight at the monster without a second thought. He activates the Celestial Dragon set and equips the Hermes boots, granting him a massive burst of speed. Carving right through the front line, he finally comes face to face with the portal. However, the monster reacts with terrifying brutality. With just a single hand, it grabs Randolph by the head and violently hurls him backward. Gritting his teeth, our guy recovers immediately as his Hydreigon lunges forward to strike the abomination. But the creature is frighteningly sharp. It targets the junction of the dragon's necks, cleanly severing every single head in one swift motion. The enhanced Hydreigon is instantly destroyed, triggering a 24-hour cooldown. To make matters worse, there are only 21 seconds left until the Black Flesh hybrid is fully summoned. Without wasting a breath, our guy charges the beast once more, aiming straight for its head with his extreme iron sword. Agile on its feet, the Black Warrior dodges the fatal blow and slashes across Randolph's arm. Standing right behind him, Father Andrew reacts instantly, casting a healing spell over the fresh wound. Even so, the monster strikes again, blasting our protagonist backward. The timer to destroy the portal drops to a mere 17 seconds. Father Andrew is paralyzed with shock, terrified for Randolph's life. But in the very next second, the Black Warrior flashes directly in front of the priest, poised to execute him. Randolph blinks in at the last possible moment and deflects the blade. When Father Andrew gets knocked toward a swarm of surrounding beasts, our guy steps in once again to shield him. Hemmed in on all sides, Randolph unleashes Starclaw, obliterating a wave of enemies in the blink of an eye. He charges the Black Warrior once more, but the mutant monster easily blocks the assault. The countdown hits 11 seconds. Randolph is clearly on the losing end of the clash, with the hybrid parrying and deflecting his every strike. Yet, catching the creature completely off guard, Randolph locks his blade against the monster's weapon and flashes a confident smirk, remarking that he has finally pinned it down and kept it away from his ally. Immediately, Randolph shouts for Father Andrew to begin the prayer of adoration, commanding the priest to pray exclusively to him and worship him as a deity. To understand the sheer gravity of that command, the scene rewinds 4 minutes, back to when the two were riding toward the gate. At that time, Father Andrew had asked with deep apprehension if the two of them could actually pull this off alone. The cleric didn't want to doubt him, but the reality of the situation made it impossible to stay calm. Randolph was completely honest. If they had enough time, they could have cleared it through conventional means. But given his current combat stats, destroying the portal within the strict time limit was an absolute impossibility. Stunned, the priest asked what they could possibly do alone, pointing out that if they failed, every single brother and sister in the city would perish. Randolph cut straight to the core. He asked Andrew if he truly, genuinely wanted to save the people. When the priest confirmed it with all his heart, Randolph told him that he must offer a prayer of adoration unto him. The demand left the cleric completely frozen. The prayer of adoration, or prayer of veneration, is a sacred, wholehearted vow offered to a goddess by a high-ranking priest directly bound to her. It is a secret secret supreme technique that only the church's highest echelon can ever recite. If this prayer is directed toward anyone other than the goddess, the target is granted divine power on par with the goddess herself for a brief window. However, offering that prayer to a mortal means it will be the priest's final prayer ever. He will be permanently excommunicated and forsaken by the goddess forever. For an NPC priest like Andrew, whose entire existence was molded to serve his deity, being abandoned by her is an agony far worse than having his heart pierced. It is as if his entire world has died. In short, the prayer of adoration is an ultimate technique that wagers everything the cleric has. Randolph was demanding that this man discard the sacred life he had dedicated himself to from the very beginning. Visibly shaken, the priest asked how Randolph even knew he could use the prayer of adoration, as that was a secret known only to a handful of high priests and the goddess herself. Randolph replied that how he knew didn't matter. What mattered was that Andrew had the power to cast it. Father Andrew pointed out that if Randolph knew of the prayer, he knew full well what price it would demand. Randolph admitted that he did. He explained that he constructed the entire battle plan assuming Andrew would use it, since sacrificing those beliefs offered a far higher probability of success than spreading their knights too thin. Furthermore, he crafted the strategy knowing Andrew could never turn it down, because as a truly righteous priest, he would never abandon innocent people to die. The priest remarked that this was essentially demanding his sacrifice by holding the lives of the townsfolk hostage. Randolph acknowledged the weight of his actions and said he wouldn't blame the cleric if he hated him for it. But to the protagonist's surprise, Father Andrew bowed his head in tears and offered his sincere gratitude. He confessed that if Randolph hadn't proposed it, he would never have had the resolve to break his vows himself, condemning him to live the rest of his days crushed by the guilt of letting his brothers and sisters die. Randolph looked on with deep respect. He knew Andrew, the legendary NPC players used for farming honor points, was a priest of uncompromising righteousness and a true sage of Pangania, someone he respected more than anyone else. Back in the present, the prayer of adoration takes full effect. An overwhelming surge of divine energy floods Randolph's body, granting astronomical buffs to strength, stamina, agility, intelligence, holy power, sword mastery, and all resistances. However, the godlike buff lasts for a mere 2 seconds. With those 2 seconds ticking away, Randolph declares that with stats on this level, he can perfectly replicate Wilhelm's legendary prowess. He commands the monster to watch closely, warning that in his prime, he would never have wasted a technique of this caliber on a lowly creature like him. He unleashes the supreme art of the Night King Wilhelm's sword style, the Heaven and Earth Cleaver. In one apocalyptic strike, the blade bisects the monster clean in half and tears the very sky wide open. From across the city, the defenders gaze upon the colossal flash on the horizon in absolute shock, wondering what kind of divine force just tore through the battlefield. Standing right beside him, Father Andrew watches in complete and utter awe. As the effect of the prayer fades, Randolph steps through the remnants of the monster, radiating an overwhelming aura. Turning to Father Andrew, he tells him with absolute certainty, it was the priest who truly saved this city. With that, Main Quest 4 is successfully cleared with a completion time of 9 minutes and 59 seconds, unlocking a massive bundle of rewards. The story shifts back in time to revisit a fateful meeting with the Night King Wilhelm years ago. Back then, an elderly priest knelt before him, desperately pleading with the knight not to ignore an old man's cry for help and save his poor child. His beloved daughter, Andansar, had been struck by a terrible curse of dark magic, warping her into a grotesque eldritch abomination. Even though she had turned into a monster, Father Andrew still loved her dearly and couldn't bear the thought of losing her. So, he hid her deep underground, far away from the eyes of the world. However, as the overwhelming demonic energy slowly consumed her mind and body, it became impossible for the cleric to suppress her alone. That was when he began searching for outside help in absolute secrecy. His most crucial requirement was finding someone powerful enough to cleanse Andansar on their own and honorable enough to take the secret to their grave. After a painstaking search, he finally found that person. To Wilhelm, of course. That plea was essentially just a quest trigger. He asked the priest to lead the way to the subterranean hideout, where he was finally introduced to Andansar, whose body had already completely warped into a monstrous beast. Seeing the father's desperation and hearing his frantic cries for help, Wilhelm accepted the burden and promised he would purify the girl. Snapping back to the present, Father Andrew remembers that the Night King Wilhelm was the legendary man who saved both him and his daughter. Right now, as a system notification announces that the Black Legion is retreating into the abyss, the priest stares at Randolph's back, wondering who he truly is, or rather, how on earth he was able to wield Brother Wilhelm's very own sword techniques with such flawless perfection. Randolph gives him a straightforward answer, telling the cleric that he can simply consider him Wilhelm's successor. The revelation hits Andrew like a truck. He's completely overwhelmed by the poetic irony of being rescued by the disciple years after being saved by the master. Suddenly, the old priest begins coughing up mouthfuls of blood. Worried, Randolph rushes to his side to check on him. In a trembling, frail voice, the priest explains that his holy power has completely vanished as a severe backlash from the prayer of adoration, causing the fatal illness he had spent years holding back to violently flare up again. Randolph instantly realizes the reality of the situation. Father Andrew had been channeling all his holy power day and night just to suppress that deadly disease, and now his condition is critical. Randolph isn't completely sure if his idea will work, but he knows he has to try. He reminds Andrew of how his master had helped him in the past. The priest nods weakly, stating that he owes Wilhelm an eternal debt of gratitude. Randolph then declares that, in return for the kindness Andrew showed his master back then, he will now grant him the blessing that the Night King kept in reserve. He claims the Night King promised to shoulder Andrew's burdens and decided to use the divine indulgence granted to him to save the priest's life. Utterly baffled, Father Andrew questions how that's even possible, since an indulgence is strictly non-transferable. But right before the cleric can process it, Randolph speaks with divine authority, declaring that he pardons all of the old priest's sins. In his mind, Randolph breaks down the game's deep lore. An indulgence is a sacred absolution that a high priest of the goddess order can grant only 3 times in their entire lifetime. As long as it doesn't involve the 10 cardinal sins defined by the order, it gives the absolute authority to forgive any sin in the name of the goddess. In the game, it was a legendary item used to purge heavy suppression penalty points, the nasty penalties slapped onto trolls. While physical indulgences are written on parchment, the paper is merely a symbolic vessel. True indulgence is a pure manifestation of divine faith granted by a priest. His ancient pact with Dramut operated on that exact same principle of faith. Still completely stunned, Father Andrew feels his holy power steadily flowing back into his veins and can't comprehend how a personal divine pardon could be transferred like that. Meanwhile, our guy is thrilled on the inside, pleasantly surprised that the gamble actually paid off. The suspicious old priest starts wondering if Randolph somehow obtained the indulgence through illegal means and urgently demands he repent so he can pray for his soul. Randolph knows he can't blow his cover and reveal that he was Wilhelm all along, but he is saved by the bell when the knights and Isabella arrive on the scene to check if everyone is alive. Seizing the distraction to change the subject, Randolph points out that their escort has arrived, telling the priest to simply accept the miracle as a blessing from the heavens. With the monster invasion thoroughly crushed, Main Quest 4 is officially cleared. The global leaderboard updates once more, though Randolph's score is completely obscured by question marks. That very day, the Dark Elves and Druids from the Bassrock Forest prepare to return to their home using the teleportation scroll. Naturally, Randolph makes sure to see them off with heartfelt gratitude. The Druid warrior tells him that helping a true friend is second nature to the forest, reminding Randolph that whenever he's in danger, they will always answer the call. Randolph realizes that for beings who survive on the pure essence of nature, the polluted air of the city must feel like poison, making their unhesitating sacrifice and loyalty all the more impressive. As soon as they depart, reconstruction efforts begin in full swing. Since the ruined city was dirt poor and had zero funds to repair the collapsed gates, Hudson ends up footing the entire bill. They hire royal court alchemists to properly fix the damaged teleportation portals so they will never succumb to the Black Void's corruption again. Hiring alchemists of that caliber usually costs a king's ransom, but with Hudson's massive wealth, the expense isn't an issue. On top of that, because Father Andrew needs extended rest to fully recover his drained strength, high-grade healing potions are bought in bulk to treat the wounded townsfolk, once again completely financed by Hudson's deep pockets. Visibly frustrated by the endless drain on his bank account, Hudson vents to Randolph, complaining that it feels like he's personally bankrolling the entire city's salvation. Isabella just teases him, pointing out that the city is destitute and that he should look at it as an investment for Serengeti, who will soon inherit the domain anyway. Randolph asks if Serengeti has fallen asleep again. Hudson confirms it with a sigh, explaining that the demonic energy flared up and drained her after the chaos of the invasion. Understanding the situation, Randolph pulls out a mysterious vial and hands it over. Inspecting the item, Hudson is left flabbergasted. It's a high-grade holy elixir imbued with divine blessings, a legendary relic of which the goddess order produces fewer than 10 bottles a year. Randolph instructs him to administer a single sip every 2 hours. Doing so for a month straight will completely heal Serengeti's paralyzed legs. Hudson is left completely speechless, putting the pieces together and asking if Randolph bought it directly from the Golden Scale shop, finally confirming that he is indeed a player. Hudson reveals that he also cleared Main Quest 4, and after analyzing the new leaderboard and connecting the dots with the history of Pangania, he figured it out. Randolph is the legendary ghost user who commanded world-renowned characters like the Night King Wilhelm. Hearing himself called a legend makes our guy feel a bit awkward, but he formally apologizes for keeping it hidden and confirms that he is indeed a player. Hudson completely understands, admitting that broadcasting one's player identity in Pangania is essentially a death sentence. When Hudson asks what he should call him from now on, Randolph tells him to keep it casual, just like before. Hudson insists on addressing him with deep reverence as the saint, thanking him profusely for spending his hard-earned golden scale points on an elixir for Serengeti. Randolph tells him not to sweat it, explaining that while he only aimed to place on the board, securing the #1 rank due to the city's weak defense forces rewarded him with a massive payout of points. Opening the Golden Scale shop interface, Randolph browses through the unlock catalog. He knows this shop will be indispensable for his future survival and growth. Legendary components like the White King's Fang, the cursed Eldritch Black Grimoire, and a Dragon Heart are all up for grabs, the exact prime materials he used back in the day to craft Wilhelm's unique grade gear. gear. The White King, for instance, was a monster Wilhelm couldn't finish off, forced to retreat after claiming only its fang. This confirms his theory: when a character dies, their equipped items don't just vanish into thin air, they get archived right into the Golden Scale shop. Realizing that his remaining lifespan in this world is far more critical than he thought, he needs to dive into the next main quest immediately to buy more time. Randolph tells Hudson that he plans to set out right away for the next mission, and asks him to look after Serengeti in the meantime. Hudson, however, drops some grim news. To secure emergency funds, Marquis Weiser has already promised to send Serengeti as a political bride to the Duchy of Sen. To make matters worse, Maxim, one of the 8 heroes, is currently backing the Duchy of Sen with his private forces, making it impossible to stop the transfer through sheer military might. The moment Randolph hears the name Maxim, his interest instantly peaks. He remembers the man all too well, the commander of the infamous Kaiser Mercenary Corps, who led 300 hardened mercenaries during the Great Expedition, and the very first coward to turn tail and flee at the Marsh of the Dead near the gates of the Demon Realm. Randolph had already planned to hunt down and settle the score with the 8 heroes who sabotaged the raid, and running into one of them this early is an opportunity he won't pass up. He instructs Hudson to stall for as much time as possible with Marquis Weiser and ensure Serengeti isn't handed over to the Duchy of Sen until he returns. Hudson hesitates, doubting his ability to hold the fort without him. Randolph reassures him with words Serengeti once shared, that while Hudson may not be a fighter, he is the single person she trusts most in the entire world. Touched to the core, Hudson regains his resolve, offers a warm smile, and wishes him a safe journey. The following morning, Randolph receives a set of high-end travel gear from Marquis Weiser, and thanks the noble for the gesture. The Marquis wishes him safe travels, and asks about the special reward Randolph requested for the city. Randolph tells him that the financial arrangements were left in Hudson's hands, and that Hudson will take care of it all. Before heading out through the city gates with Isabella, Randolph stops before the memorial wall engraved with the names of the brave knights who fell during the Great Expedition. Reading names like James, Noah, Lucas, Jacob, and Zion, warriors who fought with unrivaled valor, he offers a solemn prayer for their souls to find eternal rest, paying his belated, genuine respect to every fallen soldier. As the duo walks away, the knights behind the Marquis curiously ask what kind of reward the successor requested. The Marquis explains that Randolph demanded a massive compensation of 10,000 gold coins for the family of every single knight who sacrificed their life in the raid, a colossal fortune that Hudson will now have to pay. Meanwhile, traversing the vast desert atop their massive Hydragown Mount, Isabella asks where they are heading next. Randolph reveals that beyond the main quest objectives, there's an essential companion they desperately need to recruit to boost their overall combat power for the brutal battles ahead. Just like Isabella, this is another high-potential unit he had previously benched in his past playthroughs. His name is Isaac, the Lightning Cleaver. A few days later, deep inside the subterranean dungeon known as the Crow Cemetery, Randolph and Isabella have just taken down the dungeon boss, the dreaded Corpse Crow. As a clear reward, he obtains a 9-hour broken golden scale fragment alongside the evolved Corpse Crow core. Randolph remarks on his sheer luck for getting the drop on their very first attempt. Curious, Isabella asks what that item is even for. He explains that it's essentially their entry ticket to get inside Cramdell, the city where this guy named Isaac is holed up. Confused, Isabella asks if he's talking about the legendary city of monsters. Cramdell is a sprawling stronghold ruled by the White King, the guardian deity of the North. It serves as a sanctuary for all kinds of intelligent monsters and mythical species, including the White King himself and anomalous entities that escape through dimensional rifts. Renowned as an impregnable fortress, neither the Demon Realm, the rulers of the Abyss, nor human empires dare lay a finger on it. Under normal circumstances, a human wouldn't even be able to set foot past the gates. However, Randolph has the hidden trait gluttony, and by devouring the Corpse Crow's core, the entire board flips in his favor. Without a second thought, our guy swallows the core whole, leaving Isabella completely horrified. System notifications instantly flood his vision. The overwhelming miasma from the Corpse Crow core is devoured and crushed by the giant's magic resistance. The curse and potent mental corruption are completely neutralized by the Ironblood Monarch's heart. With his trait mastery boosted by the Lord of Beasts, the mutation and adaptation process is successfully finalized. His trait evolves into the King of Corpse Crows. Now, when using the Corpse Crow summon, the number of crows called forth scales directly with his holy power. With that, Randolph's entire body morphs into the perfect form of a corpse crow. He inspects his new look, amazed at how flawless the transformation turned out, far superior to any basic mimicry or polymorph magic. The core acts as the anchor for the disguise, meaning the transformation will only break if the core itself is destroyed. Staring at his bizarre new look in pure disbelief, Isabella asks what on earth happened to him. Randolph casually explains that he took on the form of a corpse crow, so they can waltz right into Cramdell without raising eyebrows. But right as he finishes speaking, he lets out an involuntary squawk. Caw. Isabella freezes, asking if he's seriously just cawed. Embarrassed, Randolph tries to play it off, only to let out another loud caw. Immediately after, realizing it's an involuntary side effect of the core. Smirking, Isabella teases him, remarking that he's way more committed to method acting than she thought, genuinely amused that he's even mimicking the monster's cries. Annoyed, he snaps at her to shut up and tells her to put on some gear. He tosses her the Mitchell set, explaining that equipping all 3 pieces grants the user the celestial dragon wings. Since the armor dynamically adjusts to the wearer's build and stats, she will be classified as a half-dragon. In the end, both of them will be disguised as monsters anyway. With their disguises ready, the two set off on the long trek toward Cramdell. Many days later, aboard a massive ship sailing across the open sea, Isabella has fully equipped the Mikola set, perfectly tailored to her physique and level. She mentions to Randolph that she had no idea you could travel to Cramdell through a covert port like this, asking how he even knew about it. Randolph brushes it off by saying, "The stars know everything," though in reality, he had already charted this exact route during his past playthrough as Wilhelm. Looking around the deck, Isabella observes the level 7 and 8 monsters aboard and notes that none of them look like pushovers, calling it a miracle that a ship carrying passengers like this can operate peacefully. Randolph explains that everyone here is an evolved monster. Unlike mindless beasts, evolved monsters possess intelligence comparable to humans and have official clearance to enter Cramdell, strictly adhering to the law of never causing disturbances within the territory. Isabella asks why they're so disciplined, and Randolph simply replies that it's the absolute law of that land. Right on cue, the ship is violently ambushed from the deep by a level 9 raid boss, the Colossal Rancor. The gargantuan creature roars out that it's starving, ready to swallow the ship and everyone on board whole. Yet, before the behemoth can even touch the hull, Medusa's eye activates across the horizon, petrifying and cleaving the monster to pieces in a split second. Isabella stands speechless, seeing a level 9 raid boss wiped out in a single strike. Randolph explains that the attack came from Medusa, one of the 4 pillars guarding Cramdell. The iron rule of Cramdell is absolute. Anyone who disrupts the peace is executed on the spot. That's why, unlike reckless low-tier beasts, the evolved monsters here never dare step out of line. Just then, a crew member approaches the passengers, politely apologizing for the disturbance. He explains that an impurity slipped past the perimeter, but assures everyone that the threat has been thoroughly neutralized. The crew member is a level 8 evolved sewer rat, who cordially informs them that they will be docking at Cramdell shortly, and wishes them a peaceful stay. A few hours later, they finally set foot in Cramdell. Randolph gives Isabella a stern warning. The place they are entering is an invincible stronghold ruled by abnormal monstrosities. If their human identities are exposed, it will turn into a fight for their lives, so she cannot lower her guard for even a single second. Stepping off the ship and walking through the bustling crowd, Isabella is genuinely amazed, finding the city far more lively and welcoming than she ever anticipated. Randolph, on the other hand, is completely dumbfounded. Just a year ago, when he visited as Wilhelm, this place was a desolate wasteland where not a single blade of grass could grow. He can hardly wrap his head around how they managed to turn this entire city into a luxurious hot spring resort. Curious, Isabella asks what kind of person this Isaac guy is to make Randolph travel all this way just to recruit him in person. The question instantly brings Isaac's chaotic rap sheet to Randolph's mind. Isaac, the Lightning Cleaver, was a notorious wanted criminal who wreaked absolute havoc across the continent. At the bare minimum, he robbed nobles and priests of the goddess Order blind. At his worst, he took mercenary contracts in war zones only to turn around and raid his own employer's supply lines. Taking his chaos even further, he assassinated high-ranking figures across entire cities and intentionally froze teleportation gates just to trigger catastrophic monster waves. Isaac was the sole architect behind the total annihilation of an entire mining city. Snapping back from his memories, Randolph summarizes it for Isabella by saying that, in short, Isaac is simply the most dangerous man in the history of Pangania. Noticing his weirdly enthusiastic tone, Isabella dryly remarks that he sounds almost proud of it, already getting the picture that this guy is an absolute menace, stripped of all human decency. In his head, Randolph tries to justify his past actions. Back when he thought it was just a game, he pulled those crazy stunts as a protest against the developers, furious to see the daily active player count dropping without the company lifting a finger. Naturally, he had no clue back then that Pangania would turn out to be a real world. Refocusing on the plan, Randolph reminds her that Isaac's raw firepower will be an invaluable asset to their squad, meaning they have to recruit him no matter what. Isabella agrees, but delivers a cold warning. If that man makes even the slightest move against them, she won't hesitate to cut him down without mercy. Randolph laughs, saying how comforting that is to hear. Isabella then asks how they're supposed to recognize him. Randolph describes his look, a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead, bright golden blonde hair, and a pair of celestial dragon wings just like hers. To Randolph's utter disbelief, he spots that exact man standing right ahead, aggressively shaking down a walking cactus monster in the middle of the street. Isaac aggressively calls the cactus his esteemed customer, screaming in its face that his hot spring is the best and cheapest in town, loudly swearing that the cactus won't be going home until it pays for a bath. Watching the pathetic brawl unfold, Isabella turns to Randolph with an expression of pure, deadpan disbelief and asks, "Is this total clown seriously the most dangerous man in the history of Panganea. At that moment, Isaac notices something unusual and spots two people staring at him from a distance. He asks if they lost something on his face and why they won't stop staring, especially since Isabella keeps her eyes fixed right on him. That is when Isaac notices the celestial dragon wings. Our guy takes full advantage of the opening, saying what a huge surprise and massive relief it is. He mentions that finding another half-dragon in a place like this hasn't happened in 150 years. Isabella quickly gets into character and plays along. She agrees, saying it really has been about 150 years since she last encountered someone of her own kind. The protagonist walks over to Isaac, saying how thrilling it is to meet a fellow half-dragon in such a distant land. He insists they absolutely need to catch up on things and asks if he doesn't agree. Isaac asks what kind of nonsense this crazy guy is talking about. Even if they ignored the corpse crow, that girl is obviously a human. Before he can blow their cover, our boy warns him to watch his tongue. A colossal eye suddenly appears, watching over everyone. It's the eyes of Medusa. He makes it clear they need to talk in private, addressing him directly as the lightning cleaver. Later, in a secluded spot, while still dragging that cactus man along, an irritated Isaac asks who he is and how he knows his name. Our guy replies that Medusa's eyes are watching them, so it's best not to say anything unnecessary. Furious, Isaac snaps back, asking what any of that has to do with him. The protagonist tells him not to act tough for no reason, pointing out they are both in the exact same boat. After all, solely by possessing the celestial dragon wings, the monsters recognize her as one of their own. However, he can't fool Isaac's perception, because Isaac himself entered this place using the exact same method. The only difference is that in Isaac's case, his gear is hidden and only his wings are visible because he used an equipment invisibility potion to conceal his appearance. Not that it matters anyway, since our protagonist can clearly see every single piece of gear Isaac is wearing with his own eyes. He whispers softly that no matter how much he hides the Michelin set, he can't deceive his sight. Therefore, he needs to make a choice. Let this pass quietly, or die like a dog right alongside him. Realizing the tight spot he is in, Isaac bursts into laughter. He steps toward Isabella, saying he was merely startled to run into a half-dragon of her caliber for the first time in so long. He formally introduces himself as Isaac. Our guy keeps up the act, saying it's wonderful to see him. Isabella, completely bewildered, replies that it's a pleasure to meet him and introduces herself as Isabella, the half-dragon. The protagonist then suggests moving somewhere else. While the cactus man watches everything from behind in total confusion, our boy glances down at a sign on the ground and realizes it's actually a hot spring. A hot spring bath would be the perfect spot. Isaac heads inside the hot spring while still clutching the cactus man. As soon as he opens the door, he walks up to an old goblin clerk and announces that he brought in some customers. He tells him to prepare 2 more rooms, explaining that they are from out of town and don't seem to have anywhere else to stay. The old goblin barks back, calling him an idiot and reminding him that he told him not to drag customers in like this. After a quick argument over the bill, Isaac casually tells him to put everything on the cactus man's tab. Completely outraged, the cactus cries out that this is blatant extortion and begs for justice. Our guy and Isabella simply pretend not to notice. The protagonist quietly celebrates saving some money, while Isabella whispers that it's a relief, though the creature really seems to be begging them for help. The protagonist strictly tells her not to make eye contact. Later on, while relaxing in the hot spring, our boy remarks that this is no ordinary bath. Isaac agrees, saying that if it were just a standard hot spring, those monsters wouldn't be so eager to visit. The protagonist asks how long it has been like this, mentioning he doesn't remember a hot spring ever existing in this place. Isaac admits that even he doesn't know the exact details, only that the hot springs simply began to sprout up at some point. The protagonist thinks to himself, if this is a hot spring with a unique power that suddenly appeared out of nowhere, could it possibly be related to that? Cutting through his thoughts, Isaac demands to know why he sought him out in the first place, since he clearly knows his true identity, and this encounter was definitely not a coincidence. Our guy answers smoothly that the stars guided him there. Isaac scoffs at the mystical talk, saying he speaks like a saint, yet he is nothing more than a mere corpse crow, and it's not typical for a saint to be such a pathetic existence. Randolph fires back, pointing out how hypocritical that sounds coming from a rogue who forces others to pay for his visits to hot springs. Enraged, Isaac starts shouting, explaining that he was dragged here against his will and had to do whatever it took just to survive and make money. Our guy acknowledges that, but adds that whether Isaac believes him or not doesn't really matter in the end, because he came here to make an offer. Isaac asks what kind of proposal he has in mind. The protagonist tells him to serve under him for 1 year. In return, he will help him escape Cromdell and roam the continent once again. Isaac simply turns his back and walks away, saying he wondered what kind of nonsense he was going to spew. He states he has zero interest in such things and tells him to just get lost, promising to make sure their paths never cross again. Before he can walk out, our boy asks if he still plans on living in hiding because of the memories that paralyze him. He specifically mentions the mining town that Isaac destroyed with his own 2 hands. The protagonist looks back on what happened. At that time, as a form of protest against the game developers, Isaac used to provoke people constantly and engage in toxic behavior. His negative karma stacked up so high that he couldn't even set foot inside most cities. While living on the run, he stumbled upon a secluded village. The village chief was the textbook generic villain you would find in any standard fantasy story. All he did was embezzle village development funds and bribe town council members to keep his seat as chief, committing petty crimes like that. Isaac decided to keep a low profile in that village for a while and took on the role of a hired mercenary for the chief. It was purely a roleplay concept, an evil subordinate concealing his true strength while working for a third-rate villain. A few assignments followed, and surprisingly, unlike the typical generic villain trope, the village chief turned out to be quite resourceful, daring, and exceptionally cruel. When that ambitious third-rate villain with a shred of competence gained a powerhouse minion offering loyalty without asking for anything in return, he was finally able to evolve into a full-fledged monster. One day, walking through the mines, the chief expressed his deep gratitude to Isaac for securing that ore deposit. He bragged about how a remote backwater village chief like him was going to become the ruler of a massive mining town. He promised Isaac riches he couldn't spend in an entire lifetime, and enough power to make even the local king envious. The protagonist recalls that Isaac simply played along with the joke, thinking it would soon be time to loot the place and leave. Excited, the chief told him it wouldn't take long and invited him to behold his grand mine. That was when Isaac noticed dozens of slaves digging through the mines, looking like complete zombies. Utterly shocked, Isaac asked who those people were. The chief replied as if it were obvious. They had rounded them up from all the neighboring villages. They had to spend a fortune bribing the royal guard to pull it off, but it was a necessary expense considering the astronomical amount of money they would make from that point on. Right at that moment, a young boy walked past them carrying a heavy sack on his back. The chief stopped right in front of him, noticing something off, and asked if he had caught a cold. The kid confirmed it, saying he had been feeling unwell since yesterday. The chief put on a sympathetic face, saying it would be a disaster if he spread the illness to the others and caused a delay in operations, so it was best for him to rest for now. The boy was thrilled, asking if he was really being allowed to rest. The chief smiled and replied that of course he was, though it was a shame that he got infected with filthy pathogens, otherwise he could have squeezed even more utility out of him. The boy asked what he meant, and right then the old man casually slit the child's throat on the spot, remarking what a pity it was that he had to die. While Isaac watched the entire scene frozen in horror, the chief casually mentioned that they could easily make the workers breed to produce more brats to replace him. With a twisted grin, he said the day might even come when they could buy the entire kingdom, and it was all thanks to Isaac. It was in that exact moment that Isaac realized everything had gone terribly wrong, and he needed to put an end to it. Back in the present, our guy explains that after that horror, Isaac killed the village chief and tried to fix the town, but it was completely useless. The kingdom the mining town belonged to was already rotten to the core. A second and third villain emerged right after, continuously exploiting the place without end. That was why Isaac deliberately triggered a monster wave to completely obliterate the mining town. In the process, countless lives were swept away and homes were destroyed, but the endless cycle of evil was finally severed. The protagonist stresses that if Isaac hadn't done what he did back then, the mining town was doomed to keep spawning more and more villains. That is why he is telling him to stop confining himself to this place out of guilt. Infuriated, Isaac snaps back, saying he has no idea where he heard all of that, but demands that he stop pretending he knows everything. Our protagonist counters that if he is staying here out of remorse, he is handling it the wrong way. Furious, Isaac turns around and asks who the hell he thinks he is. The protagonist quickly reveals his true ambition. He is going to slay the Demon King. If Isaac truly wants redemption, hiding away won't solve anything. He should choose a path that actually helps save the world. To achieve that, our guy is gathering reliable companions who will never betray him. Isaac argues back, pointing out that they barely know each other, asking how on earth he could claim he is trustworthy. Our guy answers that he trusts everything about him because he knows far more about Isaac than he could ever imagine, perhaps even more than Isaac knows about himself. Utterly exhausted by the conversation, Isaac curses and says he doesn't understand a single thing he is talking about. But putting all that aside, he asks if he honestly believes he would be persuaded by the ridiculous claim that a mere king of corpse crows is going to slay the Demon King. With a confident smirk, our boy proposes a wager instead of a deal. Cramdal is the city of monsters, and among monsters, superiority dictates status. Therefore, he is going to prove to him, the monster way, that he is no ordinary crow. Confused, Isaac asks what he means by that. The protagonist points toward the Tower of Mysteries that stands in Cramdal. He declares that he will conquer a mystery from within the tower to prove his standing, completing the 5th main quest in the process. The concept of a mystery is essentially a special visual aura. In gaming terms, they are those distinct colored lights and glowing effects surrounding a character, much like the green or red glow an item emits after being refined to a certain level. In Pangania, these unique visual traits are known as mysteries. Although there are a few rare ones with special functions, even those only serve as minor auxiliary boosts for specific skills. The only real exceptions are the exclusive mysteries held by guild masters or city rulers, which function as formal proofs of authority. For the most part, standard mysteries grant zero actual combat power. In short, they are purely cosmetic. Therefore, while it remains a completely meaningless cosmetic feature for humans, it carries an entirely different meaning for monsters. Among beasts, a mystery symbolizes the pedigree and innate qualification of one species. In the magical beast world, having a mystery is the equivalent of a lion's majestic mane. Because of this, the higher the grade of a mystery, the higher that monster ranks in the hierarchy, distinguishing an ordinary creature from a full-fledged raid boss. Of course, obtaining a high-grade mystery doesn't directly enhance innate stats, but since powerful monsters typically possess the finest visual effects, mysteries naturally became the ultimate symbol of strength. The premier location to obtain these high-tier visual effects is the renowned Tower of Mysteries in Cromdell. To prove their lineage and status, countless beasts risk their lives attempting to climb the structure. After all, the closer you get to the summit, the higher the grade of mystery you can claim. Startled by the sheer boldness, Isaac asks if he genuinely intends to obtain a mystery just to prove his worth. He warns that if a mere corpse crow attempts to challenge that place, he won't last 30 minutes before his entire body gets torn to shreds. Our guy casually brushes it off, remarking that it would truly be a shame if that were to happen. Unconvinced, Isaac shrugs and tells him to do whatever he wants. Coincidentally, the Tower of Mysteries opens in 2 days. He declares that if the crow actually proves his status in there, he will gladly become his comrade, his slave, or whatever else he wants. 2 days later, right in front of the Tower of Mysteries, our guy and Isabella gather at the entrance. Isabella remarks that there are far more participants than she anticipated. The protagonist points out that over half of the crowd are merely curious spectators. He then asks if she is truly fine with not challenging the tower herself. Isabella calmly reassures him that it's completely fine, since she already possesses a mystery of her own. Surprised, our boy asks if she really has one. With a slight smile, she confirms it and asks if he wants to see it, activating the effect right away. In an instant, the protagonist recognizes the aura. It is the Jormungandr scale. He is left in total disbelief, wondering why on earth she possesses something so grand. Intrigued, he asks how she managed to obtain that mystery. Isabella explains that one day she had a dream where a colossal serpent coiled around her body, and she ended up awakening with that mystery shortly after, even though it doesn't grant any active abilities. Deeply suspicious, our guy ponders the dream. He wonders if Isabella met some specific hidden condition while he wasn't paying attention. He knows full well that the Jormungandr scale is one of the legendary 32 stars, a unique mystery that grants the right to locate the star of Jormungandr, something no player has ever discovered. The Desert Queen must have recognized the mystery Isabella carried and kept her close, placing her on the throne as a princess for that exact reason. If that's the case, the Queen will never give up on recapturing Isabella, meaning their dreadful connection with the Desert Queen might not be over just yet. Confused by his sudden silence, Isabella asks why he has such a serious look on his face. The protagonist brushes it off, saying it's nothing, and decides to focus entirely on the task at hand. Right then, an evolved sewer rat appears before the crowd, announcing that the gates to the Tower of Mysteries are about to open. He orders all challengers to wrap up their preparations immediately and gather near the entrance. Our boy lets Isabella know that things are finally about to start, promising to return shortly. She simply smiles back, saying she will be waiting for him. Randolph and the other monsters begin marching toward the tower. Taking a closer look at the other challengers, the protagonist spots several terrifying beasts, a pureblood, an adult leviathan, and even a minotaur king. Every single one of them belongs to the Calamity class. He finds it bizarre, wondering if today is some sort of special occasion, since such a gathering of elite monsters shouldn't be normal. The evolved sewer rat clarifies the situation, announcing that they have an exceptional lineup of challengers today because the seats for the 5 pillars, the new pillars of Cromdell, are still vacant. He encourages everyone to give it their all, noting that even the White King himself is eager to witness the rise of someone worthy of holding the status of the new 5 pillars. Hearing this, our guy finally puts the pieces together. The true monsters showed up because an active selection for the new pillars is taking place. He knows that Cromdell's 4 pillars, including Medusa, are opponents so formidable that taking down even one would require a top 30 player from the entire server. Having 4 entities of that caliber was already absurd enough. He wonders what on earth they are planning by choosing a 5th. While our protagonist is lost in thought, a massive monster looms right behind him, shoving him aggressively and barking at the damned crow to get out of the way. The brute sneers, asking if trash like him actually dares to challenge the Tower of Mysteries. Our boy coldly replies that this is precisely what he's doing. The crow's unbothered attitude leaves the entire crowd stunned for a moment, before they all burst out laughing. The monsters mock him, saying that if he wanted a mystery fitting for a crow, he should have just visited a convenience store down the street instead of throwing his life away like a complete fool. The colossal beast presses on, declaring that the crow clearly doesn't know his place. This is an arena meant strictly for high-ranking beasts. He might have been born slightly stronger than ordinary corpse crows, but at the end of the day, he is still just a crow. Low-tier species like goblins or crows have no business strutting around here. He understands the foolish desire to defy destiny and chase higher status, but no one can ever overcome the predetermined limits of their species. The monster roars at him to learn his place, but right at that second, the Tower of Mysteries finally opens its gates, announcing that entry will begin in 5 seconds. Completely fed up with the loudmouth, our protagonist turns to the brute, calling him an insolent worm and warning him that he has already memorized his face. A moment later, the challengers vanish, teleported straight inside the tower. Our boy appears in an isolated arena. As expected, the interior of the tower operates through separate instances with individual quests. To his relief, the layout remains completely identical to his past memories. He recalls that the Tower of Mysteries was the only place where he failed to secure the highest grade reward back when he played with Wilhelm's body. Back then, information was practically non-existent, since he was the very first player to challenge it. Unaware that retrying after a failure was impossible, he ended up quitting halfway through. This time, however, things will be entirely different. Looking down at the floor, he watches an entire army of the undead rising. The protagonist has every single mechanic and strategy mapped out in his head. Based on his past experience, clearing the Tower of Mysteries requires meeting two extreme conditions. The first condition is entering at the lowest level possible. Every monster inside scales directly with the challenger's level. If the challenger enters at a high level, the spawned monsters will also be significantly stronger, developing varied attack patterns and full immunities to instant death skills. However, simply entering at a low level is nowhere near enough. You need a character with overwhelming performance whose raw stats completely shatter the standard baseline for that level. He fulfills this requirement flawlessly. Without his 200+ invested talents, stacked bonus stats, and 13 hidden traits, making it all the way to Cramdell would have been impossible from the start. The second condition revolves around his monster class mechanics. That was the primary reason he needed the Corpse Crow core to begin with. Its skill kit is exclusively tailored for multi-target combat against massive swarms. Although the Corpse Crow is technically a level 4 raid boss with modest baseline stats, its crowd control performance against massive hordes of weaker enemies is unmatched across the entire game. Furthermore, the skill levels of a low-tier beast level up at a much faster rate compared to high-tier creatures. Thanks to his overwhelming number of talents, his character level doesn't easily go up regardless of how many monsters he slaughters. However, skill proficiency uses an entirely separate experience pool, allowing him to rapidly max out his abilities inside this massacre. To put it simply, he is the only being capable of conquering this place to the very end. Meanwhile, back outside, Isaac puts the Cactus Man to work. He orders him to stop slacking on the ground and start handing out flyers to everyone, taking advantage of the peak crowd to maximize their profits. All of a sudden, the spectators outside the tower erupt in utter shock. Monsters begin shouting that it makes no sense, frantically asking what kind of monster is inside, as only 3 hours have passed and the first floor's light has already lit up. Stunned, Isaac looks up at the tower, wondering if someone truly managed to clear the first floor that fast. Appearing right behind him, Isabella asks what that glowing light on the building signifies. Isaac glances at the half-dragon and asks if she genuinely doesn't know how the tower works. He explains that whenever a challenger conquers a floor for the first time, an indicator light turns on across the building facade, allowing everyone to track the raid's progress. Isabella nods in understanding, but wonders why everyone is so shocked, considering other monsters must have cleared the first floor before. Isaac clarifies that the disbelief isn't over the clear itself. The average completion rate for the first floor sits around 30%, which is relatively high given the overall difficulty. The real shock is the completion speed. Never in the entire history of Cramdell has anyone cleared the first floor this fast, completely shattering the historical record previously held by the White King himself. With a serene smile, Isabella notes that the saint has pulled off another incredible miracle. Isaac gets completely flustered and asks why she keeps calling that crow a saint, questioning how she can possibly be so certain it was him when nobody knows who is inside until they step out. Isabella smoothly counters by reminding him of his own words. This is an unprecedented event that has never occurred in history. If the feat is truly without precedent, it couldn't possibly belong to anyone other than him. Thoroughly bewildered, Isaac asks what on earth she is talking about. Isabella tells him to engrave those words into his mind, since they might be working together in the future. Whenever the impossible becomes reality, it is purely by the will of the saint. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, inside the meeting chamber of the Four Pillars, an assistant approaches Gungi and reports that the light on the Tower of Mysteries has just lit up. Gungi remarks that it was surprisingly fast, hoping that this time someone worthy of joining the Five Pillars will finally emerge, because he refuses to suffer that kind of humiliation ever again. 2 years ago, the Four Pillars of Cramdell were completely overwhelmed by a single human named Wilhelm. The monarch recalls that the human didn't kill them back then solely to use them as bait to lure out the White King. No matter how much time passes, that disgrace will never be forgotten. Gungi sternly orders the assistant to inform him the moment the second floor's light turns on. He states that even if the challenger isn't quite on the level of the Five Pillars, as long as they are strong enough to conquer the second floor or climb even higher, he will personally go down to recruit them. The assistant, however, stammers as he reveals that the lights all the way up to the fourth floor have already illuminated simultaneously. The Minotaur leader is left in absolute disbelief disbelief, asking what he means by the fourth floor and questioning how anyone could challenge the exact same floor as the White King in such a short amount of time. Without wasting a second, Gungi orders all 4 pillars to assemble in front of the Tower of Mysteries immediately. Meanwhile, back inside the tower, our boy brings down yet another massive beast and successfully clears the 4th floor of the Tower of Mysteries. As a clear reward, the system offers him a transcendent mythic mystery of the progenitor giant and asks if he wishes to claim it. Randolph declines the offer on the spot, immediately triggering the teleportation to the 5th floor. The 5th floor trial is calculated based on the challenger's racial attributes. The system measures his profile and identifies his lineages: Void, Giant, Celestial Druid, and Corpse Crow. With his racial attributes totaling 55 points, Randolph fulfills the tower's final hidden condition. A secret quest prompt sent directly by the Tower Master appears before him, asking if he wishes to conquer the Tower of Mysteries in mythic mode. Our guy is caught completely off guard, as this is a hidden quest he had never even heard of in his past life. The system warns that if he declines the offer, the opportunity will vanish forever, and he will be sent into the standard version of the floor. Randolph realizes that from this point on, he is stepping into uncharted territory that not even Wilhelm ever attempted to explore. Being classified as mythic, the difficulty will be brutal, but it will undoubtedly yield an unprecedented mystery as a reward. For an ordinary human, taking on such extreme risks wouldn't make sense, but in this world, he is the only one who has ever unlocked this achievement. How many gamers could possibly turn down a one-of-a-kind adventure that only they have the privilege to challenge? Without any hesitation, he accepts the challenge on the spot. Instantly, he is teleported to another arena, where a colossal awakened skeleton soldier appears right before him with its jaws wide open. Randolph notices that the monster has copied all the racial traits he possesses, though he has no idea what specific species it truly is. Multiple points of light begin gathering around the creature. The system announces that the awakened skeleton soldier has cast the Druid's Light Spirit Arrow. A massive barrage of radiant arrows shoots straight at Randolph to tear him apart, followed by gigantic hands erupting from the ground as the skeleton casts Giant's Grasp. Randolph nimbly evades the attacks mid-air. He realizes that inheriting his racial attributes means the monster can freely utilize the unique skills of each respective race. Even for a hidden quest, the difficulty has skyrocketed to an absurd level. Seeing dozens of crushing hands across the floor and countless spirit arrows locked onto his position, he draws his weapon. Right then, a worldwide notification sounds. Every single constellation from the Temple of 100 Stars has begun observing him. Our guy chuckles at the situation, remarking that he never imagined attracting the gaze of all 100 constellations from the Temple of 100 Stars at the exact same time. He knows they are either intensely curious about this mythic quest, or simply tuning in to entertain themselves by watching him struggle. A blinding flash of light cuts across the battlefield as Randolph activates Star Pierce Level 2, causing stellar energy to circulate throughout his body for 76 seconds. He admits that he wanted to enjoy the fight as much as possible against an enemy he had never seen before, but decides he needs to end things quickly so he doesn't have to deal with endless complaints and curses from the constellations who are watching him with undivided attention. Meanwhile, outside the tower, the crowd is left in pure shock as the very last light of the Tower of Mysteries turns on. The monsters shout in panic, frantically asking who on earth could have pulled that off, assuming most challengers had already perished. They conclude that whoever is inside must be the most terrifying existence of all, someone cruel enough to transcend the limits of every species. Standing in the back of the crowd, Isaac stares up in utter disbelief, thinking this can't possibly be real. Could it truly be that Corpse Crow who managed to conquer the 5th floor, a height not even the White King could reach? At that moment, the crowd parts with reverence to make way for the arrival of the 4 pillars of Cramdell. The Great Earth Dragon comments that it has been quite a while since the 4 of them gathered in one place like this. The Serpent Queen coldly replies that it hasn't been that long, precisely 2 years and 87 days. Medusa remains completely silent. The Earth Dragon turns to Gungi, asking what he thinks is waiting inside. The Minotaur admits he isn't certain either, but right now there is a monster in there challenging the final floor, something not even the White King ever achieved. Gungi reflects that he never believed any creature in this world could surpass the White King, or that human named Wilhelm. However, if an outlier capable of rivaling those two has truly emerged, then the absolute rules of Cramdell may become completely meaningless. Whether they like it or not, they will have to welcome this entity, be it as an ally or as their greatest enemy. Right then, the tower portal begins to churn, signaling that the conqueror is finally stepping out. Isabella and Isaac hold their breath in anticipation, while the 4 pillars watch with intense focus. Emerging from the portal comes that large serpent from before, roaring that everyone was clearly gathered there to welcome him as the newest member of the 5 pillars. Isabella and Isaac look on, completely baffled, while the 4 pillars instantly realize that this mediocre fool could never be the one responsible. Completely oblivious, the arrogant creature keeps shouting that he will gladly gladly accept the honor of becoming Cramdell's newest pillar, boasting that the mystery he acquired is nothing short of legendary grade. Sensing something is off, Gungi asks if there are any other challengers left inside who haven't stepped out yet. As the foolish beast continues bragging that his Mist Dragon mystery is undoubtedly worthy of the 5 pillars, a calm, cold voice speaks from right behind him, calling him a pathetic earthworm. Infuriated, the beast spins around demanding to know who dared call him an earthworm. Our boy glares back coldly, telling him to get out of his way and warning that he's going to count to 3. Without hesitation, Randolph simply says 3, and in that very instant, the manifested aura of the Mist Dragon mystery completely shatters right in front of the entire crowd. The beast trembles in utter horror, asking what just happened, while Gungi and the other pillars look on in pure shock. Our guy calmly reminds the serpent that he promised he would remember his face. The system displays the full details of Randolph's newly acquired reward, Eternal Randolph, an absolute mystery granted only to the one who has surpassed every system specification. The mystery possesses the indestructible trait, meaning it cannot be destroyed even by the hammer of the god of destruction, the interference impossible trait, completely blocking any external attempts to manipulate or alter it, and permanent duration, persisting across all conditions. Furthermore, its hidden effect allows him to permanently destroy any lower tier mystery manifested by a target, limited to once per target. With this, he officially clears main quest 5, obtain a mystery, leveling up once again. Meanwhile, beside a breathtaking waterfall in the distance, a commanding figure sits atop a massive boulder. With an ominous grin, he remarks that he just picked up a truly fascinating and high-tier aroma in the air, a scent he has never encountered before. That captivating presence is none other than the supreme master of Cramdell himself, the legendary White King. Back inside the Tower of Mysteries, our boy finally clears the 5th floor. A system notification pops up before him, declaring its deep admiration for the undaunted challenger marching with conviction toward his chosen end. As a tribute to his achievement, Randolph's fame increases by 500 points, accompanied by a promise that his unprecedented feat will be recorded in the Tower of Mysteries for all eternity. For clearing the hidden quest God's Election, the system calculates the results and opens an exclusive selection allowing him to choose one reward out of 100 available options. Randolph realizes that the standard reward pool has been completely replaced with divine bonuses. However, knowing he doesn't need to make this choice immediately, he turns his attention to the true grand prize, his newly acquired mythic mystery. It is Eternal Randolph, non-standard, an absolute title granted only to the one who has surpassed every single specification of this world. Among its properties are the indestructible trait, impossible interference, permanent duration, and an exclusive hidden trait possessing the power of permanent mystery destruction. Our guy is blown away by how absurd these attributes are. He can now permanently destroy the manifested mystery of any opponent. It manifests as a colorless, odorless, and formless aura, completely invisible to the naked eye, yet radiating an immense, overwhelming pressure that can be distinctly felt. Satisfied with finally possessing his own status effect, he steps through the portal and exits the tower. Back outside, that arrogant serpent continues screaming at the top of his lungs, completely hysterical over having his mystery shattered so humiliatingly in front of everyone. Refusing to accept that his status was nullified by a mere crow, the beast completely loses his mind and charges forward to kill Randolph. Before he can take a single step, however, the creature is instantly petrified by the skill eyes of Medusa. Watching the intervention, the protagonist thinks to himself that at least someone around here has some sense. Right after, Gungi steps forward with his imposing presence, firmly decreeing that disturbances inside Cramdell will not be tolerated under any circumstances, as that is the absolute law enacted by the White King. The Minotaur leader then asks whether Randolph intends to act as an ally or an enemy to this land. Our boy coldly replies that it entirely depends on how they choose to act. Although Gungi considers the crow's attitude overly arrogant, he recognizes that the sheer status and power he holds cannot be ignored. Adopting a diplomatic tone, the Minotaur clarifies that the 4 pillars have no intention of making him an enemy. Rather, they wish to escort him to the castle to formally report the emergence of such a high-tier existence to the White King. Randolph accepts the invitation, but immediately sets a strict condition. His companions, Isabella and Isaac, must accompany him without exception, catching both of them completely off guard. On their way to the central fortress, Isaac walks beside Randolph, unable to comprehend how he got dragged into this wild situation. The protagonist quickly reminds him of the wager they made back at the hot springs. If he proved his status in the tower, Isaac would have to serve him as an ally, a slave, or whatever he wished. With nowhere to run from the deal, the Lightning Cleaver promptly chooses to be his direct subordinate. On the other side, Isabella asks apprehensively whether it's truly necessary to meet this White King in person. Randolph explains that there is no reason to turn down an audience with the top ruler, revealing that there is something valuable he intends to obtain from him. Shortly after, Gungi announces that they have arrived at the White King's chambers. Before the trio can step through the doors, the 4 pillars enter first and kneel in reverence to greet the White King. The sovereign, an imposing beast with traits of a white tiger, rests upon his throne and glances at the corpse crow standing behind them. He remarks with disdain that the one who reached the top of the tower looks incredibly frail at first glance, though he certainly carries an intriguing presence. Randolph calmly steps forward and asks if he is indeed the White King, pointing out rather bluntly that he is quite ill-mannered for a first meeting. The protagonist's informal tone leaves everyone in the room utterly stunned. The White King mockingly questions the concept of manners and asks why on earth he should care about etiquette before an inferior creature. In that exact moment, a suffocating, colossal pressure fills the entire chamber. Randolph immediately recognizes the overwhelming presence of a true final boss. He knows that without his 13 hidden traits and accumulated stats, that killing intent would have stopped his heart on the spot. In Pangania, monsters level up just like players by slaying other beasts, NPCs, or players, but with one massive advantage: monsters have no level cap. While a level 11 monster is equivalent to a transcendent level 10 one-star player, the White King standing before him is a monstrous level 15 entity. With Wilhelm and the Demon King gone, he reigns as the absolute master of this world, a being capable of wiping Randolph out of existence with a single breath if he slips up. Even so, maintaining his composure with every single resistance trait active, Randolph stares straight into the tiger's eyes and asks if showing basic respect to a guest isn't the fundamental etiquette of a ruler. Isaac and the other pillars watch in utter terror. No one can understand how that crow can withstand the White King's crushing aura without flinching or stepping back a single inch. Instead of flying into a rage, the White King breaks into a broad grin and erupts into roaring laughter, declaring this fellow to be truly bizarre and finally understanding why the four pillars brought him here. The protagonist breathes a quiet sigh of relief, seeing his gamble pay off. He remembers exactly how the White King operated back during his days as Wilhelm, a deity driven purely by territorial instinct and fierce competitive spirit against the strong, paying zero attention to anything uninteresting, but remarkably generous to those who earned his respect. To negotiate with an unpredictable beast of that caliber, piquing his interest was the only viable path. Deeply curious, the White King asks for the challenger's name, to which our boy simply introduces himself as Randolph. The ruler analyzes the crow's energy. Although he cannot see the physical form of his mystery, he can feel the cosmic aura vibrating in the air, and recalls watching through the eyes of Medusa when this crow shattered the Imugi's mystery. Even the White King's own mystery trembles before that unknown authority, signaling a species ranking superior to his own. Having witnessed undeniable proof that this crow completed the final mythic trial, the sovereign feels an almost uncontrollable urge to test his might in battle. Sensing that the White King is on the verge of losing control to his battle instincts, Randolph calmly warns him that if they fight here, all of Cramdell will be wiped off the map, telling him not to make any hasty decisions. The sovereign reluctantly agrees, admitting it would be a problem to destroy his own home. He then asks about the trial of the hidden floor in the Tower of Mysteries. The protagonist counters by asking if he truly expects such valuable information for free, demanding the ruler's full cooperation in finding something he is searching for in Cramdell. The White King considers it a trivial request and grants him full authority, assuring him that no monster in this city would dare mistreat one of the five pillars. Randolph questions the title at first, stating he has no desire to serve as anyone's subordinate. The ruler clarifies that a pillar is not a position of servitude, but a status equal in standing to maintain balance, simply showing mutual respect. Recognizing the political advantage the title provides, Randolph formally accepts. The White King welcomes the newly born fifth pillar of Cramdell with a wild toast. Later on, after concluding their audience, our boy and his companions arrange a private meeting with the Serpent Queen. Intrigued and confused, the monarch asks why the newly appointed Crow Pillar summoned her in secret. Randolph formally addresses her by her titles as the ruler of Necropolis and Serpent Queen, stating he needs her direct cooperation for a search within the city. When she dismisses the request as trivial and suggests he seek out another pillar instead, asking why he specifically called for her, Randolph answers without hesitation that what he has been looking for in this land is none other than her, because he took a genuine liking to her. The direct confession leaves the Serpent Queen completely flabbergasted and shocks both Isabella and Isaac in the background, while Randolph calmly asks her to invite him into the chambers of her private sanctuary. Right after that, she snaps back to reality and, thoroughly pissed off, asks why on earth he is saying something like that. She questions whether he had actually become one of the wicked members of the Pillars and came to claim her, calling him an arrogant scoundrel. She further warns that if he thought she was just any ordinary monster, he is gravely mistaken. Randolph, however, simply asks what kind of nonsense she's talking about, leaving her visibly flustered. Our protagonist explains that he merely heard she understands art on a profound level. Taken aback, she asks what he means by that. Randolph replies that he's been searching specifically for an artist like her, having heard that her sanctuary is filled with breathtaking creations. Finally, he asks if she could show him the corpse art kept inside. The scene cuts back to moments earlier, revealing that just before leaving the Knight's Garden, Father Andrew spoke privately with Randolph. The priest asked if he truly intended to request request an indulgence. Our guy confirmed it, and Andrew asked what he planned to use it for. Randolph simply answered that he needed the relic for personal business. The priest admitted he'd love to grant it if he could, but sacred tenets forbade him from handing it over without a concrete reason. Randolph thinks to himself that this was only to be expected. Being a high-tier quest reward, the system wouldn't just hand it out for free, leading him to internally curse the priest as a bureaucratic NPC. Still, he clarifies that he isn't asking for a handout and makes an irresistible offer. He promises to rescue and bring back Andrew's daughter Andansar, catching the priest completely off guard. Randolph recalls back when he played Pangania as the legendary Wilhelm. Andrew had asked him to purify his daughter after she was corrupted by an eldritch curse. The purification ritual worked, but after undergoing such corruption, her body couldn't fully recover into an intact human form, effectively turning her into an anomaly, neither human nor monster. Shortly after, she ended up passing away. In a cruel twist of fate, someone stole her corpse, tearing her away from Andrew once again. Later, when Randolph reached Cramdell while controlling Wilhelm, he discovered that the ruler known as the Death King had claimed the young woman's remains. Armed with that knowledge in the present, Randolph assured Andrew that he knew exactly where Andansar was and would bring her back. In exchange, he demanded indulgences, 2 of them in fact, one to stabilize the corrupted body and another as his quest reward. Just like that, he secured both sacred artifacts with ease. Back in the present, Randolph reinforces his request to the Death King, stating that he genuinely wants to admire her private gallery and asking for a formal invitation to her sanctuary. Beaming with excitement, she addresses him as Corpse Crow and gladly accepts, admitting she had no clue he was someone who appreciated that branch of art. With the formal invitation extended, the deal is set. A short while later, the party arrives at the outskirts of Cramdell, standing before the Death King's imposing castle. Feeling a bit bashful, the Death King welcomes Randolph, telling him to make himself at home, and addressing him as the 5th pillar. She insists he doesn't even need to thank her, as any monster who appreciates art like he does is always welcome in her domain. In the back, Isaac whispers to Isabella, complaining that in a single day, he was dragged first to the White King's sanctuary, and now to the Death King's domain, experiencing everything he ever wanted to avoid. Isabella just tells him to get used to it, warning that sticking around Randolph means running into unimaginable situations on a regular basis. Surprised by her composure, Isaac notes how calmly she takes it all in stride, as if it's nothing. She explains that she has been serving the protagonist for a while now, and knows his ways inside out, taking the chance to lay down the group hierarchy. She is second in command, Hudson takes third, and Isaac ranks right behind him. Utterly bewildered, the kid asks who Hudson even is, but quickly shifts his gaze back to the Death King. He reflects that while he thought she was a total maniac who turned an entire city into a graveyard, she actually doesn't seem that hostile right now. Up ahead, the enthusiastic host opens the doors and presents her sanctuary. A gallery packed with severed, stitched-together bodies, and even the skin of human faces stretched out like canvas paintings. Blushing slightly over her artwork, she asks Randolph what he thinks, admitting that while she doesn't like to brag, she takes immense pride in these pieces and wants his honest critique. Behind them, Isaac and Isabella are paralyzed with horror at the sight. In total shock, Isaac mutters under his breath about what kind of disgusting hobby this is. In an instant, the Death King zeroes in on him with a murderous glare, demanding to know what he just said, and if he's daring to insult her art. Panicking, the boy frantically backpedals, apologizing and mentioning that causing trouble is strictly forbidden under the rules of Cramdell. Furious, she snaps back that the great warriors share the exact same authority as the White King in name, and slaughtering someone like him wouldn't be an issue at all, warning him not to expect Cramdell's rules to protect him. Before things can spiral out of control, Randolph steps in decisively, declaring out loud that the brilliance of a true master is always hard for ordinary minds to grasp. Clapping his hands in reverence, he assures the Death King that her craft resonates deep within his soul, adding that it's only natural for an ignorant fool to fail to understand it. He asks her to leave that idiot aside and continue showcasing her works. Overjoyed by the praise, the sovereign's anger evaporates instantly as she rushes back to his side to show him everything, leaving Isaac sighing in relief after narrowly dodging death. Guiding the tour, the ruler presents a leather sheet crafted from the skin of humans who tried to invade Cramdell, highlighting how she carefully preserved the vivid colors of the blood and flesh. Randolph plays along, praising the technique as truly innovative. As they walk, he notices a covered workbench and asks what lies beneath. She explains that it's an unfinished piece and grants him permission to take a look. Pulling back the cover, Randolph reveals the body of an eldritch anomaly she acquired by chance. The host explains that she intended to use this rare frame to craft a unique Dullahan, but vents her frustration that it remains an unattainable prize since the material simply refuses to stabilize. Randolph asks why it won't stabilize, and she clarifies that her art requires fully purified corpses. For some reason, this body's frenzy state never fades, constantly discharging chaotic energy whenever she tries to work on it. Randolph suggests that if she can't use it, she might as well hand it over to him. Confident that the task is impossible, she proudly declares that if he can manage a corpse that even she, the Death King, cannot handle, she will gladly give it to him. Without a second thought, Randolph extends his hand toward the body. He already understood the root of the problem. And Donsar wasn't an ordinary corpse, but an anomaly caught between human and monster. The sins and corruption she accumulated as an eldritch turned into massive suppression when she reverted toward human form, trapping the vessel in an endless loop of frenzy. The only way to clear that suppression was through divine absolution, the exact reason why he secured the indulgence from Andrew. Randolph activates the sacred artifact, and the system prompt flashes before his eyes, confirming that Andensar's suppression gauge has been reduced, and the frenzy state completely removed. The Death King watches the scene in absolute shock. She already knew this man was extraordinary, but witnessing him effortlessly purify a material that defied all her efforts turns her worldview upside down. She realizes Randolph doesn't just possess an eye for art, he holds the true craftsmanship of corpse creation, walking the exact same forbidden path as her. As the ruler of Necro Valley, the city of the dead, loneliness had always been her greatest burden. Her craft was so deep that barely anyone could ever comprehend it. Even the occasional brilliant critics who admired her work could never truly share in her anguish or the euphoria of creation. The thought of spending eternity without a kindred soul was terrifying, and the corpse crow standing before her had just proven to be the only one of his kind in this entire world. With her eyes sparkling in a manic mix of devotion and sheer infatuation, the ruler stares intensely at Randolph and asks where he has been all this time. Meanwhile, as Randolph focuses on the system notification confirming he successfully acquired Andensar's body, he finds himself utterly caught off guard by the crazy, love-struck look in this wild woman's eyes. And so now, a month has passed since the monsters invaded Earth and the dimensional warriors stepped into the public eye. During this time, an online community emerged and gathered an astounding amount of information regarding the crisis. It became a massive forum that reached an impressive milestone of 1 billion visits in just a single month. The interdimensional community. Renowned dimensional warriors spent their time on the forum replying to posts, sharing detailed guides on how to handle upcoming threats and what to do whenever monsters appeared. As a result, governments around the globe began officially recommending the platform. In the face of fear and the unknown, that information turned into humanity's only hope, serving as a true survival guide. The owner of this forum, revered almost like a religious icon, is known simply as the Master. He was already active before the very first monster invasion took place, and since then he has recruited countless warriors. Thanks to that, he built the largest faction among the players. Wielding that immense power, he began negotiating directly with world political leaders and global megacorporations. He is a shrewd strategist who expanded the community with backing from highly influential figures, and he also stands among the 8 heroes under the title of the God of War, the Master. Standing beside him, another member of the 8 heroes, the Lightning Emperor, remarks that Gracia skipped the meeting once again. The Nine-Tailed Fox chimes in, pointing out that they didn't travel all the way to America for no reason. The Corpse Queen tells them not to bother about Gracia, since it is hardly the first time she has vanished without a word. Lucifer takes the floor and stresses that the top priority right now is that Randolph, the player they suspect to be Wilhelm, who is throwing the main quest rankings into chaos once again. Maxim asks if they are really going to keep letting him do whatever he pleases. The Master responds calmly that sooner or later they will have to deal with him, but the time is not now. Before anything else, they must prepare for the true invasion that is about to begin. If those previous invaders were merely scouts from another dimension, the moment the dimensional rift tears wide open, the real war will ignite. When that day arrives, people will realize that neither politics nor armies will be able to protect them, and the only ones capable of saving them are the players. Moving forward, humanity will no longer follow corporations or governments, but the players themselves. Soon enough, he declares, the world will change. Meanwhile, back inside the game, the Death King stares in disbelief, asking what kind of magic Randolph used, and begging him to teach her the technique. Randolph reflects to himself that unlike humanoids, monsters do not accumulate suppression or enter a state of frenzy. It actually makes sense, since committing atrocities only boosts a monster's reputation, leaving no reason for frenzy to take hold. He turns to her and remarks that asking about secret techniques is taboo among martial artists, though he will consider her request later. She gently pleads with him to think about it with an open heart. Randolph states that, as promised, he is taking the work of art with him. However, he begins to wonder where the head is, feeling that he should return an intact body to Father Andrew. He asks the Sovereign where the head went, noting that a master artist like her would never discard such precious material. She explains that she naturally wanted to complete the piece, but had no other choice. When she first found the corpse, the head had already disappeared. She followed the trail of residual energy all the way down into the depths of Cramdell, but was forced to give up because advancing further was impossible. Randolph questions how any place in the city could be inaccessible, even to one of the 4 pillars of Cramdell. She details that under normal conditions, no one on the continent could ever subjugate her within Cramdell, except for the Star Guardians. Because of a non-aggression pact forged with them, she had no option but to pull back. Surprised, Randolph asks what those reclusive figures, who almost never leave their domain, are doing there. The Death King reveals that the special hot springs of Cramdell share a deep connection with the stars. However, a unique great arcana blankets the area like an impenetrable veil, veil, preventing even the guardians from approaching the star, forcing them to remain on guard nearby. As time went on, the basement of Cramdell fell under the jurisdiction of the Star Guardians, leaving the White King furious. Yet, since even the White King treads with caution, the pact must be absolute. She tells Randolph to simply give up on the head. Randolph responds coldly that the situation is simple to resolve, since he can just wipe all of them out. He instructs her to inform the White King that the intruders of Cramdell will be eliminated by his hand. One day later, deep within the basement of Cramdell, Randolph and his team arrive at the scene alongside the Star Guardian Dramute and the Star Guardian Phoenix. The Sentinels confer among themselves, questioning if that corpse crow can truly shatter such a formidable arcana, and warning that lying about it will carry severe consequences. A few hours earlier, at the central hot springs of Cramdell, Dramut had expressed utter shock upon seeing Randolph perfectly transformed into a monster, asking if he was truly human and how he knew they were stationed there. Randolph explained that he heard reports of Star Guardians in the area and confirmed it with the administrators. He then asked directly if they gathered because of the 33rd star, noting that there were supposed to be only 32. Dramut confirmed that exactly 32 stars originally existed, all formed from the shattered body of Rhea, the goddess of the earth. However, they suspected this newly discovered star belonged to Pina, the goddess of the sky. With the sudden emergence of a 33rd star, the Guardians began taking turns to protect the site. Randolph reflected on Pina, the younger twin goddess. The current continent is a portion of land lifted into the sky by goddess Pina after the primordial ground was swallowed by the abyss, where the demon realm is believed to lie below. Randolph pointed out that if goddess Pina turned into a star, it meant she had died as well. Dramut explained that the Guardians gathered precisely to confirm her fate, but were blocked by the unique Great Arcana. Randolph proposed an alliance, asking Dramut to lead him to the site so he could destroy the Arcana and clear their path. Dramut laughed at first, arguing that an Arcana represents absolute cosmic truth and cannot be destroyed, but he stopped immediately upon seeing the dead seriousness in Randolph's eyes. Back in the present, Dramut maintains that Randolph is not the type to make empty threats. The other Guardian asks why this crow would even help them, and Randolph clarifies that he has something he needs to retrieve on the other side, making the removal of the barrier a win for everyone. The Guardian accepts the premise, but glares into the distance as the White King approaches, demanding to know why the monarch is drawing close to the star. The White King tells them to relax, assuring that he only came to watch since the unwelcome guests failed to resolve the problem, and Cramdell's newest pillar stepped up to handle it. The Guardian curses him as a miserable hyena. Randolph realizes the situation will soon spiral into chaos, so he resolves to finish the job quickly and send everyone packing. He steps forward and touches the veil, confirming the presence of an arcana. Because of his innate trait, Arcana Aeternum, any arcana of equal or lower grade will be permanently destroyed upon contact. Suddenly, a system alert appears before him, warning that upon destroying the first wall of the unique grade arcana, the main quest with a question mark will be initiated. Randolph feels suspicious about the unusual prompt, but with no reason to turn back, he activates his power and shatters the barrier into pieces, leaving everyone stunned. With the path cleared, Randolph spots the brilliant 33rd star gleaming in the depths. As he focuses on the radiant light, he notices the imposing silhouette of a knight mounted upon a horse. In that very instant, the hidden objective is unveiled by the system: eliminate the king of the dimensional rift. Sensing the imminent danger from behind, Isabella shouts for the star carrier, while Dramut asks in utter disbelief what on earth that thing is. Right behind them, the Death King asks if the corpse crow is alright. Randolph observes the scene and thinks to himself that he was absolutely certain he killed this being during the expedition to the demon realm. Yet, it seems the monster managed to slip all the way here. Aram, the first king of hell and guardian of the demon realm. Aram announces at the top of his lungs that the star arcana keeping them suppressed has finally vanished. He orders his comrades to prepare to cross over into another dimension, declaring that as soon as he takes the heart of goddess Pina and recovers all his strength, he will tear open the demonic rift once and for all, bringing about the end of times. Meanwhile, back on Earth, all of humanity is already facing grave danger. People stare up at the blood-red sky in sheer panic, wondering what in the world is happening. At that moment, an operative rushes over to the master and reports that the dimensional collapse rate has finally reached 10%, signaling that the first dimensional rift is about to open completely, and begs him to issue the combat orders. The master, however, responds with cold composure, stating that there is no need to rush. Seeing his subordinates' confusion, he explains that it is flat out impossible for a demon king to show up in the very first rift, so their current preparations are more than enough. Therefore, they will simply wait in peace until the city drowns in tears of blood. Only when the people fall to their knees and beg the players to save them will they finally step onto the battlefield. Very soon, he emphasizes, the entire world will belong solely to the players. Yet, right at that moment, much to the Supreme Leader's surprise, an emergency system notification flashes before his eyes, announcing that a raid against the King of the Dimensional Rift is already underway. The progress gauge jumps rapidly from 1.3% to 2.5%, and within seconds hits 7.0%. 7.8%. The master is left completely flabbergasted, unable to fathom how a raid of that magnitude is already in full swing when the rift on Earth has not even opened yet. Back in Pangania, the raid progress has already reached 17.4% as the colossal Star Guardian pummels the King of Hell without mercy. Pinned to the ground, Iram screams in disbelief, unable to accept that he is getting overwhelmed so effortlessly. In the world of Pangania, it is widely known that three entities reign supreme above all others: the Demon King of the Demon Realm, the White King of Cramdel, and the legendary Wilhelm of the continent, sparking the running joke that only these three are capable of killing one another. However, that hierarchy only applies to the existing races, monsters, NPCs, and players across Pangania. Among the primordial entities created by the system specifically to protect the sacred stars, there exist other monsters capable of rivaling that trinity, the Star Guardians. And this towering titan happens to be the strongest among all the Star Guardians, the giant of will against evil. Glaring down at the Lord of Hell with sheer contempt, the giant demands how a mere minion of ruin dares covet the symbol of the goddess, vowing to slaughter him on the spot. Watching the spectacle from a prime front row seat, Randolph thinks to himself that he never imagined the veil-like arcana was actually suppressing Aram the entire time. Even so, thanks to the Star Guardians, the whole situation turned out far less complicated, especially with that giant, the Guardian tasked with protecting Wilhelm's final star in the past. Having him on their side makes him one of the most dependable allies they could ever ask for. Behind Randolph, the White King comments in his feline form that it is a real shame the big guy took care of everything so easily, since they will not get to see what the corpse crow is truly capable of. Randolph catches on right away that the Sovereign is testing him, reminding the tiger that his promise was only to destroy the Arcana. Even so, Randolph knows the White King is sharp and did not fully buy into his bluff, being the kind of leader who needs to see real strength with his own eyes. Back on the battlefield, the King of Hell curses the Star Guardian in pure rage, screaming about how his grand design was right within his grasp, and how dare this wretched sentinel stand in his way. In response, the Guardian coldly dismisses Aram as a persistent pest and declares that it is time for his eternal slumber. In his mind, Aram flashes back to a shadowy entity commanding him, saying that having received a portion of its primordial power, he must march to Earth in another dimension and take the first step of the grand plan to eliminate a target whose name remains obscured by the system. Snapping back to the fight, Aram curses his rotten luck for running into such overwhelming power and watching his invasion crumble. Still, he decides that bringing everyone who stood in his path down with him makes the effort worth it. Aram unleashes a massive swirling vortex of energy. In the back, the Death King is stunned by the sheer density of mana surging through the storm. Isabella and Isaac panic as the tempest begins dragging everything in, tearing even demonic warriors right off their feet. The White King warns that the situation has turned fatal, realizing the fiend intends to self-destruct, and commands Randolph to pull back immediately, gather the others, and flee the underground. Randolph asks about the Star Guardians, but the White King orders him to forget about them, warning that an accumulation of mana of that scale will swallow everything and collapse the entire dimension. Randolph realizes that if the White King, with his divine danger instincts, says it is lethal, then it truly is. Even so, he refuses to abandon the newly found star and his loyal ally Dramut to their doom. Dramut, in his massive serpent form, thrashes around in a panic, crying out that he has no hands to hold onto anything as the winds pull him in. Noticing Randolph standing his ground, the White King shouts, asking what he is doing, warning that they are out of time and must escape before the vortex expands further. Tuning out the warnings, Randolph rapidly combs through his options for a way to turn the disaster around. He suddenly recalls his celestial rewards, the 100 treasures granted directly by the constellations upon completing previous main quests. Among those options lies a relic from a constellation specialized in sealing raw energy. Accessing his menu, Randolph finally claims the pending reward from the completion of Main Quest 5. Curious at the sight, the White King asks what he plans to do. Randolph turns back with a confident smirk, reminding the Sovereign that earlier he wanted to see what he was capable of, so now he can watch him contain this explosion. Leaving the monarch speechless, Randolph simply tells him to sit back and watch while he saves the day. Among the Guardians, Dramut screams for his master, asking where he is going and warning that it is far too dangerous. Without a second thought, Randolph charges straight toward the tornado and hurls the glowing relic directly into the eye of the storm. The system alerts that the legendary sealing item, the Diadem of Restraint, has been successfully activated. The monstrous concentration of mana is rapidly drained and compressed into the artifact, leaving the Guardians stunned as the apocalyptic storm is completely swallowed whole. A few seconds later, the vortex vanishes to reveal Aram collapsed on the ground, utterly traumatized by the loss of his sealed mana. The small crown locks securely onto his skull as the monster struggles to understand what just happened. Randolph steps up in front of him and mentally commands the Diadem of Restraint to contract. Under the relic's power, the once terrifying ruler of hell steadily shrinks down until he becomes a living miniature that fits neatly in the palm of Randolph's hand. Looking down at the tiny, helpless creature, Randolph smugly remarks that he finally caught him. Back on Earth, the system announces to all players that the mysterious main quest to defeat the King of the Dimensional Rift has been successfully completed. Right after, the people notice the sky returning to its normal color, filled with astonishment and wondering why the monsters never ended up invading the city. High atop the skyscraper, the master grits his teeth in pure frustration. He was just one single step away from ushering in a world ruled by warriors. For this momentous day, he had recruited dozens of elite fighters, yet everything ended without them unsheathing a single sword. His rage boils over when he checks the interface and sees that Randolph holds first place on the main quest rankings, and not just first place, but the sole registered participant. Staring at the prompt, the master vows to himself that he will never forgive him. Meanwhile, in the depths of Cramdell, the Star Guardian stares at the scene in utter bewilderment, questioning how that corpse crow managed to contain an explosion of such magnitude. The White King, on his part, reflects with great intrigue that the kids stopped a mana detonation that even he wouldn't have been able to control. The Sovereign realizes there is no longer any reason to doubt the man's capabilities, and his interest is no longer mere curiosity. He is now fully determined to recruit this corpse crow as one of his great pillars. Rushing toward Randolph, Isabella and Isaac hurry over, frantically asking if he is alright. Our protagonist notices that he leveled up, and the quest reward experience is fantastic. On top of that, among the rewards claimed, he obtained the sealed Holy Grail of the Goddess, a sacred relic that can only be unsealed by a high priest of honor. Randolph instantly recalls that he can have Father Andrew perform the ritual. He turns his attention back to his hand, looking down at the tiny creature trapped within his palm. Absolutely furious, Aram demands to know what he just did. Randolph feels slightly awkward seeing the once terrifying lord shrunk down so small. The villain shrieks at Randolph to restore him to his original size immediately, threatening to kill him if he refuses. Randolph reflects that sealing Aram so easily was only possible because the giant of will against evil had already weakened the demon lord in battle. Even so, it is an extraordinary divine relic, the legendary sacred treasure of the great sage equal to heaven. Keeping his eyes on the main objective, Randolph asks the tiny creature in his hand if he has seen the head of the woman meant for Dullahan, Andrew's daughter named Andansar. Sneering in contempt, Aram asks how he was supposed to know whose head it was and spits at Randolph, arrogantly declaring that he would never tell an idiot like him a single thing. Without losing his cool, Randolph simply begins squeezing the villain's miniature skull, making the demon lord shriek in agony. Driven wild by the unbearable pain, Aram folds instantly, begging him to stop and confessing that he has the head and will hand it over immediately. Ahra materializes and Ansar's head and hands it over. Randolph asks why he was keeping it, and the villain explains that he saved it thinking he could craft a unique undead, though he couldn't use it without a suitable body. Randolph understands the logic. Ahram is the king of the dead, with the power to command undead legions, so her remains must have been scooped up while he was gathering corpses for his undead army. Randolph passes the preserved head to Isaac and tells him to look after it, leaving the boy completely stunned as he holds the macabre item. Right behind them, the colossal Star Guardian steps forward. Addressing Randolph as Corpse Crow, the giant admits that from shattering the Arcana barrier to containing the disaster, he owes him a massive debt, offering his sincere gratitude. This catches Randolph by surprise, as he never imagined he would live to see that entity thank him with such respect. He knows full well that if the giant ever found out his true identity as Wilhelm, he would crush him on the spot simply for being the fool who failed to protect his own star in the past. Keeping his identity hidden is essential, as the giant does not possess Dramat's mild temper. Playing it off, Randolph tells him to forget about it, explaining that he only acted out of self-interest. In a teasing tone, our protagonist suggests that if he is so grateful, he could just hand over the 33rd star. The giant refuses on the spot, stating that will never happen. Randolph sighs at the refusal, while the Titan notes that unlike that fool who lost his star in the past, this crow has proven to be remarkably capable, and the debt will be repaid one day. As for Pina's star, its fate will be decided by the Guardians once they secure it. Randolph thinks to himself that while he would love to take the star, he cannot afford to make enemies out of the Guardians right now. Yet, just as the giant reaches out to claim the divine celestial body, the star suddenly pulls away, slips right out of the Guardian's grasp, and rushes toward Randolph, blending its brilliant light into his chest. In that instant, a memory from the past floods Randolph's mind, tracing back to when he lived as the Night King Wilhelm. In that memory, the Demon Lord mocked his resolve, admitting that even for a 5-star transcendent, it was terrifying how Wilhelm backed him into a corner without a single divine blessing from a goddess. However, the demon pointed out the hero's fatal mistake. Without divine authority, Wilhelm's blade could tear his body apart, but it could never extinguish his immortal essence. As a sign of respect for the Night King's might, the Demon Lord decided that rather than keeping his shattered form, he would claim Wilhelm's body as his supreme new vessel, commanding the sovereign to sleep for all eternity. Demonic corruption began swallowing the hero's flesh, but before the takeover was complete, Goddess Pina manifested. The goddess lamented that she never imagined the warrior could reach such colossal heights without a divine blessing, warning that if Wilhelm's vessel fell into demonic hands, not only this world but all connected dimensions would collapse into absolute ruin. With her final spark of power, the goddess pleaded with the soul bound to the Night King, trading her own divine life for a fleeting moment so he might return to this world once more. The demon lord flew into a rage upon seeing the goddess intervene, spewing curses and demanding if she was truly taking her own knight's life, just to keep from losing the sacred star. In her final moments, Goddess Pina reflected that while some return out of desire, some through bonds, and others for their own ambitions, her prayer was simply that he would be someone who truly loves Pangania. Snapping back to reality in the present, Randolph realizes that he had just witnessed Goddess Pina's final memory. Standing before him, the star giant declares in awe that the corpse crow has been chosen by Pina's star. Since the twin goddesses are essentially one and the same, the star's acceptance officially makes Randolph a star guardian, uniting them as part of the same sacred family. Hearing the proclamation, the White King snaps in fury from the back, barking that this is pure nonsense and ordering the guardians not to pull any cheap tricks on the great warriors of Cromdell. The guardian shoots back with authority, asserting that the moment the star chose him, he became a star guardian, and a mortal ruler has no power to overturn divine authority. The White King scoffs that the goddess doesn't matter, because what matters is that he decided he wants him. Caught in the crossfire, Isaac asks Isabella if they shouldn't just run away right now, and Isabella agrees that things are getting pretty messy. From one side, the Death King calls out to our protagonist, asking what he is doing over there and insisting he should come over to her side. On the other side, Dramit shouts for his master, calling him Corpse Crow, and pleading with him to come toward the Guardians where it is safe. The giant mocks the White King as a stray feline, asking if he's saying he doesn't care if his home gets destroyed. The ruler of Cramdell roars back that they can do whatever they want, and he will gladly tear each of them to shreds. Before the clash erupts, our guy cuts in shouting that they are all talking nonsense, asking why they think they can decide his future for him. The White King snaps back that he already agreed to become a great warrior. Randolph counters firmly that the situation has changed. The giant chimes in, saying that becoming a guardian is his destiny and he must accept it. Randolph stares down both factions and asks according to whose rules he should obey. With a calculating look, our protagonist declares that if both sides truly want him in their ranks, they will have to show him who offers the best deal and the highest profit, leaving it up to them to prove who deserves his loyalty. Sometime later, back at the castle in Cromdell, the White King voices his disbelief, stating that the entire situation is ridiculous and that he cannot believe Randolph is bargaining for a seat among the city's great warriors. Randolph fires right back, telling the sovereign that if he doesn't like it, he can simply walk away. The monarch clarifies that he never said he disliked the idea, but asks if the young man was genuinely satisfied with the proposal offered by the Star Guardians. Randolph replies that their offer was quite reasonable. The Guardians agreed to grant him a sacred title. For our protagonist, that is a massive advantage, as securing an official title makes tracking down clues regarding the remaining stars infinitely easier. With a mocking smirk, the White King scoffs at the offer, calling it a pathetic reward typical of those stingy fools. The sovereign claims he is on an entirely different level and lays down his counteroffer. If Randolph joins Cramdell, he will be granted rulership over any city he desires. The monarch makes only a few exceptions. Territories belonging to the Aran Empire, southern continent cities protected by the Black King, and Cramdell itself are completely off the table. Randolph weighs the offer and realizes just how monumental the proposal truly is. The sovereign is offering him literally any city across the continent outside those exceptions, even if it means conquering it by force of arms. Although the Black King lost the previous power struggle to the White King, he still rules the south with an iron fist, while Aran remains the only established empire on the continent. Outside those two major powers, there is not a single faction capable of withstanding an invasion from Cramdell's monstrous legions. If he seals the pact now, Randolph will be able to command the might of these monsters in practically any region he chooses. He realizes this is an extraordinary deal that proves just how much the White King acknowledges his value. On the flip side, it also confirms that the monarch views him as a top-tier threat and will never let him fall into someone else's hands. Knowing that negotiations have reached their peak and further hesitation will only destroy trust, Randolph officially accepts the proposal. From that moment on, matters proceed at lightning speed. The White King publicly announces Randolph as one of the 5 great warriors before the entire city, declaring that he made the right choice and cementing his permanent status in Cramdell. Although the atmosphere with the Star Guardians grew somewhat awkward after the decision, Randolph decides not to worry about it for the time being. With the agreement settled, and Dansar's body, which was his original objective, is handed over by Dramit. Preparations to return her remains to Father Andrew are finalized without delay. Seeing off the gathering, Randolph jokes that bringing such a massive escort just to say goodbye feels like an overstatement. The White King replies that this level of ceremony is the bare minimum for one of the 5 great warriors, adding that he hopes Randolph wraps up his personal business quickly so they can meet again. Randolph bids farewell and activates the teleportation waypoint in Cramdell, warping straight toward the Knight's Garden. During the dimensional transit, Isaac catches sight of Randolph's true form and remarks that while he already suspected it, he really is human after all. Randolph firmly reminds him that his human nature changes nothing, emphasizing that Isaac must uphold his oath to serve him faithfully for an entire year. Beside them, Isabella asks where he stored that creature. Randolph clarifies if she means Arham, pulling out a strand of hair to reveal the shrunken demon lord pinned beneath it. The protagonist explains that he silenced him because he was making far too much noise, but kept him along because his powers will prove useful down the line. While talking, the group arrives at their destination, stepping out onto the streets of the Knight's Garden. Walking through the district, Isabella immediately points out that the atmosphere feels noticeably bleaker and heavier than before. She finds it strange, knowing that Hudson was working relentlessly to rebuild the city, unable to grasp why everything looks so desolate. As they round the corner, Randolph freezes in place before a horrifying sight. Several wooden posts line the square, bearing the hanged, lifeless bodies of executed citizens, revealing that even the proud knights of the order were slaughtered without mercy. Kneeling at the base of one of the posts, completely devastated, sits Father Andrew. Shocked to her core, Isabella asks what kind of atrocity this is. Randolph steps forward and demands to know what happened to the city. Looking up with trembling eyes, the priest recognizes the young man and whispers in disbelief that he has finally returned, frantically warning Randolph that he cannot stay here and must hide immediately before those men spot him. Randolph cuts through the panic and firmly demands the full story. Father Andrew reveals that the Kaiser mercenary group, spearheaded by Maxim, one of the 8 heroes, assaulted and overwhelmed the settlement. The priest explains that the former lord, Marquis Weiser, had accumulated heavy debts with Duke Scene in the past. Maxim arrived acting as Duke Scene's envoy and successor, issuing an ultimatum to seize the entire territory on the spot if the debt was not settled immediately. Faced with the threat, Hudson stepped in and offered to pay the debt in full on the lord's behalf. However, Maxim flatly refused the settlement. At the time, Marquis Weiser confronted the invader, demanding an explanation since the money was being paid. Maxim cynically replied to Marquis Weiser that Duke Scene lent the gold directly to the Marquis's bloodline, not to the insolent merchant standing beside him, concluding that the debt had not been returned through the proper hands. Outraged by the dirty trick, Marquis Weiser accused Maxim of using the loan as a cheap excuse to steal the territory. The lord ordered the filthy mercenary to drag his wretched presence off that land, proudly declaring that the city is a sacred memorial dedicated to the heroes who gave their lives to protect their families, friends, and humanity, and that no scoundrel had the right to desecrate it. Maxim mocked the lord's speech, asking sarcastically since when there were so many heroes walking around, sneering that, as far as he is concerned, no true heroes exist outside the 8 heroes themselves. The clash that followed was brutal and swift. Even though the knights and citizens fought back with everything they had, they were completely overwhelmed and slaughtered by the elite mercenaries. Father Andrew reveals that a total massacre was prevented only because Hudson fell to his knees in the mud, begging for everyone's lives and swearing that if money was what they wanted, he would pay any price. Maxim mocked the merchant, claiming his duke had no need for gold and threatening to tear Hudson limb from limb to take everything by force, doubting anyone could stop him. Even under threat of death, gritting his teeth in fury, Hudson stood his ground as a merchant. He declared that while he is willing to pay heavily for a business agreement, he would rather die than surrender his wealth for nothing to an extortionist. Hudson then laid down his sole condition. He offered to pay double the principal debt directly to Maxim personally, demanding in exchange a non-negotiable 30-day truce where no mercenary lays a finger on a single citizen, and especially not a single touch on Serengeti. Finishing the grim account, Father Andrew looks into the eyes of Randolph, the true successor to Knight King Wilhelm, and asks with a broken voice if men as cruel as those are truly the great heroes who dedicated their lives to the continent and humanity. Hearing those words, Randolph's composure shatters completely as a tidal wave of unbridled rage overtakes his mind. His chest burns and his heart begins hammering at a violent, uncontrollable pace. In that very instant, a solemn system notification flashes across his vision. The Iron Blood Monarch's heart trait allows his pure wrath to persist without restraint, recognizing this tragedy as a matter that demands the legitimate fury of a true ruler. With that, the hidden trait quest, the trial of the Iron Blood Monarch, officially begins.